Cyrus is just an ordinary young man who has only recently awakened to his system's abilities. This system of his has a peculiar target function, and whoever it locks onto ends up collapsing under the sheer weight of their emotions for him. At present, he is standing before a terrifying demoness whose very presence is enough to make his companions tremble in absolute terror. Facing the so-called heroes of mankind, she cannot help but feel bored with their pathetic resistance. This alluring demon beauty is none other than Princess Yug, daughter of the Demon King, sent here to toy with the humans under her father's command. She holds the rank of D-class hero's opponent. Bella, drained of strength and without defense, begs Cyrus to run away without her, as Princess Yug is far beyond their capabilities, especially since Cyrus himself is a mere F-grade hero with no real standing. Yet, despite his bottom-tier status, he shows incredible courage by holding his ground against the demonic menace. He declares boldly that he can handle her, his words, not anyone else. Meanwhile, the demon princess stretches casually, an action that would make certain onlookers grin as though they'd stumbled upon a forbidden delight. But in truth, she is simply irritated with how pathetically weak humanity has become. Cyrus, unable to resist her overwhelming allure, ends up with a nosebleed at the sight of her charms. Even Bella is stunned, appalled that this man is distracted by desire in the face of a foe that could so easily end their lives. She insists they must flee the battlefield immediately. Princess Yug is so indifferent to the fight that one of her orc soldiers has to remind her a single human still dares to stand. Shifting instantly from sultry to savage, she charges forward with her army, hungry for slaughter. Meanwhile, Cyrus stands tall, posing with unshakable confidence, even as Princess Yug prepares to make a drinking vessel from his skull. Activating his system interface, he commands it. He locks Princess Yug in as his designated target. As the fearsome princess swings with intent to end his life in one blow, the system's effects suddenly surge in full, changing the outcome completely. Instead of severing his head, she gently strokes the back of his hair, then leans forward without hesitation and seals a long, deliberate kiss. Unbelievably, the system even rewards him attack points for completing this kiss. It seems another legendary system has finally met its equal. Bella, meanwhile, explodes with fury over the absurdity of what she is witnessing. Even a bewildered orc soldier questions what madness their princess is indulging in mid-combat. Empowered by his new stat boost, Cyrus swings his sword and fells 3 monsters at once. The sudden strike leaves Princess Yug taken aback. She retreats quickly with blinding speed. Though Cyrus maintains a stern expression, it is obvious he secretly savored that moment. Princess Yug, however, is left completely puzzled. Her intent had been to kill him, and yet she ended up pressing her lips against his. Cyrus then raises his voice like a knight sworn to duty, declaring that he will sacrifice his body for the city's protection. A proclamation of sacrifice more dramatic than most tales could ever tell. Yug's subordinates are baffled, recalling rumors that their princess might be hiding a secret lover, though none expected that lover to be human. One warrior berates the others for daring to taint the princess's name by linking her to a mere mortal. Princess Yug, however, dreads the thought of the Demon King learning of this disgrace. Even as her heart races uncontrollably from their contact, Cyrus insists on ending the confrontation here, provoking her to summon her soldiers against him. He chooses not to use the locking effect on them, instead facing them directly in battle. He successfully parries the heavy strike of one towering orc, yet despite his offensive boost, his equipment fails him, shattering instantly under pressure. The remaining warriors close in, one swinging wide in a horizontal arc, meant to cleave him apart. Cyrus ducks swiftly to avoid being split like brittle wood. His defensive stats, however, are still woefully inadequate. He counters regardless, leveraging his attack buff to slice through the enemy's weapon. But another orc suddenly leaps at him from behind, as though collecting a debt unpaid. Forced to retreat backward, Cyrus quickly strikes back, delivering a decisive critical hit. Bella watches the scene unfold in stunned silence, unable to comprehend this bizarre development. Meanwhile, Cyrus laments his inability to cause any meaningful damage. His blade barely pierces the monster's hide, even with the new strength he's gained. The situation worsens as Princess Yug dives from above, intending to crush him mercilessly. The blow lands, sending shockwaves rippling outward. Bella is thrown off balance, stumbling back. The demons themselves pause, intrigued by what they witness. Yug pins Cyrus firmly to the ground, preparing to end his life once and for all. Even Cyrus sees no escape now, as one of her minions readies to sever his head. But unexpectedly, the demon princess lashes her tail, striking the subordinate away and preventing the kill. Confusion spreads as she issues a strict command forbidding them from interfering. She insists she alone will finish the human. Her words exactly. The orcs cheer wildly, entertained by the spectacle and pleased with her decree. Yet the scene is terrifying, for she seems poised to bite through his throat herself. Instead, she nips at him lightly, tugging him closer. Saliva trails down his face as she refrains from causing lethal harm. Cyrus is vexed by this humiliating treatment, believing himself a man of dignity. Still, he steels himself, convincing his heart that this is yet another noble sacrifice for his people. Princess Yug, however, finds herself unsettled, questioning why she's developed such strange affection toward a human. She is undeniably drawn to him, though he endures relentless torment in the process. The system compensates him greatly, amplifying his stats each time. The orcs shift uncomfortably, disturbed by the scene unfolding before their eyes. Some mutter that perhaps this is simply her twisted way of torturing humans before execution. After bearing enough of this ordeal, Cyrus concludes his stat gains have reached a point sufficient to face her head-on. He retaliates, thrusting his broken blade toward her back. Yet, despite her indulgence, the princess remains vigilant, seizing his arm before the strike can land. Then she clamps her grip firmly around his neck. Slamming him against the wall, she convinces her soldiers that she's finally serious about his execution. With him pinned helplessly, she hesitates briefly, regretting not restraining herself earlier. She tells Cyrus that humans are arrogant to challenge demons, revealing her true intention of merely toying with him. To make her point clear, she shatters his armor, proving how fragile humans are without tools. Yet, beneath it all, her eyes linger hungrily upon his form. Her followers mutter among themselves, eager for her to kill him already. Cyrus, meanwhile, realizes he is entirely exposed if she attacks again. He notices her hand moving toward his face, dreading the devastating drain it may unleash. He prays for the endurance to withstand her grasp. She pins him firmly, asserting complete dominance, and he begins to accept that he truly lacks the power to defeat such monsters. Bella looks on, utterly bewildered, struggling to even call this a battle. Meanwhile, Cyrus frames his suffering as a noble offering for the greater cause, but pride swells in him, and he charges forward with reckless confidence, believing it is time to push his stats to their peak. What follows is something so shocking, it is best expressed by the reactions of the monsters themselves. His system floods him with dozens of stat boosts at once. To make matters even more surreal, the Demon King himself arrives on the battlefield, dropping his sword in sheer disbelief, for he has just watched a mere human steal away what was meant to be his. Even Princess Yug is speechless at her father's sudden appearance, while the Demon King Bartley, ghastly in appearance, stands frozen without words. The system, recognizing this extraordinary situation, doubles all of Cyrus's stats, as though rewarding him for this twisted conquest. Bartley explodes with fury, as any man would upon discovering betrayal. Yug struggles to explain herself, while Cyrus already readies himself to confront the Demon King. Bartley seethes with wrath, needing only an outlet for his rage. He lunges at blinding speed, determined to kill the human who dared touch his concubine. His very first strike sends Cyrus hurtling violently, crashing into the earth near Bella's side. Yet Cyrus quickly rises, proclaiming his will to keep fighting. He gauges the situation carefully, realizing the Demon King's power is far beyond his own. Bartley then turns his fury toward Princess Yug, demanding to know why she dallied with another. The Demon King condemns her, calling her faithless, and shaming her openly. Princess Yug lashes out in anger, accusing him for arriving far too late. Her words leave not only Bartley but even his servants stunned. She continues without faltering, arguing that everything spiraled out of control, precisely because Bartley neglected to appear sooner, and thus, she places the blame squarely on him for letting matters reach this humiliating stage. She rages at him for taking so long to find her. The irony is almost comical, because though she was the one being unfaithful, it is Bartley who ends up feeling guilty and apologizing for taking his time slaughtering humans along the way. The other warriors are utterly stunned by the Demon Lord's leniency toward his lover, a display of tenderness they had never witnessed before. Meanwhile, while the two demons are caught in their lovers' quarrel, Cyrus realizes this is the perfect chance to escape the situation entirely. He takes Bella with him, supporting her carefully, since her legs can no longer carry her, and she needs constant aid. At the same time, Yug plays the role of the wounded lover, weeping that their precious bond has been sullied because of a single human's intrusion. Recognizing that the despised mortal is the cause of everything, Bartley's expression hardens as he vows to end the man's life. Yet Yug clutches his leg and pleads desperately, swearing that he alone is the one she truly loves. Bartley lashes out in fury, scolding his useless soldiers for standing idly by watching drama unfold instead of capturing the humans. One warrior nervously explains that they refrained because Yug had ordered them not to interfere. Enraged, the Demon Lord surges forward with divine speed, hurtling directly towards Cyrus and Bella. The ceiling bursts apart as his overwhelming force descends. The Demon Lord himself drops down, intent on killing the human fool who dared seduce his concubine. Bartley delivers another crushing strike, sending Cyrus flying. He crashes painfully into the ground, all while Yug watches closely. At this point, even Cyrus acknowledges he is completely outmatched, his body barely functioning against Bartley's overwhelming strength. There is no denying he cannot contend with this foe. To make matters worse, the Demon Lord rushes to finish the job immediately. His aim is to cleave the young man in two, the ultimate punishment for such a grievous crime. Realizing there is no escape, Cyrus desperately begs his system to activate the lock. To everyone's astonishment, Yug intervenes on his behalf, striking Bartley and diverting his attack. Bartley freezes, utterly speechless once again. Taking advantage of the moment, Cyrus runs with all his strength, moving as if his life depends on it, determined to flee with Bella. The Demon Lord, however, rages like a child, furious that his concubine protected a mere human. The system interprets this intervention as a decisive strike against the Demon Lord and rewards Cyrus with a free level up. Still, he knows it is no time to fight and continues to retreat. Meanwhile, the Demon Princess is losing herself to obsession, openly declaring her desire for the human's body. Bartley tries to restrain her, but she immediately breaks free from him, launching herself with reckless abandon toward the man she craves. She crashes into him forcefully, intent on indulging herself. The impact pins Cyrus to the ground, most likely shattering whatever ribs he still had intact. Through this twisted act of intimacy, Cyrus once again receives stat points. And the humiliation is compounded by the fact that it all occurs before the Demon Lord's eyes. Bartley accepts the blame for letting things reach this point and insists he will kill the human in her place. But Yug is consumed with hostility, cursing him outright and demanding he not interrupt her pleasure. Ironically, this rejection wounds Bartley more deeply than any sword, bringing him to his knees in despair. Bella rushes in to try freeing her friend from the clutches of the shameless princess, yet Cyrus warns her not to intervene, knowing it is too dangerous. The D-rank girl, however, is ensnared by Yug's tale and slammed against the wall, held captive. Meanwhile, Yug relishes her time with Cyrus, questioning why she herself is acting so wildly. It feels as though she has transformed into someone else entirely, her thoughts drowned in ecstasy as she continues to indulge in him. Bartley rises once more. His sorrow has been replaced with anger and disbelief. He charges forward at blinding speed, determined to cut her down. But just before the blade can sever her in half, he halts himself, crying out that he still loves her, unable to summon the resolve for the killing blow. His mental collapse is so severe that even the system registers his breakdown, marking him as unstable and on the verge of self-destruction. Princess Yug grows deeply concerned at this development, while their minions scatter in terror, fleeing for their own survival. Bartley's condition spirals into complete meltdown as the system triggers its next stage. In response, the system awards Cyrus with a new skill for achieving level 10 Daojiwei. He executes it immediately, with precision. Striking across the Demon Lord's neck, he secures the kill. The move is his newly unlocked technique, Swift Body Slash. Bartley's body collapses to the ground, halting the self-destruction process and preventing total annihilation. Even with a broken weapon, Cyrus manages to land a fatal strike thanks to this skill. Princess Yug, however, seems oddly disappointed, unable to understand why it all ended in such a way. And yet, despite his neck being cleaved, the Demon Lord still lunges toward her, dying atop her body, forcing her to scream in pain. In the process, Bella is freed from the grip of Yug's tail. With his final breaths, the Demon Lord demands that Yug fulfill her promise that they would die together. His unstable state triggers his self-destruct countdown once more. Yug cries desperately, begging to be released, insisting she no longer wishes to die. She clings to the role of a helpless damsel, but Cyrus acts quickly, slashing apart the Demon Lord's armor and seizing her from harm's way. Even with his head severed, the Demon Lord still utters words. His end finally comes as the self-destruct reaches completion, detonating the entire area. Only Cyrus's quick actions, grabbing both Bella and Yug, allow them to survive. They escape into a lower floor of the dungeon just in time. At the dungeon's depths, Cyrus catches his breath, wondering if they have truly reached the bottom. To his surprise, the towering Yug has transformed into a tiny salamander. Her mana is completely drained, leaving her with less than 10 hit points. Bewildered, Cyrus watches as the salamander version of Yug hides itself inside his pocket. Bella rises shakily, striking a curious pose, and immediately asks about Cyrus's condition. The system confirms the Demon Lord's defeat, granting Cyrus access to the Naya dungeon map as his prize. He hesitates whether to inspect it, distracted by a sudden nosebleed as Bella leans over him, giving him quite a view. Flustered, she leaps back quickly, sulking in embarrassment. Cyrus then activates the map window, taking in its information. The map reveals marked areas where resources can be gathered and bosses can be targeted. With this, Cyrus will no longer need to fear losing his way within the labyrinth. Bella is startled by his words, since she cannot see the system's interface at all. Regardless, he helps her to her feet, preparing for their departure. But suddenly, a sharp pain erupts inside his body. He coughs violently, spitting out a surge of purple fluid. His flesh writhes with the unmistakable mark of demonic magic. His hands tremble in unbearable agony. Cyrus clenches his willpower, trying desperately to endure the torment. Yet the pain overwhelms him, sending him writhing on the ground like a helpless child. Crimson gashes spontaneously appear across his body. Bella clutches him tightly, realizing she must help him endure, for his body feels like it is burning alive. The torment grows so severe that even his pinky finger disintegrates. At last, the agonizing sequence subsides. Cyrus lies numb, forcing himself to recover his composure. He finally declares that he is stable again. Bella, however, is horrified, struggling to comprehend what is happening to him, or why his finger had melted away so suddenly. He explains grimly that it is the effect of poisoning. To understand, we must look back 6 months earlier during a monster raid on a city. A group of creatures clashed against a hero in fierce combat. The battle seemed to center around a peculiar, mysterious box, but in the chaos, the monster's blades slashed it open, unleashing devastating shockwaves that thundered violently through the area. Sadly, Cyrus happened to be nearby when the calamity struck, and the violent force hurled him straight into the crumbling ruins. The severed container began spilling its strange liquid everywhere, and without warning, the heavens themselves shifted into a deep scarlet hue. Soon, droplets of blood began to pour down upon the land. The stench alone was so revolting that Cyrus narrowly retched on the spot, let alone the unfortunate hero, whose body melted away under the corrosive rainfall. The monsters fared no better, writhing endlessly under the torment of the cursed shower. Cyrus, by sheer fortune, had been spared from direct contact with the rain. Yet even after regaining consciousness without a single drop touching him, he found himself afflicted with a lethal poisoning. The healers diagnosed him grimly, He had but 1 year left to live. That was until a system window appeared unexpectedly, declaring that only the blood of the demon god could cleanse the poison. It demanded his consent for a complete binding from that moment onward. With no alternative, Cyrus agreed, and in doing so learned that the demon god resided within a dungeon. Now he also uncovered a faint hope. An antidote for his condition was rumored to be hidden somewhere in that dungeon. For the moment, though, all he wished for was to find a chamber, change his tattered clothes, and recover before facing another battle. The scene shifts to a different perspective, following a group of strangers approaching one of the dungeon's chambers. Suddenly, the tank at the front senses danger just as a beam of searing light bursts forth. By sheer reflex, the party scatters and miraculously avoids being skewered. Everyone except the tank, that is. Their vice captain immediately orders the squad to hold position, fearing further traps or hidden devices might trigger at random, and so the whole team freezes, looking as though someone just hit them with a foreign language question they couldn't answer. Their strongest shield, the one meant to protect them all, had been annihilated by a single mechanism. Caution was now their only hope, yet they couldn't risk using a disposable pawn as bait either. Even so, retreat wasn't an option. Captain Cyrus of the Crusade insisted they fall back on tradition. Send the weakest soldier forward as a living sacrifice. The unfortunate recruit was flung ahead, ordered to pave the way with his life. The poor soul had no choice, for Cyrus would cut him down himself if he dared defy orders. As despair consumed him, his spirit faltered. At a moment, Claude spoke up, proposing another method. He possessed a special arrow, capable of scouting paths and raising their survival chances. To his horror, Cyrus contemptuously slashed the tool in half. It was an utterly senseless act, leaving the D-rank recruit drowning in hopelessness. Cyrus snarled, declaring he would personally kill his vice-captain if he kept playing with toys any longer. The heartless commander barked at the D-rank once more, forcing him to continue. Trembling, the young man took a hesitant step forward. For now, no traps had gone off, but his next move was far more perilous, with no clue which way to turn. As he struggled with indecision, the captain offered no mercy, barking for him to keep moving. Shaking uncontrollably, he lifted his leg again. Against all odds, his step landed safely. It was a gamble no different from Russian roulette, each step deciding whether he would live or die. Even he himself realized death was inevitable if this continued. The fear weighed down so heavily on him that he could no longer force his body forward. Overcome, he spun back, begging desperately for another chance to withdraw. In his panic, however, he triggered a hidden panel beneath his foot. A beam tore cleanly through his skull. The squad recoiled in terror, realizing the shot could strike from virtually any angle. His corpse collapsed limply to the ground. Without pause, Cyrus demanded the next lowest-ranked soldier step up. But before anyone could move, the chamber door swung open on its own, drawing every eye. From within emerged our boy, who certainly hadn't expected to stumble upon this crowd here. Remember that decoy team that had been mentioned earlier? Well, it turns out Bella and Cyrus had originally been designated for that role. To the captain's fury, both had survived and managed to bypass the perilous levels. Learning that Cyrus lived only made his blood boil hotter. The man could never catch a break. Let's rewind to the events before they even entered the dungeon. Cyrus had been accused of knowing intimate details about Cyrus' wife's undergarments. The charge alone was absurd, and yet disturbingly typical of him. Cyrus tried fumbling through a flimsy explanation, but Cyrus, livid, was seconds away from executing him for allegedly laying hands on his woman. Cyrus, attempting to preserve some dignity, insisted he would never stoop so low and had only been training his perception. To everyone's disbelief, he began listing the exact colors of each woman's underclothes. The underlings, who had been pleading for his life a moment ago, instantly turned on him, urging their captain to kill the man now, branding him a national-level threat. Instead, Cyrus decreed he would be shoved into the decoy group, a punishment he deemed suitable, and thus, our boy wound up in this predicament, his rotten luck dragging him right back before the same infuriated man. Cyrus barked for him to step to his side immediately, but even he wasn't naive enough not to see the trap. Cyrus clearly wanted him to trigger the mechanisms. The vice captain suggested instead that they follow the decoy group's trail, a far safer option. Yet the thick-headed commander dismissed the idea outright, stubborn as ever. He even tried guilt Claude, insisting his harsh methods were for. Cyrus then turned back to the target of his ire, ordering him to perform his role. But Cyrus was no fool. He activated the system's map function before taking a step. Bella, panicked at the thought of him getting vaporized, tried to stop him, but Cyrus pressed on confidently, knowing the route was safe. The squad could hardly believe his boldness, striding forward with such certainty. To them, it looked like blind guesswork in the deadliest of puzzles, yet each move he made followed the system's exact guidance, carrying him steadily forward. The rest began to wonder if he was blessed with some divine luck. He walked on with effortless composure, turning and stepping without hesitation, almost as if he knew the path from memory. But then they remembered. His pitiful F rank made that theory impossible, even though it was true. He even started hopping lightly, unscathed. Cyrus faltered briefly, nearly stumbling into disaster, but regained his balance just in time. Meanwhile, the clueless captain fumed, demanding to know why he hadn't blown apart yet. Cyrus was nearly across, and without only a few more strides he passed the fallen corpse of the previous bait, and stood directly before the captain. His flawless navigation without setting off a single trap left the squad awestruck. Cyrus calmly attributed it to his training, asserting his innocence. But Cyrus wasn't finished. He narrowly cleaved into him, demanding to know how anyone could be so impossibly lucky. At the same time, he made Cyrus the new trailblazer of the mission, based on his success. Suddenly, kale mushrooms sprouted nearby, startling him. Harmless to monsters, they could cause sickness in humans. Cyrus remembered the tiny salamander nestled in his armor, and figured it must be hungry. So he gently picked a few mushrooms. The fragrance alone was tempting. Cyrus quickly noticed and snapped, demanding to know what he was doing. He snatched a fungi from Cyrus' hand, then tossed them into his mouth, revealing the squad hadn't eaten in some time. Chewing smugly, he reminded Cyrus not to act out of turn. Cyrus merely stated that the path ahead was clear of traps, and they could proceed. Still, the captain insisted he be the one to open the door, unwilling to risk his own people. So, once again, it fell to Cyrus to push the dungeon door open. Cyrus barked for his men to stay alert, but even as he prepared, a rumbling discomfort twisted inside his stomach. He was done for. Cyrus pushed the door wide, finding nothing amiss for now. The rest of the squad braced themselves regardless. Meanwhile, Cyrus stood behind them with a twisted grimace, releasing a foul stench like poisonous gas from his backside. Yet Cyrus marched onward, still unharmed. Cyrus could hardly believe what he was seeing. At the same time, he clenched desperately, cursing his body for betraying him now. It dawned on him that the mushrooms were the cause. Cyrus, unfazed, declared the chamber was riddled with traps. Then he dashed ahead at full speed, forcing the rest to follow. An ordeal of pure agony for the clown who had gorged on mushrooms. The rest of the squad began sprinting as well, though not a single one of them understood the reason. Cyrus, on the verge of bursting, released yet another noxious wave. The comical part was how his companions mistook it for a lethal miasma, leaking from the dungeon itself, believing it would kill them all. Burning with shame, the man barked at them to run for their lives, or else they'd perish right there. After a long frantic dash, the group finally came to a halt. Cyrus immediately confronted Cyrus over the mushrooms, suspecting some elaborate scheme by the D rank. But our boy handled it with silver-tongued skill, twisting the situation like a master manipulator. Of course, Cyrus couldn't even form a proper explanation in his own defense. One of his soldiers set down a resting spot for the captain, trying to ease his strain, but sitting was out of the question, especially now. Driven by humiliation, he demanded the march continue. In his frustration, he pressed a blade against Cyrus's throat, threatening to personally execute him if he dared to sprint off like that again. Their journey deeper into the dungeon resumed, the group avoiding every trap only thanks to Cyrus' guidance. Yet hidden from them, a dragon slumbered, unaware that intruders had stepped into her domain. Cyrus kept directing their path, but several monsters lingered nearby, observing the human trespassers. Still, the leader's sharp eyes hadn't missed a thing. He noticed how they hadn't faced a single monster or trap so far. It almost seemed like Cyrus knew the dungeon's layout intimately, though even he knew this weakling couldn't have survived here on his own before. At last, Cyrus pointed out the boss's chamber just ahead, which to the captain meant his usefulness as a guide had come to an end. Now he was merely an obstacle. Spotting a massive spike dangling above Cyrus' head, the treacherous leader activated his blade art. With it, he unleashed a focused wave of mana, slicing the spike loose so it would plunge straight towards Cyrus' position. He congratulated himself, smugly believing his accident made him some kind of tactical genius. But to his shock, before the spike could strike, a scorpion's tail lashed it aside, and immediately turned to assault the captain himself. The armored beast descended in full force, bringing the chamber down with it, splitting Cyrus away from the rest of the squad. The vile leader survived only by reacting quickly to the ambush. Our boy wasn't so lucky. He thought this was the end, convinced death had finally caught him, until a voice called out, noting the presence of a human. The figure had a woman's form, though her tone dripped with loathing for mankind. This was Sadiel. She sneered, declaring it revolting to find a human in her presence. Before Cyrus and his team stood her puppet, a B+ rank scorpion monster, awaiting her command. Tyre shouted for the squad to brace themselves, while Bella's hands trembled around the heavy sword she carried. Tyre ordered the tanks to step forward, blocking the creature's charge. Shields raised, the tanks held the line. Tyre then commanded the archers to rain fire from behind. Arrows streaked through the air, striking the beast. Tyre urged them to keep shooting, but the monster roared with a force, blasting back every single arrow. The oppressive pressure made it hard for any of them to even stay standing. Tyre reeled, stunned that mere presence alone nullified their attacks. Suddenly Cyrus shouted for them to stop cowering, insisting there was just one monster. They could bring it down if they stood firm. Meanwhile, Cyrus heard another voice nearby and wondered if it belonged to yet another creature. A scorpion's tail shot toward him without warning. Somehow, he evaded it, baffled by the sudden strike. The scorpion lunged for him directly, but again, he slipped out of harm's way. Planting his feet, he roared for it to taste his fists, empowered with 3,190 attack strength. With a single blow, a gaping hole tore through the puppet's body. Its frame shattered apart, scattering in pieces across the ground. Sadiel herself was impressed, astonished that Cyrus demolished her puppet with one punch. But Cyrus' mind was elsewhere. He knew the antidote he needed was in the boss's chamber ahead. He couldn't waste energy on meaningless skirmishes, so he considered slipping away with the system's map. Sadiel drew nearer, Hissing that it mattered little, she discarded anything tainted by human hands. She admitted she had used the monster to distort his features, but now she would do it herself. Stunned to see yet another female-shaped foe, Cyrus retorted that his head wasn't some melon she could casually crush. She scoffed, saying she wouldn't dirty her hands on his foul body. Instead, she explained, she controlled the puppets with strings of her hand, and with those strings she vowed to destroy him before moving on to slaughter the others. Her words made her intent clear. Cyrus would be her first victim. But Cyrus shouted back that he was a hero, and it was his duty to protect humanity. Even if it drained every ounce of his strength, he would stand his ground against her. Sadiel lunged, mocking him, demanding if he truly believed that. With a single leg she clamped down on his head and drove him into the ground. His system triggered, locking her as his target, but Sadiel sneered that overconfident fools were beneath her. Meanwhile, her puppet halted its assault. Tyre seized on the chance, shouting for everyone to notice. The monster's head glowed red, a sign their efforts were landing at last. Cyrus, however, was stunned by her blinding speed. Sadiel remarked that reaching this place was impressive for a human, but that was all. She added that Lord Ney despised humans who entered his chamber, pressing her second leg against his face. Cyrus realized her power was overwhelming, but he could not allow her to escape outside. He had to stop her here, so he reared his head back and bit down furiously on her foot. Outraged and embarrassed, Sadiel screamed at the disgusting act. Elsewhere, the battle raged on. Bella noticed the rubble hadn't shifted in some time. She feared Cyrus lay unconscious beneath the stones, and decided she had to pull him out. Calling to Tyre, she begged him to cover her advance. Tyre hesitated, urging her to wait, but she dashed ahead regardless, praying that Cyrus was unharmed. The scorpion puppet spotted her and lunged. Tyre intercepted, raising his sword to block the strike, but the force nearly overwhelmed him. He couldn't hold it forever. Bella pressed on, hoping Cyrus would be fine. After all, he was a hero, and it was only rubble. Back at Sadiel's grip, she recoiled, revolted that Cyrus had licked her feet and let him go. Cyrus gasped with relief, finally freed from her hold. His system reminded him he couldn't activate the instant kill skill without wielding a weapon. Frustrated, he cursed himself for not carrying one. With no choice left, he prepared to fight barehanded. He swung a punch at Sadiel, but she dodged and countered with a vicious kick to his face. As her foot connected, she noticed how soft and pliant his face felt. The blow sent him flying into the stone wall. She remarked how satisfying it was to kick him, leaving Cyrus speechless. Yet even she grew tense, unsettled by her own reaction. Deciding not to waste more time, she resolved to finish him quickly, lest the other humans reach Lord Ney's chamber. She tore the tail from the puppet Cyrus had destroyed and swung it at him. But Cyrus's agility saved him, allowing him to dodge. He gathered mana into his hand and cleaved the tail in two. Yet it had been a distraction. While he focused on the tail, Sadiel seized the chance to catch his face in her legs again. Her expression and words clashed. While threatening him, her face betrayed something else entirely. She vowed she wouldn't release him this time, intent on strangling him with her legs. Cyrus roared in fury, grabbing hold of her legs with his hands, determined to show her the strength of his grip. The instant Cyrus laid his hand upon her legs, Sadiel felt a strange sensation and instantly leapt away. Yet moments later, she brought her foot down hard against his face. With rage, she demanded that he never touch her legs again with his filthy hands. To restrain him, she even used the severed fragments of the scorpion tail to grip his arm. Cyrus was dumbfounded to realize she had repurposed the very scorpion tail he had broken, and her suppression was so overwhelming that he had no way to evade her strikes. Once again, she pressed her foot onto his face, declaring she would crush it entirely. Yet, even as his face was pinned under her heel, Cyrus' power continued to surge higher. Meanwhile, Sadiel reveled in the sensation as she pressed her foot against his face, until the agitation gauge rose to 66%. She mocked Cyrus, proclaiming that humans existed solely to be ground beneath her feet. But her body trembled, and because of that, the puppet monster battling Cyrus and the others outside also began to shudder. Witnessing this, Tyr gleefully announced that the monster was starting to falter, and they should hold fast as victory was near. Yet on the other side, Sadiel was still indulging herself, basking in the thrill. Meanwhile, Bella was racing toward the stone wall when suddenly the scorpion tail lunged to strike her. Tyr spotted it and tried to cry out a warning to Bella, but his voice came too late. The tail struck, and Bella was hurled through the air. Her body crashed against the rocks. Elsewhere, Sadiel's hands were moving over Cyrus in inappropriate places. Cyrus shouted in outrage, demanding she not touch him there, insisting she had no right. Nearest Cyrus, the tail whipped toward him, and he braced himself to block. By some effort, he managed to dodge with the aid of his sword, but he realized that even from a great distance, the tail could pierce straight through the wall, which proved that this monster's rank had already exceeded that of an elite creature. Meanwhile, Sadiel was delighting in the soft, pulpy sensation, while the agitation level spiked to 95%. At the same time, Cyrus was about to be targeted again by the scorpion puppet, and when Cyrus finally sensed the attack from behind, it was already too late. He recognized the Princess of Scorpio advancing, but the moment had slipped, and he couldn't block. Yet to his relief, Sadiel suddenly reached peak agitation, and began moving erratically, as though under some strange allure. Because of this, the scorpion puppet spasmed and halted. Cyrus was stunned to realize the attack had been interrupted, but he also saw that the monster was letting out bizarre howls. Observing the creature's agitation, Cyrus judged it to be the perfect opening, so he unleashed his roaring tiger severing strike upon the puppet. The puppet was sent flying. It crashed to the ground, and seeing this, everyone rejoiced and began praising Cyrus' might. With just one strike, he had brought down the creature with ease. Yet on the other side, the agitation value rose further to 98%, pushing Sadiel into even more erratic behavior. The monster began vomiting, and upon seeing this, the others believed Cyrus' strike was so overwhelming, it had forced the beast into agony. They honored Cyrus, convinced that with him present, no magical beast could threaten them. Even Cyrus wondered why the puppet seemed weaker than expected, since he had taken it down so easily. Meanwhile, Sadiel's condition shifted again. The puppet stirred once more. Tension filled the air, for it was not yet destroyed. Cyrus told the group to step back and allow him to face it alone, determined to show them the true power of their captain. Sadiel herself grew anxious, questioning what was happening to her and why she was behaving in such a shameful way with a mere human. She resolved that she needed to regain her composure. Meanwhile, Cyrus agonized over what to do, for her body was so durable, especially her legs, and if things continued, she would drain him completely. So he roared that he would never bow to her. In response, she shoved her leg into his mouth to silence him. Screaming at him to shut up, she declared she had no desire to hear his voice. Cyrus was reminded of the feeling he had experienced with Yug, as though he were being toyed with by women. Yet each time, his strength skyrocketed, rising by more than 2,000 points. Meanwhile, the scorpion puppet was still clashing with Cyrus, but because Sadiel L was lost in seduction and temper, the monster could not fight at full capacity. Cyrus noticed its strength diminishing, so he invoked his sacred whirlwind slash, and once more, the monster collapsed. The group cheered, thrilled that Cyrus had felled the creature with his signature strike, but then they realized the beast was still roaring without end. They assumed Cyrus' blow had crushed it into a mindless frenzy. Cyrus boasted that the puppet was nothing more than a training dummy before him. Tyre even lauded him, declaring Cyrus so powerful that one strike alone had sufficed. At the same time, Sarah's defenses rose by 3,304 points, and his agility surged by 4,310 points. He was becoming vastly more formidable. Sadiel continued to revel in the moment, but then, she heard the voice of her Lord Nay, questioning why there was such noise outside. Startled, she leapt away from Cyrus' body in haste. She stepped back, troubled, and wondered if it was all finished. For in that instant, she realized she had momentarily forgotten Nay's command. She must eliminate the vile humans at once to atone. Meanwhile, Sarah's attack strength surged by 10,000 points. He now radiated a murderous aura, as he demanded of Sadiel if she still wished to continue her game. She froze, unnerved by the shift in his presence. It was entirely different, carrying the same chilling oppression as Nay Sama.die. She wondered if she truly had to face someone of his level. Confronted with his killing intent, she fled from him. Cyrus stood bewildered, uncertain why she ran, and whether he should pursue her, but he decided against it, knowing his real goal lay in obtaining the demon god's blood from the boss chamber. With Sadiel having drained so much of his stamina already, it was wiser to conserve strength. Elsewhere, while Cyrus basked in praise, Bella anxiously ran toward the stone walls to search for Cyrus. Yet before she could arrive, she saw someone breaking through the wall with their leg. As Cyrus emerged, he was surprised to see Bella.A. She asked in concern whether he was unharmed, and Cyrus replied that he was perfectly fine. Still, Bella scrutinized him, noting the dust covering him, and worried that though he seemed uninjured, there might be hidden wounds. She urged him to let the healers check. Cyrus chuckled and reassured her he was truly fine. Bella then told him that if he felt unwell, he must inform her right away. Cyrus simply answered with an, "Okay." Meanwhile, Tyr quivered with fury, clearly harboring feelings toward Belladonna. Cyrus gathered everyone's attention, declaring that from this point forward, they would march behind him and witness his true might, as he intended to defeat the boss single-handedly. The group was awestruck and showered their captain with praise. Cyrus was overjoyed, convinced the dungeon's threat level could not truly be C rank, perhaps only brushing D rank. Once he returned to the guild and reported his feat, he was sure promotion awaited. A prize worth seizing. The scene then shifted to Lord Nay's chamber, where Sadiel reported that a terrifyingly powerful human lurked outside. She admitted she did not understand how, but his once frail strength had exploded to inconceivable heights in an instant. She urged Nay to exercise caution when facing that human. In a twisted voice, Nay asked Sadiel what orders she had given her. Nervously, Sadiel admitted she had commanded herself to guard the door and prevent any from entering the chamber. At that, Nay erupted in fury, demanding if she knew that, then what on earth had she been doing outside with a human? Sadiel stiffened and tried to answer, but before she could, Nay struck her. A violent blast erupted behind her, and a ray of light tore through her, defeating her instantly. Nay roared that she had no patience for pitiful excuses. She then seized Sadiel with magic, and hurled her upon the mound of human and monster corpses, condemning her to become nothing but fuel. In despair, Sadiel whispered that she did not wish to die yet. As her body landed atop the corpses, a pool of green liquid began to form. Nay declared that after so long with thousands of humans and beasts used as fuel, the process was nearly complete. At last, the demon god's blood had begun to boil. Suddenly someone burst into Nai's chamber, smashing the door apart. Startled by the crash, Nay turned and demanded to know who dared to intrude upon her room. Cyrus retorted that it was he, calling himself her daddy, come to beat her down. At that moment, Ceres glimpsed the demon god's blood. His system informed him that consuming it would purge the toxins from his body. Nay questioned if Cyrus was the very human Sadiel had warned her about. Ceres too wondered if that green blood was the very substance capable of cleansing him. Cyrus then commanded everyone to heed his words, forbidding them from acting without his order, for he intended to challenge the C-rank dungeon's boss himself. At once the others cheered for Cyrus, exalting the might of humankind. Cyrus marveled to see that the object resting upon the platform was indeed the demon god's blood. Meanwhile, Cyrus charged headlong toward Nay, as the entire party cheered his advance, until, at last, he drew near. Cyrus leapt high into the air, declaring that Nay would now taste his terror. Yet Nay casually raised only her thumb to counter. From that simple motion, a blazing yellow ray erupted. The blast incinerated all of the armor Cyrus wore. His body was flung and smashed against the wall. Witnessing this, his comrades panicked and rushed toward him, crying out to see if he was safe. Nay scoffed, asking if this so-called Cyrus was the strongest human they had, and concluded that Sadiel had been utterly worthless. Meanwhile, Cyrus reeled in disbelief, thinking how nonsensical it was that the monster's single strike had obliterated his A-rank armor. Luckily, hidden beneath it was the S-class soft dragon scale armor gifted by his brother. Without it, his life would have ended. His allies continued to ask if he was all right, but Cyrus remained dazed, lost in thought. He pondered deeply about the dungeon, unsettled by the vast differences in strength between these monsters. He decided it was unwise to face such foes head-on. Instead, he planned to use his teammates to drain the boss's energy first, only striking when it was weakened. That way, his odds of victory would be higher. Rising to his feet, Cyrus ordered the others to follow his lead and charge forward while demonstrating their skills. But Tyr spoke up, warning that a reckless charge without formation would cause needless deaths. He urged them to stick with their shield front strategy. Cyrus snapped, demanding to know if Tyr was questioning his authority, or defying him outright. Trembling, Tyr insisted he dared not. Cyrus barked at him to shut his mouth and obey. Then Cyrus commanded all of them to grab their weapons and storm the boss, assuring them he was their unshakable support, and they had nothing to fear. Fired up, the group agreed and surged angrily toward Nay. Nay sneered, mocking the humans for rushing in without sense, claiming their flesh and blood weren't even worthy to fuel her altar. She cried out that she would show them the vast gulf between humans and monsters. Then she released her devastating disparity of despair, attack across a wide area, engulfing them in flames. Sirius seized Bella and Mark, pulling them out of the blast range. Still, most of the group was burned, and many suffered serious wounds. Even Cyrus narrowly escaped alive, though his sword was reduced to ashes. He stared in shock at the sight of his destroyed blade. Hovering in the air, Nay mocked him, asking if he hadn't boasted about making her feel terror. Cyrus realized victory was impossible and frantically considered retreat. Tyr stood frozen, horrified at the sight of his charred companions. To his disbelief, he then saw Cyrus trying to flee, shouting for everyone to retreat. The survivors obeyed, rushing out of the boss chamber. Rage boiled in Tyr's chest at hearing such words from Cyrus. But then, to Cyrus' astonishment, his hand was suddenly seized. Turning back, he saw it was none other than Cyrus. Cyrus held him firmly, reminding him that he had just sworn to be the team's unwavering support. The fight was not over, so he could not abandon them. Cyrus struggled desperately, but Cyrus' grip held tight. Cyrus shouted that as captain, his word was law. If Cyrus wanted to die, fine, but he refused to be dragged down with him. Even Nay ridiculed Cyrus, raging that he had dared to intrude in her chamber, wreak havoc, and now had the gall to try to escape. She prepared another strike. Seeing this, Cyrus panicked and screamed at Cyrus, calling him a fool for not looking back as the boss readied the same deadly beam. He pulled frantically at his hand, horrified to find he couldn't break free. He wondered in shock why Cyrus' grip was so unshakable. Again he begged Cyrus to release him, but Cyrus stood unmoved. Cyrus fumed, convinced he alone could defeat the boss, yet still unable to pry himself free. Enraged, he lunged at Cyrus, but Cyrus caught his arm and twisted it brutally. Cyrus screamed in agony from the pain. Then Cyrus yanked him closer, hefted him up, and prepared to hurl him toward Nay, shouting that as captain, Cyrus must live by his own words. As Nay's beam fired, Cyrus flung Cyrus into its path, commanding him to shield his comrades with his body and serve as the team's solid support. Cyrus was struck head-on by the beam of light, buying precious moments for the others to escape. They fled outside while Cyrus suffered the brunt of the attack. One teammate froze in shock at the sight. Cyrus, furious, turned his glare on Nay, shouting that it was his turn now. Bella declared she would stay. Tyr too stepped forward, insisting he would remain to face the monster. Bella told him he need not stay, since she was staying for Cyrus. Tyr replied that as the top-ranked B-class hero, his duty was to slay monsters, and he would never run. He added bitterly that he would never again follow orders from that fool Cyrus. Nay looked at Cyrus, asking why he hadn't fled after seeing her power. accusing him of underestimating her. She prepared another beam, but Cyrus met it with a swift body slash. Nay recoiled, forced to pull her hand back. Infuriated, she fumed at Cyrus' speed. Yet to her surprise, he dashed straight toward the demon god's altar, instead of her. Nay began to suspect his true aim. She suddenly realized, could it be that his goal was never to kill her, but to seize the demon god's blood? Cyrus sprinted, the altar only meters away. Nay shrieked for him to halt, but Bella and Tyr struck from behind, saying it was the perfect opening. Shockingly, Nay caught both their blades with ease. She sneered and aimed at Cyrus, calling him a pest with cockroach-like speed. Bella cried out, demanding Nay not lay a hand on Cyrus. Both Bella and Tyr pushed with all their strength to drive her back. Just then, Nay's footing slipped slightly. Her attack veered off course. Thanks to her misstep, Cyrus dodged the strike. He leapt joyfully toward the altar, believing his prize was within reach. But as he drew nearer, he spotted a glowing magic array. His expression tensed at the sight. The moment his hand touched it, a violent explosion erupted. The blast hurled him away from the altar. Nay smirked, declaring that the array was her own design, and as long as she lived, no living being could ever cross it. Cyrus admitted grimly that she was right. Charging in to drink the demon god's blood directly was impossible. The only way forward was to defeat the boss herself. Suddenly, Cyrus noticed something within the cracks of the walls. At that moment, Nay seized Bella and Tyr, sneering that they were arrogant fools who had overestimated themselves. Both were slammed to the ground with brutal force, left bloodied and wounded. Meanwhile, Cyrus was startled to see the same female monster who had previously fled him, and wondered how she had ended up there. That monster, Naya, trembled and whispered to Cyrus not to make a sound, begging him not to reveal her presence to Nay. Nay proclaimed that her ritual required absolute calm and composure. Only after she erased them would her fury subside. Cyrus grew tense, realizing Bella's life was at grave risk. Before leaving, he quietly placed a kale mushroom before Sadiel. Sadiel stared at it in wonder, recognizing the mushroom's ability to restore strength. Cyrus then dashed toward Bella, shouting that he was on his way. Meanwhile, Sadiel picked up the mushroom and began to eat. Tears welled in her eyes as joy filled her heart. Cyrus' system notified him that the female monster Sadiel had developed feelings for the host. This unlocked the condition for weapon awakening, granting access to new weapon options. Instantly, countless mysterious cards marked with question symbols floated before him, and the system instructed that he must first review the weapon introduction rules. On the battlefield, Tyr shielded Bella, telling her to flee while he held Nay off. But Bella replied her leg bone was fractured again, urging him to escape alone. Cyrus shouted angrily at the system to skip its explanations. He had no time for useless chatter while lives needed saving. Obediently, the system bypassed the tutorial and prompted him to select a card. Cyrus randomly chose one. Died. A sword radiating crimson light materialized. The system announced it as the Exploding Garment Divine Sword. With fury, Cyrus lunged at Nay, roaring for her to face his new weapon and perish. He struck with the blade, but Nay effortlessly caught it with one hand, laughing that Cyrus had walked into her trap. She revealed that Bella and Tyr had only been bait, and her true target all along was him. With that, she unleashed her radiant beam, daring him to escape at such close range. He roars defiantly, warning her not to belittle him, declaring that he never once said he would evade. With that, he swings his blade with every ounce of his strength, yet the strike only leaves the faintest mark on Nay's hand. She burst into mocking laughter, pointing out that even though he poured all his might into the blow, all he managed was a mere graze that didn't even draw a single drop of blood. She goes on to explain that this is the gulf that separates monsters from humans, but at that very moment, the fabric of her dress tears from above. Shocked, she freezes, blushing in embarrassment as she stammers, demanding to know where her clothes have gone. Even Bella and Tyr couldn't help but feel awkward witnessing Cyrus unintentionally strip the boss. Cyrus himself was on edge, fully aware of how formidable this monster was. At that instant, his system displayed that the Exploding Garment Divine Sword had an effect. When striking an opponent, it could cause their garments to burst apart. And once the enemy stood unclothed, the ultimate technique, Divine Sword Descent, would be activated. Nay, furious at what she deemed a vile tactic, swore to erase Cyrus completely for such a disgrace. Cyrus attempted another slash, but this time, she evaded. Cyrus realized his earlier strike had landed on her palm, which in turn caused the upper layer of her clothing to explode. That meant, if he could strike once more, this time at her legs, he could strip away her lower robe as well. And once that was done, all that remained was her face mask. Breaking it would activate the ultimate move. So his strategy was clear. Close in on the boss and repeatedly unleash swift body slash. Cyrus was confident that Nay would not escape, and he would eventually land a decisive hit. Suddenly, however, his system notified him that his current mana reserves would only allow 6 uses of swift body slash, each carrying a cooldown of 10 seconds. Yet, targeting a new enemy would allow instant activation. Disheartened, Cyrus lamented how ineffective this seemed. The system asked whether he wished to disable the skill, but he firmly responded with a no what. Accepting that, Cyrus decided he had no choice but to attempt it anyway. He charged fiercely toward Nay, unleashing swift body slash, but Nay leapt into the air, dodging the strike with ease. Cyrus tensed, frustrated at missing again. Meanwhile, Knight puzzled over why Cyrus kept aiming at her legs when her upper garments had already been destroyed. Did Cyrus truly intend to strip her of her robe as well? Just then, Cyrus launched another attack, but this time Ney countered with a furious kick straight at his face. The impact smashed into him, sending his body flying violently through the air. Somehow, with the support of his sword, he managed to halt his momentum and land back on the ground. Even so, the agony from his narrowly shattered nasal bone left him in torment. Yet, he recalled the unbearable pain of his body melting during the toxin outbreak. Compared to that horror, the pain in his face was nothing. With rage boiling over, Cyrus charged once more, shouting that such petty wounds meant nothing to him. Every second stretched into eternity as Cyrus advanced toward Ney, and as he finally closed the distance, the countdown struck 1. Now was the moment to strike. While he rushed forward, Ney fired a beam of searing light, but Cyrus managed to dodge the deadly blast. Seeing this, Ney stiffened in alarm, while Cyrus pressed forward with swift body slash at point-blank range, wondering how she could possibly avoid it at such close quarters. Cyrus felt as though he had landed the blow. Confidence swelled that his attack had connected, but in truth, he had only sliced her tail, and she soared high above, proclaiming that she had never once claimed she would flee. She shouted that if not for the need to conceal her true form, she would have unleashed far greater power long ago, and that with nothing but speed alone, she could have reduced him to ashes already. This revelation made Cyrus break out in tension. At that moment, Ney unleashed another laser beam. Cyrus attempted to evade while simultaneously readying a counterattack, but his system displayed that his skill was still cooling down. Frustrated, he cursed how agonizingly long 10 seconds felt, and realized he had no choice but to confront her directly. Thus, Cyrus swung his sword without relying on any skill. Pouring every ounce of his might into the slash, he somehow deflected the deadly beam. The collision triggered a massive explosion of energy. Even Tyre stood stunned, unable to fathom how Cyrus had managed to block the boss's attack head-on. It seemed unthinkable, for his combat ability had been graded no higher than F rank before the expedition. Even seasoned B rank fighters couldn't have intervened at that scale. On the other side, Cyrus felt exhilarated, marveling at the true potential of his divine sword. With a burst of laughter, he taunted Ney, boasting that now he could counter and evade her attacks with ease, rendering her efforts futile. Ney conceded, admitting that Cyrus was correct. It truly was proving difficult to kill him. But then she shifted her aim toward Bella, throwing Cyrus into confusion. She explained that it would be effortless to annihilate the injured woman, and immediately prepared another blast. In panic, Cyrus rushed forward with swift body slash, striking at the nail of the finger she used to channel her power. He managed to break the nail, yet it was too late. The attack had already been released. Cyrus felt a brief surge of relief, but that vanished instantly, as he realized Bella was in mortal danger. Anxiety spurred him into a desperate dash toward her. Watching this, Ney sneered, remarking that foolish humans always pulled such heroics, rushing to save someone, only to be killed from behind by villains. She declared he had fallen for her trap and launched a strike with her other hand. Cyrus, on the other hand, realized his dash was already too late. He had but one final option. Knowing that swift body slash could instantly reset when locking onto a new target, he switched his target to Bella. Activating the skill, he successfully intercepted the attack, but in doing so, the armor of both Bella and Mark was shattered. Even Tyre was floored, stunned to see the collateral destruction. Ney herself was taken aback, shocked that Cyrus had managed to evade her again. Suddenly, she noticed unusual activity coming from the altar. Realization struck her. She had been so consumed by the battle that she had forgotten to maintain the altar's firewood, the very thing keeping the demon god's blood warm. If she failed to sustain it, centuries of preparation would be wasted, forcing her to wait another 100 years. Meanwhile, Bella's body began reacting strangely. She felt feverish, unsettled, her mind clouded. Cyrus' system displayed that her agitation value had already climbed to 91%. It meant her heart had already tilted towards Cyrus, binding her attraction even stronger. Bella stepped closer to Cyrus, cupping his face as if about to kiss him. Tyr's eyes widened in disbelief. She leaned in closer, their lips nearly touching. At that moment, Cyrus' memory flashed back to when Bella was just 8 years old. Her gaze then had been terrifying, her words taunting, asking him what he was staring at, whether he had never seen a beautiful woman before, or if he wanted to kiss her. The memory snapped back to the present as Cyrus flinched, stepping back tensely, insisting he had no desire to kiss her. Tyr, equally unsettled, demanded to know what on earth Bella was doing, and if she had truly intended to kiss Cyrus. Bella, confused, wondered aloud if she had really taken the initiative herself, that her body had moved without her will, that she had even gone so far as to stick out her tongue, while they were still in the midst of combat. Embarrassment overwhelmed her, her cheeks blazing red. Tyr angrily pressed her for answers, demanding to know why she was flushed and sweating. Was she poisoned? Was she hallucinating? Surely she must be, for otherwise she would never act so shamelessly. Meanwhile, Ney focused entirely on the altar. If the demon god's blood cooled, it would take another century to restore it. She dragged over corpses of both monsters and humans, muttering that she had no intention of enduring such a weight again. This time, she vowed to burn the demon god's blood completely dry. Hearing this, Cyrus stiffened, asking if Ney truly meant to consume the divine blood entirely. He realized then that he had to stop her at once. But the boss was terrifyingly fast, making it nearly impossible to land a strike. There was only one solution: increase his strength until even the boss could no longer dodge him. On the other side, Nay piled the corpses into the altar as fuel, gauging whether it would be enough to drive the altar's heat to its peak. Cyrus resolved that he must trigger the ultimate ability of the exploding garment divine sword and obliterate Nay in one move. Thus, Cyrus approached Bella, telling her he had found a way to defeat the boss, but it required her cooperation. Bella asked what he meant. He explained that if she and he engaged in romantic gestures, kissing, embracing, and the like, his strength would surge, allowing him to overpower the boss. Hearing this, both Bella and Tyr flushed in deep embarrassment. Tyr could hardly believe his ears, wondering how Cyrus could utter something so indecent with such a straight face. Cyrus clasped Bella's hand, acknowledging how difficult it must be for her, yet begging for her help. Bella, already swayed by strange emotions, faltered, unsure how to respond, but Tyr pulled Cyrus's hands away, shouting furiously that this was nonsense. He accused Cyrus of exploiting Bella, insisting that in the middle of battle he thought only of perverse things. To him, Cyrus was nothing but a shameless opportunist. Turning to Bella, Tyr urged her not to trust Cyrus, but to his shock, Bella declared that she believed him. Tyr stood utterly speechless. Bella then placed her hands on Cyrus' shoulders, confessing that though she felt embarrassed, she agreed only because she wanted the monster defeated. She begged him not to misunderstand. She harbored no actual desire for such intimacy with him. Even so, she held Cyrus's face tenderly. Cyrus once more recalled that childhood moment when Bella had nearly kissed him, her face terrifying in his young eyes, her words haunting him. In that memory, he had cried out that he didn't want to play anymore. Back in the present, the memory made him panic internally, screaming at Bella in his mind not to repeat that moment, and just as he had in the past, he shoved her away. Cyrus forcefully pushed her back now as well. Gasping, he muttered that it was a close call. He had narrowly been finished. At that instant, his system displayed that Tyr had suffered a critical strike. Bella, bewildered, wondered why Cyrus had rejected her. Meanwhile, Cyrus received a system alert. His level had risen, and all his stats increased by 5,000 points. Overjoyed, he realized it must have been thanks to Mark. Relieved, he thought to himself that now he could fight without ever needing to touch Bella, sparing him the trauma of his memory. He told her that if it was truly too difficult for her, then they wouldn't go through with it. He would defeat the boss on his own. Bella, saddened, urged him to wait, asking what would happen if he still couldn't win. Didn't he need her after all? By then, Bella's agitation value had peaked at 99%. Cyrus, with a mocking expression, retorted that he didn't want her help, and charged at Knee once again. Bella, wounded by his words, questioned why he had no interest in her at all. Tyr then interjected, claiming he understood. Cyrus was stronger than him, and that was why Bella liked him. Still, he wanted to ask her directly. Bella responded, asking if he was referring to that thing again. The scene shifted to Cyrus, deep in thought. To activate his finishing move, he would need to land strikes on both the head and the legs simultaneously. He recalled that earlier he had nearly struck her leg, but now, with all his stats boosted by 5,000 points, if he seized the right opening with swift body slash, he was confident he could finally achieve it. On Nay's side, she grew unsettled, as the altar still refused to activate, confused why the cold lingered. If she didn't fix it soon, the frost would plunge even faster. So she considered tossing those disgusting humans into the flames to squeeze out a bit of warmth. Nye soared towards Cyrus and ordered him to feel honored, for he and the others were about to serve as fuel for her ritual fire, which in her view was the greatest recognition she could bestow. She declared that the time had come to unleash her entire might, gathering her strength into a single destructive core. Cyrus stood frozen. He was stunned at the enormous sphere condensing before his eyes. A furious neigh hurled the attack straight at him. He raised his sword to shield himself. But even while blocking, warnings flared that his mana was draining at terrifying speed. Little by little, his magic reserves ticked toward empty. Now, only 11 points remained, too little to trigger even the simplest skill. Realizing he was powerless, Cyrus grew desperate, unable to decide what to do. Nay laughed in delight, mocking that she already knew his magic was spent, and their battle was finished. Cyrus racked his brain, searching for an option. To his shock, Bella appeared and gently cupped his face. She said he clearly needed her aid, pressing his cheek to her chest, a gesture that shattered Mark's heart. Cyrus also reflected that Tyr had always been a good man. Bella silently recalled telling Tyr long ago that her heart had belonged to someone since childhood, and it had never wavered. Because of the heartbreak she and Tyr carried, Cyrus suddenly surged 5 levels, his body radiating light. Cyrus realized a powerful energy was erupting within him. A system alert informed him that every stat had risen by 27,500 points. Nay reeled in disbelief, insisting this was impossible. He should have been incapable of standing against her. Yet Cyrus now gleamed with overwhelming brilliance, as if touched by something divine. Nye spat that no matter how high he climbed, he remained nothing but a fragile human, an insect before monsters. But as her words hung in the air, Cyrus rushed in, striking with his full strength. Nye retorted that she could always slip away from clumsy attacks, but Cyrus's blade sliced directly across her body. Only after his strike ripped through her mask and robe did Nye realize he had truly broken her disguise. His system confirmed that the forbidden technique, Holy Sword Descent, was now unlocked. Nay screamed in fury at the insult of having her face marred. She pooled every ounce of her strength into a glowing sphere of destruction. Cyrus lunged back at Neye. She attempted to retaliate. A colossal detonation tore through the chamber. The beam ripped into her as well. In mere seconds, the ground crumbled away, leaving only the strip beneath Cyrus intact. Bella and Tyr were also thrown into the blast's radius. When the haze cleared, Cyrus saw Neye collapsed and unconscious, believing victory was his. His system displayed a 20-second cooldown on the divine sword. He sprinted for the altar but froze. It was still humming with power. He questioned why the altar had not been disabled. Then Neye's voice echoed, mocking if he truly thought the battle was done. She would never permit filthy humans to touch the demon god's blood. Cyrus checked. 9 seconds left. He roared back that he'd end her in exactly 9, but glancing at Bella, he saw her health plunging, dangling on the edge of death. Neye forced herself upright, shouting that as long as she breathed, he'd never prevail. She dared him to prove whether man or monster would stand triumphant. Cyrus stood torn, forced to choose between saving Bella and Tyr, or seizing the demon god's blood. In the end, he placed them first, and abandoned Neye to her fate. Cyrus lifted off and sped toward the exit. For a moment, Neye sighed in relief, sneering that humans truly were fools. Meanwhile, Cyrus barked at his map to reveal the fastest escape route. He had to rush Bella to medical help immediately. Yet no sooner had he left the chamber than monsters assailed him. Cyrus braced, blade ready. Bella remained unconscious, lost in memories. She relived her childhood, mocked and ridiculed as ugly, scorned by others who sneered that no one would kiss her. Though she longed to play house, they cruelly suggested she play the gorilla instead. Just then, Cyrus approached, and children warned him away, saying he'd become hideous if he touched her. To their shock, he slapped one of the taunters. The vision faded back to the present. Cyrus carved down the monster with a single sweeping strike. In Bella's dream, the boy Cyrus slapped sobbed, while Cyrus told her the game wasn't over. Since he was the boy and she the girl, he'd be the dad, and she the mom. He swore he would take responsibility for her. Back in reality, after downing the beast, Cyrus promised Bella she would be safe. Meanwhile, Neye glared at the altar, realizing it still demanded more fuel or the flames would die. With no other recourse, Neye resolved to sacrifice herself. Elsewhere, Cyrus hacked his way through monsters blocking his path. In the boss chamber, Neye shattered as she cast herself upon the altar as fuel. With her last breath, she cried to the demon god that she could no longer serve him directly. At the same time, Cyrus battled a dragon, driving his sword into it. The moment he felled the beast, his divine garment blade dissolved. The system notified him the target was vanquished, and the weapon returned. It added that the weapon would recharge in 12 hours, but Cyrus brushed it aside. The exit was close. Outside the dungeon gate, Cyrus and his companions finally emerged, greeted with relief and joy. Cyrus silently recalled how close he'd come to death underground, his dragon-scale armor shattered, all because of that cursed Cyrus. Surely by now Cyrus should have perished to the dungeon boss. Suddenly, voices cried that Cyrus had returned, carrying Bella and Tyr. Word reached Cyrus that Cyrus still lived. Cyrus froze, dumbfounded. Cyrus, however, looked grim and unflinching. Cyrus snatched a sword from an ally and roared, demanding how Cyrus dared tail them in secret, defying orders in an attempt to flee. As commander, Cyrus declared Cyrus unworthy to remain in the expedition. He added he would not waste guild medicine keeping Cyrus alive and swore to end it on the spot, preparing to strike. But before he could, Cyrus kicked Cyrus square in the face. He vaulted off him like a stepping stone, snapping that he had no time to waste on the likes of him. Cyrus collapsed unconscious, leaving the others stunned and crying out in outrage that he had dared strike their captain. One member shouted frantically that it was dire. Cyrus had knocked out their leader. They needed to rush into the hospital. The scene cut to the guild hospital. Ward boys racing stretchers with Bella and Tyr, screaming about an emergency. Cyrus sighed in relief once they were safely delivered, but he quickly turned back, determined to re-enter the dungeon. He was just a step away from the demon god's blood that could cure the poison. Back inside, the altar oozed a crimson substance. Slowly, it rose upward, and began shaping into a humanoid form. Sadiel watched nervously, wondering what being boss Neye had called forth with her sacrifice. He realized she had lived as Bio in disguise, none knowing she was truly a woman. The red mass sculpted itself into flowing robes, and a hand reached outward. The air grew crushingly heavy. Sadiel stiffened, describing the sensation as icy needles stabbing deep into her bones. It felt as though countless blades pierced her marrow. A creature with human features stepped from the crimson haze, remarking that the scene felt strangely familiar, like returning to its rightful dominion. When she appeared, Aithoth bore a youthful boy's frame but long, feminine hair. Feeling the pressure intensify, Sadiel panicked and tried to escape, convinced the place had become fatally dangerous. Aithoth sensed Sadiel's presence and advanced toward the wall. With nothing more than a single press of her finger, the entire wall crumbled apart under her touch, collapsing into ruin. The monsters standing above were startled in confusion, questioning why the floor beneath them seemed to be exploding. For in truth, her single thought had brought it down, exposing the presence of the one she had sensed. After the fall, Every monster was injured and speculated whether Boss Ne had been the cause of such destruction. Yet one of them shouted urgently for the others to raise their eyes. He pointed upward, showing that the underground dungeon had collapsed enough to reveal the open sky above. They debated among themselves if Boss Ne had truly caused it, but quickly dismissed the thought, realizing such devastation required a force far beyond her strength. While their arguments grew, Aithoth cut in sharply, declaring that Ne was dead and that she now required a servant. Hearing this, the monsters stiffened with unease, debating whether they should remain or flee. One monster dared to step forward toward Aithoth, claiming that their lineage had survived through ages thanks to their immense strength, and thus they would willingly follow someone even mightier than Boss Ne. At once, others clamored loudly, declaring they too wished to serve, but Aithoth roared that they were all too hideous, and in an instant she began to slaughter them. She proclaimed that she had no desire for ugly subordinates. Without another word, Aithoth walked directly toward Sadiel. She praised her appearance, instructing Sadiel to lift her head and open her mouth. With tears welling in her eyes, Sadiel obeyed and parted her lips. Aithoth let her own blood flow into Sadiel's mouth, commanding her to drink it. The moment she swallowed, Sadiel felt her body shift dramatically, an unfamiliar sensation rising within as though she was beginning to heal. Aithoth moved closer and explained that Sadiel should now feel comfort, for her blood had the ability to mend all wounds, strengthen immunity, and grant greater might. She added that during its digestion, the blood could bring Sadiel immense pleasure. Aithoth then noted that the night was approaching and advised her to find a clean room prepared for her. Unsure of how to reply, Sadiel merely nodded in agreement. The scene then shifted toward the guild headquarters. There was shown clutching Cyrus by the head, his fury evident as he demanded to know what Cyrus had said about their mission failing. Cyrus apologized, explaining that if he lost his role as captain, Darren would have to take over and account for all the guild's investigative resources. He urged Darren to think of a solution. He also warned that if their secret dealings of selling guild property were discovered, they would be in grave danger. Darren shoved Cyrus back and shouted for him to shut his mouth, saying he already knew all of that. Darren then asked if Cyrus had just admitted that someone from his team disobeyed his orders. Cyrus confirmed and revealed the name. Cyrus. Checking the file, Darren saw that Cyrus was only an F-ranked hero. He ordered Cyrus to place all blame on Cyrus, and decreed that Cyrus be executed for desertion. The story returned to the dungeon, where Cyrus stood bewildered at the sight of the collapsed halls. He rushed quickly to the altar, hoping his antidote remained, but to his shock, it had already been emptied. Meanwhile, Sadiel sat quietly, waiting patiently for Aithoth. Suddenly, Aithoth placed her hands on Sadiel's shoulders, prompting Sadiel to beg her not to. To her surprise, Aithoth embraced her tightly from behind, leaving her stunned. She felt something soft pressing gently against her back. Sadiel, who had always believed Aithoth to be a boy, became confused as she tried to reconcile that thought with the soft sensation. Then, out of nowhere, Aithoth whispered into her ear, leaving her dazed, seduced, and slipping away from the embrace. Flustered, Sadiel turned back and froze, seeing Aithoth's form had shifted into that of a proper girl. As Aithoth asked her if she disliked being hugged. Still baffled, Sadiel questioned how Aithoth could alter her form so easily. Aithoth explained calmly that there was nothing unusual, for at night, she lost all her power and reverted to her true self, a girl. She also warned that during the night, Sadiel must act as her protector, eliminating anyone harboring ill intent. She cautioned Sadiel not to betray her or attempt escape, since consuming her blood during the day bound their essences together. If she willed it, Sadiel's body could dissolve instantly even at night. Left with no choice, Sadiel obeyed in silence. Elsewhere, Cyrus grew tense as he searched every corner of the dungeon for the blood of the demon god. Finding nothing, he held on to the hope that it must be hidden somewhere, and asked his system to reveal the dungeon map so he could explore every part. At this point, Aithoth told Sadiel that she had not wished for things to turn out this way, but her heart was sealed within the Heroes Guild, keeping her from regaining her complete form. Thus, each night she became a frail human, but once day returned and the demon god's strength was restored, they would march toward the guild headquarters to reclaim her heart. When that happened, all monsters across the world, whether at day or night, would bow again before her might. Suddenly, Sadiel heard the sound of footsteps approaching, so she moved, intending to investigate, but Aithoth stopped her, warning that in any battle she must remain within 5 kilometers. Should Sadiel exceed that range, she would take it as an escape attempt and dissolve her instantly. She asked if Sadiel understood, and Sadiel replied yes. Meanwhile, Cyrus' system informed him that the blood of the demon god was hidden within the AS underground dungeon. Thrilled, Cyrus confirmed it was indeed there. He dashed toward the chamber where Aithoth and Sadiel were staying, thinking it the final room left unchecked. Before he could enter, Sadiel hid at the doorway, ready to strike. She launched a sudden kick at Cyrus, but he evaded it with ease. Sadiel was stunned to realize it was the same human she had encountered earlier that morning. At that moment, Aithoth began to feel strange, her body twitching unexpectedly. This only ever happened when she was near her heart. Sadiel demanded to know why Cyrus had returned when Ne was already dead, urging him to flee before sunrise. Cyrus was taken aback to see her restored body capable of fighting. He then teased her, asking if she had enjoyed the mushroom snack he had given her. Hearing this, she flushed with embarrassment and denied it. She shouted that it had been the most revolting mushroom she had ever eaten in her life, and ordered him to leave. Yet Cyrus' system displayed that her favorability toward him had reached 71%. Watched all. Cyrus was delighted, remarking that she was blushing, and that her fondness for him was higher than expected. Before he could finish, she lashed out with a kick, shouting that he was speaking nonsense. She insisted she had no affection for him at all. She swung again, only to miss, and hit her own face, smashing it painfully. She spat in disgust, declaring that her feelings toward humans were nothing but revulsion. Yet to her shock, his body had vanished from under her foot, leaving her stunned. When she spun around, she saw him dashing toward the chamber. Sadiel wondered how he had escaped after she clearly stomped him. Cyrus called back that he had urgent business, and they could play another time. As he neared the door, he sensed the blood of the demon god within. Before he could open it, Aithoth herself pulled it open. In his rush, Cyrus had accidentally pressed against her chest. He froze, startled to find a human girl before him in the dungeon. Realizing what he had done, he yanked his hand away. Sadiel asked Aithoth why she had come out, but Aithoth, furious at his touch, seized his hand and squeezed hard. From that very spot, a radiant spark of light burst forth. Aithoth was stunned to see it was her heart, and she questioned why her heart resided within a human. Cyrus pushed her away, tense and demanding to know what she was doing to him. His system then revealed the truth. The human girl before him was the blood of the demon god itself. Cyrus was staggered, wondering how his antidote had transformed into a human being. Acting on impulse, he grasped her hand and cut her palm, pressing his lips to drink her blood. He gulped it down, hoping desperately that her blood might be the antidote he sought. As he did so, Aithoth convulsed with strange sensations, her body twitching uncontrollably. Yet his system declared that the poison remained uncured, leaving him only 101 days of life. Staring in disbelief, Cyrus asked how her blood could be ineffective. Aithoth only smiled darkly, realizing that since she had become human, her blood naturally held no effect. Suddenly, Sadiel intervened with a kick, demanding that Cyrus release Aithoth, but Cyrus evaded with ease and leapt back. Aithoth then wondered aloud how her heart had been absorbed by a human, transformed into an essence bound inside his unworthy body. She realized that to regain her power, she must forcibly reclaim it from him. But doing so would cause his body to dissolve into a pool of blood, punishment for daring to use her power without consent. Cyrus then speculated whether other fluids of her body might carry the antidote instead. He resolved first to take her away and only then consider further options. Yet as he moved cautiously toward her, something burst forth from beneath the ground. A powerful monster appeared. It was Ghana, a boss-class being. With joy, Ghana shouted that even from thousands of miles away, she could sense Aithoth's presence. That sensation had shaken her deeply, stirring wild emotions. Ghana declared she had never removed the bell Aithoth once gave her, proof of her unwavering devotion. Ghana then asked if she could consume Aithoth now, promising that afterward Aithoth would belong to her alone. Sadiel was stunned, and Aithoth's expression grew tense. But before anything could happen, Cyrus seized Aithoth in his arms and sprinted toward a hole in the wall. Without hesitation, he leapt through it. As he soared, he wondered how such a boss-ranked creature had suddenly appeared in this dungeon, and concluded he must first secure Aithoth's safety. Ghana, however, leapt after them through the same hole. She shouted at Cyrus to return Aithoth to her. She demanded he stop fleeing. The scene shifted once more, to moments later at the Heroes Guild. Cyrus had brought Aithoth there, believing it to be safe. Relieved, he thought he had finally shaken Ghana from pursuit. Inside the hall, Cyrus sat beside Aithoth. She asked tensely where he had taken her. Cyrus replied that this was the Heroes Guild in Zones, his home. Upon hearing this, her heart lifted, for if true, her plans would be far simpler. Once she reclaimed her power, she could sweep through and make them all pay for tampering with her heart. So Aithoth rose to her feet, cupped Cyrus' face in her hands, and with a look of sorrow claimed she had been cursed by a dreadful monster. If she did not find a human mate soon, she would perish. She begged him to save her, but Cyrus, steadfast, declared he was a noble hero, and would never take advantage of another's suffering. Yet even so, as Aithoth leapt upon him, face twisted with grief, pleading in pain that he rescue her. Upon hearing this, Cyrus stiffened, questioning how he had ended up in such a humiliating circumstance. Deep within, his conscience warned him never to exploit another's weakness that way. Otherwise, his noble spirit would be crushed under unbearable torment. Yet soon he believed that as a champion, he bore the duty to ease the suffering of others. Watching idly was never an option. Cyrus extended her hand toward Aithoth, convinced that he was prepared to endure agony and surrender himself just to preserve her life. Meanwhile, as Aithoth leaned closer to kiss her, her secret thought was that once she siphoned his essence and restored her might, she would annihilate every last one of them. But when she drew near, Cyrus noticed something between her thighs and, bewildered, asked if it was a tail and how she possessed one. Cyrus suddenly recalled that tails normally grew at the back, yet Aithoth's was in the front, revealing it to be a male organ. Staggered by this, Cyrus froze and shoved Aithoth away in alarm. His nerves shot through him, causing him to recoil further. During that motion, Yug slipped out of his pocket. Cyrus tea. And then she was pressed urgently, asking Aithoth why there was a sword positioned there. Aithoth closed in on Cyrus with sultry eyes, whispering that he had already promised to save her. At that moment, Aithoth realized dawn was breaking, her form beginning to shift. It signified her dual nature. By day she became male, but by night she transformed into a flawless human girl. She again rested her palm on his leg, ready to kiss him, declaring Cyrus could not retreat from his vow. Cyrus stiffened, unsure how to respond. To his relief, the tension broke when Yug suddenly began transforming. Even Aithoth blinked in puzzlement, asking what was happening to his creature. In an instant, Yug reverted fully into her monstrous state, and wailed about her hunger. She was starving. Once more, Yug begged Cyrus for aid, calling him master. Cyrus seized the chance, telling Aithoth that Yug's need was more urgent, so he would help her first before tending to Aithoth. Aithoth faltered, speechless. Meanwhile, Yug complained that Cyrus's pocket was too cramped for her to even stretch. Without delay, Cyrus dashed to the kitchen, announcing that if Yug was hungry, he would cook for her. While preparing food, he reflected that cooking bought him some time. But what now? If he ignored Aithoth, she truly would perish, yet he lacked any means of resisting her either. He questioned if he truly needed to mate with Aithoth. The uncertainty soon gnawed at him until frustration boiled over. As he cooked, Aithoth crept up silently behind, deciding she could wait until morning to regain her strength. Though Cyrus noticed, he acted as if he hadn't. Realizing this, Aithoth understood he was rejecting her intentions. She thought that if Cyrus refused willingly, she would have to compel him into unnatural acts. Abruptly, Aithoth closed in, reaching for that forbidden place, but Cyrus swiftly snatched the dish from the stove and bolted outside toward Yug. He claimed the meal was ready, and that he must feed Yug first. Aithoth fumed, cursing her frail human form for failing to overpower Cyrus. Once outside the kitchen, Cyrus spotted Yug's tail poking from the bathroom, prompting him to investigate. Looking inside, he was shocked to find Yug drinking toilet cleaner. He feared for her safety after such a thing. To his amazement, Yug beamed, exclaiming that it tasted wonderful. In the following moment, Yug devoured the meal. Then Aithoth approached Cyrus, insisting that since he had already fed Yug, it was now her turn. Cyrus asked her to calm down and hear him first. To his dismay, Aithoth snapped and yelled she didn't want excuses. She wanted it, immediately. Just then, his system signaled that the deadline for weapon retrieval had arrived. Still in frenzy, Aithoth ripped Cyrus' clothes to shreds, leaving him stunned with only a scrap covering him. Flushed with red cheeks, Aithoth advanced slowly toward him. At that instant, Cyrus' system reminded him of his mission. He had to sprint through the streets and wave at 33 people. Outraged, he shouted that he'd never stoop to such nonsense, but the system warned that if he failed, he would be forcibly drawn back into advanced paradise in reverse. Behind Cyrus, a door materialized and creaked open. He braced himself, anxiously awaiting what lurked beyond. When it opened, he was horrified to see lifeless boy mannequins beckoning him to come play. Cyrus screamed that this was far more terrifying than running around naked. He then fretted about the pitiful strip of cloth covering him. It wasn't wide enough to conceal his waist, leaving his back completely bare. Standing up, pressing front and back with both hands, it was impossible to wave at strangers. Overwhelmed, Cyrus wept, realizing nothing could hide him properly, and exposure was inevitable. Without hesitation, he charged toward the door, shouting for Yug to watch over Aithoth while he slipped outside. Watching Cyrus dash out, unclothed, Yug marveled, wondering if humans often behaved like this. Aithoth sighed sadly, realizing she would have to wait until sunrise. Yug then offered Aithoth some toilet cleaner since it was tasty, but Aithoth flatly refused. Outdoors, Cyrus hid his face behind the rag, figuring it was better to shield his identity than his body. He sprinted toward the barbecue plaza, knowing a crowd would gather there, but his troubles worsened. Upon arrival, the monster Ghana sensed him and appeared. She fumed that Cyrus had managed to slip away so quickly. Cyrus, once there, began waving frantically to draw attention. A girl was the first to notice, shrieking that a pervert was on the loose and begging for help. More townsfolk gathered at her cry, but amidst the uproar, Cyrus managed to fulfill 1/3 of his mission, with just 7.5 seconds to spare. Now he was chased by angry men for streaking through the city, racing into denser crowds. The scene shifted back to Sarah's home, where Sadiel appeared at the window. Yug stiffened at the sight of someone outside. Relieved, Sadiel greeted Aithoth, but warned that they were in the Brave Heroes Guild's territory, making exposure dangerous. She urged them to flee quickly. Aithoth replied that since dawn neared, hiding was pointless. She then commanded Sadiel to seek out Cyrus. When the sun rose, she told him to spill her blood on the earth and she would find her way back. Sadiel obeyed and sprinted off, wondering uneasily whether Cyrus would turn human flesh into blood after reclaiming essence. The disturbing thought tightened her chest. Suddenly, she heard clamorous shouts. To her shock, she spotted Cyrus streaking down the road with pursuers. Even while chased, he kept waving at bystanders, stunning them with his absurd determination. His system confirmed he had greeted 2/3 of the required count, thrilling him since only a handful remained. Out of nowhere, a gigantic spider monster erupted onto the scene, striking those chasing Cyrus. Cyrus heard the chaos and spun around. Astonished, he saw destruction unfolding. Citizens screamed for evacuation and reinforcements, yet Cyrus puzzled over how a monster appeared at such a dire time. Despite doubt, he resolved to fight. But when he asked the system to activate, it replied that during the weapon retrieval quest everything was reset to rank FI. Shocked, Cyrus wondered what was happening. An urgent citywide announcement rang out about the monster, ordering evacuation. Meanwhile, a boy named Sam was shown grappling a piercing spider by its leg. He shouted desperately for someone to hand him a weapon. Unexpectedly, Cyrus approached, shook his hand, and congratulated him. Outraged, Sam yelled if Cyrus was insane for exchanging greetings mid-battle, and if the monster had knocked off his pants. Distracted, Sam lost grip, and the spider lunged to strike. Fortunately, an A-rank hero named Kak arrived, cutting the beast down and saving Sam. Kayak scolded Sam, asking if defeating such a small spider was truly beyond C-rank fighters. Standing with him was Charlton, the vice president of the Heroes Guild. Charlton praised Kayak's valor, affirming his contribution on the field, and urged his immediate return. Kayak, however, brushed off concern, boasting that their guard detail ensured no monster could reach him. Suddenly, Ganna appeared, drawn to Cyrus' essence. At her sight, tension rippled across the crowd. Kayak swiftly ordered everyone to secure Mr. Charlton's safety. He lunged at Ganna with his blade, but she deftly slipped aside, brushing her cheek against his hand, teasing if his only wish was to get so close. Instantly, Kajak's hand dissolved, his body igniting in corrosive flames. Screaming in agony, Kajak realized the venom and warned others to stay back. Ganna laughed, mocking humans as too fragile to endure even a trace of her poison. Another hero commanded the evacuation of Charlton while he held Ganna back. Ganna smirked, asking if he truly wanted to hold her, mocking their underestimation. Elsewhere, Cyrus had only one person left to complete his mission. When another warrior fell, consumed by Ganna's poison, she purred that the cries of poisoned humans delighted her ears. When his shrieks ceased, Ganna lamented she hadn't heard enough. Slowly, she advanced toward Charlton, who screamed for help. Cyrus arrived, commanding Ganna to spare Charlton. He urged Charlton to meet his eyes, and as Charlton did, Cyrus' mission completed, and his garments returned. Cyrus immediately called on the system. It offered him a card to draw. Upon choosing, the system declared he had obtained the Silent Divine Finger. This weapon held the uncanny power to transmit enemy sensations whenever Cyrus touched nearby surfaces, making him feel their torment. And when foes screamed from the core of their being, it triggered the Silent Force, a devastating ability for battle and strategy alike. Spotting Cyrus, Ganna lit up, recognizing him as the mortal bound to her master, Aithoth. She charged, demanding where he had hidden Aithoth. Cyrus calmly replied he would deliver Aithoth to her. Ganna sneered, vowing to kill Cyrus first before claiming Aithoth herself. Cyrus locked onto her as his prey. When Ganna lunged, he dodged and leapt aside. His hand brushed the ground. The instant Cyrus touched it, Ganna felt something strange. As though invisible hands caressed her body, the sensation flustered her, leaving her bewildered as to why she felt that way. She let out a piercing scream at the sudden touch, and that cry instantly registered at 12%. Activating the Silent Force. The invisible power struck back at Ganna, flooding her body with pain, and leaving her staggered in shock. Clutching her chest, she questioned whether Cyrus had just touched her there a moment ago. She interpreted the jolt that followed her scream as some unseen force, likely tied to Cyrus' skill. It was not lethal, yet it hurt her deeply. That realization cemented her suspicion regarding Cyrus' ability. Ganna proclaimed with conviction that both her body and her soul belonged to none other than Lord Aithoth. She swore that if anyone besides Aithoth dared lay a hand on her, they would meet death, and she vowed never again to let such a shameful sound escape her lips. Gathering herself, Ganna expelled all the toxins from within her body, concentrating them in her palm. She then declared to Cyrus that she would deliver his scorched remains as her apology to Lord Aithoth. Cyrus tensed as Ganna prepared her strike, hearing her scream that he would pay with agony for touching her. Even though Cyrus narrowly dodged her first blow, Ganna pressed forward relentlessly. She reached out, attempting to seize him from below. At that instant, Cyrus placed his hand firmly on the ground and rubbed it, prompting Ganna to cry out. This time, the cry erupted from the sharp sensation that coursed through her armpit, with her scream value spiking to 43%. Once more, the force struck her violently. The impact overwhelmed her with distress, while Cyrus himself pondered the nature of it. To him, the feeling resembled the act of brushing against her armpit. Meanwhile, Ganna writhed in pain, admitting inwardly that the sensation was many times harsher than before. She could not understand how she had cried out again when she had sworn to stay silent. But this time the sensation struck her armpit, and it left an unbearable itch. For a fleeting moment, it even brought her a twisted kind of delight, realizing that Cyrus too could provoke reactions similar to those once evoked only by Lord Aithoth. Ganna clutched the sacred bell gifted to her by Aithoth. Holding it close, she muttered an apology in sorrow, tormented by confusion over how Cyrus, a mere mortal, could mirror the presence of her master. The thought disgusted her, for a human could never measure up to Aithoth's nobility. To shake off such thoughts, Ganna struck herself hard. Regaining composure, she smiled and asked aloud if Lord Aithoth would now forgive her. On the other side, Cyrus was taken aback by the sight of Ganna harming herself, interpreting it as evidence of unstable madness. Ganna turned back to him, remarking that his attack method was bizarre, before declaring she would now get serious. Drawing her blade, she braced herself to strike. Cyrus, watching her pull out the weapon, wondered just where she had been concealing such a thing. He analyzed the fight so far. The first strike had connected with her chest, the second against her armpit. By measuring the spacing, he calculated what her next move might be. He concluded her likely aim would be at his back, and with that, Cyrus abruptly broke into a run. Ghana immediately gave chase, shouting in fury at why he would try to flee now when it was far too late. Leaping at him, she lunged with her weapon, yet Cyrus managed to evade her strike. He shouted back that his agility surpassed hers, and would not allow himself to be cornered. Ghana coolly acknowledged that she already knew this. Then she flung strands of spiderwebs straight at him. The sticky threads caught him, tangling his body as he struggled to wriggle free. Ghana mocked that escape was impossible. Declaring it was the end, she surged forward with her weapon ready. But at that crucial moment, Cyrus forced one hand free from the webbing and touched the floor. As he did, he questioned whether he was correct, for the sensation that returned to him felt disturbingly like the inside of her thigh. Ghana once more trembled, caught between confusion and tension, bewildered by Cyrus' uncanny technique. This time, she clamped her hand tightly over her own mouth, determined not to cry out. Cyrus attempted again to provoke her, as though tickling her, but Ghana steeled herself, refusing to let even the faintest sound escape. She succeeded, the scream percentage rising only to 1%, too weak to trigger any major effect. Relieved, Ghana rejoiced inwardly that her restraint had worked, realizing silence was her shield against his power. When she turned her eyes toward him, she was shocked to see that Cyrus had slipped free of her webbing. From behind her came Cyrus's voice, reminding her he had never promised to run away. Ghana smiled coldly, mocking his choice to stay as a fool's mistake. Sliding something into her mouth, she announced that she had deciphered every one of his attacks, and that the chance he had to escape earlier had been his last. Now she vowed to crush him utterly. When she removed her hand, it was revealed that she had sealed her lips with spiderweb. By silencing herself in this way, Sarah's ability to provoke screams would no longer harm her. Cyrus calmly asked if the spot she had just felt was truly the inside of her thigh. Flustered and furious, Ghana burned with shame, condemning him as a vile human for fixating on her body. From her silence, Cyrus understood and explained that by confining her, he had aligned every reaction point precisely with her proportions. He declared the next phase would be a battle of dominance, where he would relentlessly assault her weak points until she completely broke. Ghana, however, told herself that no matter what part of her was struck, she had already steeled herself not to cry. Cyrus rubbed his hands against the walls again. Ghana braced herself and endured, successfully withholding a scream. Cyrus himself was startled that she showed no reaction. Yet, inside, Ghana was tense, recognizing that the sensation was different, deeper, as though piercing into her very heart. Still, she resisted. Speaking inwardly to Aithoth, she reaffirmed her loyalty, insisting this fleeting pleasure could never rival her master. Cyrus once again pressed his palms to the walls. Then he rubbed them together, taunting her to savor it. Ghana felt herself waver, wondering why the feeling stormed directly into her mind. Elsewhere, Charlton observed the entire spectacle, amazed to see the female monster's body contort and squirm again. He questioned in awe what kind of mysterious art could make such a creature utter such sounds, even entertaining the thought of learning it himself. Meanwhile, Ghana was shaken, bewildered at how Cyrus' ability burrowed into her heart with such intensity. It was a force unlike anything she had ever experienced, so overwhelming that even the image of Aithoth began to blur. Alarmed, she fought against it, refusing to allow such treacherous thoughts, swearing that she belonged solely to her master. Cyrus, for his part, was stunned that she still hadn't screamed, concluding his stimulation wasn't yet enough. Summoning all her venom, Ghana infused her weapon with every last toxin. She charged at Cyrus, certain she would not fall easily. Seeing her advance, Cyrus pressed himself against the wall and rubbed his hands, daring her to taste his skill again. Instantly, Ghana convulsed, collapsing to the ground as she fought to endure. Her entire body tensed, unable to resist the overwhelming rush. She realized with dread that unless she eliminated Cyrus, the shadow of Aithoth would vanish from her heart. Driven by desperation, she hurled her poisoned blade at him, yet Cyrus evaded the strike. Ghana had anticipated his dodge. As the blade neared him, she released its venom, filling the cramped space with deadly toxin. She believed he could not possibly escape in such close quarters, and as the air cleared, she was certain he had been fully engulfed, convinced his body was fatally poisoned. But to her shock, Sarah's voice cut through, declaring that he would not fall for the same kind of trick she had once used on him. Looking upward, Ghana was stunned to see him standing on the rooftop. From above, Cyrus shouted that it was his turn now. Then he hurled himself down into the narrow space, sliding his palms along the walls from ceiling to floor as he descended. The sensation that struck Ghana this time was far more intense. It surged stronger with each heartbeat. She clenched herself tightly, believing it would pass within moments. But because of the tall walls, the stimulation dragged on longer than before. Panic rose within her as she realized it wasn't stopping. Last time it ended swiftly, so why now did it persist? She prayed desperately for it to cease. At last, reaching her breaking point, she whispered an apology to Aithoth, admitting she could endure no longer. Her scream erupted with full force, and Cyrus' system registered the value at a complete 100%. Even the locket bestowed by Aithoth shattered in that instant. A violent shockwave burst outward around Ghana. The force drained her magical energy until her reserves fell to nothing. In the aftermath, her form collapsed into that of a small spider. Cyrus' system confirmed defeat, retrieving the weapon as the enemy's essence was subdued. Walking forward, Cyrus scooped the tiny creature into his hand. His system displayed that Ghana's favorability towards him had reached 100%. It also announced that a passive conquest had been achieved, granting him the exclusive ability of the defeated boss. Thus Cyrus gained the skill, Toxic Fusion, which allowed him to fuse lethal poisons into his weapons. He even speculated whether his own body's toxins could be infused the same way. The scene then shifted to Sadiel, who cut herself and let blood fall to the ground in a ritual to summon Aithoth. As the summoning concluded, Aithoth vanished from the chamber, leaving Yug frozen in shock as he witnessed it. When summoned, Aithoth manifested in the form of a man. From this point onward, the narration will refer to him as such. The first thing Aithoth asked was Sadiel's knowledge of Sarah's whereabouts. With visible tension, Sadiel apologized and admitted that she had lost track of him. Aithoth was taken aback by her words. He explained that the human body he was currently occupying was none other than her heart. If he failed to reclaim it, once night came, he would regress into a powerless mortal. Even after hearing this, Sadiel confessed once again that she had indeed lost sight of Cyrus. Suddenly, Aithoth caught faint noises drifting from the city and quickly recognized the aura. It was undoubtedly the power of the system. Without delay, he took off in that direction. Sadiel's eyes followed his retreating figure, her expression stiff with unease. The focus returned to Cyrus, where his system unveiled a newly acquired skill called placement. This ability allowed him to send subdued monsters back to their original dwelling. When Cyrus uttered the command placement, Ghana vanished from his grasp and reappeared inside Yug's chamber. Yug, bewildered after something struck her head, looked up to see a spider and cried out in surprise. Meanwhile, Aithoth abruptly seized Cyrus before he could react, locking his head in his grip. Fixing his gaze upon Cyrus, Aithoth voiced his disappointment, scolding him for once promising salvation yet fleeing halfway, which ignited his fury. Witnessing Aithoth in human form, Cyrus realized without doubt that this was the same being who had deceived him regarding the curse. Aithoth confirmed it directly. Cyrus then asked him what his intentions were now. Aithoth demanded that Cyrus fulfill the promise he had abandoned. Cyrus flatly replied that he had no interest in men. With a smirk, Aithoth altered his form and asked if this appearance would change his mind. Cyrus hesitated and turned his head back in shock, finding Aithoth transformed into a girl clad in a cat-themed dress. Aithoth even purred a playful meow, asking if Cyrus would finally be interested. Cyrus roared back his refusal, declaring that regardless of what forms Aithoth assumed, his disinterest remained the same, for he did not like men. He then attempted to land a punch on Aithoth, but Aithoth intercepted, twisting his fist painfully. With mocking persistence, he remarked on humanity's fascination with cat ears and black stockings, suggesting they indulge together. Yet when rejected again, he sank into dejection, hinting darkly that he might be forced to resort to harsher measures. Aithoth then licked Cyrus' finger. Startled, Cyrus demanded to know if he was serious, insisting that he stop. But Aithoth smiled with delight, savoring the taste. Cyrus tried to escape, but Aithoth restrained him easily, declaring that no matter his struggle, he could not break free. Aithoth ascended into the sky, proclaiming that he had long surpassed the system's level. If Cyrus wanted to flee, he could try endlessly, but the conclusion would remain the same. He then taunted Cyrus, asking if he would lock him down and amplify his speed. Cyrus responded bitterly that he would never use the system's targeting power on a man, as it violated his principles as a human. In an instant, Aithoth hoisted Cyrus into the air and leaped over him, declaring that the blood coursing through Cyrus' veins was his antidote, implying that Cyrus had always harbored desire for him. He promised that if Cyrus obeyed, he would grant him a cure. Enraged, Cyrus shouted that if the only way to gain the demon god's blood was through such means, he would rather let his body dissolve into decay, for he would never commit such an act with a man. Aithoth's fury boiled over at his defiance. He vowed to discipline him, threatening to force himself upon Cyrus until he begged for more. Aithoth then pressed his hand against Cyrus's back, intending to return his power, system, and heart to himself. To his astonishment, the magic fizzled and dissipated. Baffled, Aithoth questioned why his magic had failed. Cyrus' system displayed a refusal to return, rendering every attack useless. At that moment, Cyrus' system asked if he was willing to sacrifice half of his lifespan for a chance to defeat Aithoth. Angrily, Cyrus retorted, asking if the system was truly foolish. Of course the answer was yes. The system clarified that once Cyrus locked onto Aithoth, it would unleash Aithoth's Spear of Oblivion. Aithoth would then be fully absorbed, purging the poison completely. Cyrus' life, however, would shrink to just 50 days. Cyrus also realized that as long as Aithoth was within 10 meters, he could fix his lock on him. Yet, before he could act, Aithoth released a surge of red smoke, engulfing everything around Cyrus. Cyrus was staggered, recognizing the smoke as Aithoth's doing. The haze was so thick he couldn't even open his eyes. At that moment, Aithoth sliced his own hand, and instantly the same wound appeared on Sadiel's palm. Alarmed, She wondered what was happening. In a blink, Aithoth teleported to her side. Arriving there drenched in sweat and tense, he realized he had narrowly escaped. Yet rage consumed him. The system's refusal to return left him betrayed. Sadiel stared in confusion, unable to grasp what had transpired. Aithoth also understood that the system had locked onto his position. Meanwhile, Cyrus was stunned to see the system fix Aithoth's location, though astonished that he had already moved such a great distance in an instant. Sadiel asked if Aithoth's sweating was from being injured. Aithoth scoffed, claiming none in the city could harm him. Since she had drunk his blood, their bodies resonated. Any wound he received would first be inflicted upon her. Startled, Sadiel pressed on, asking instead about Cyrus' fate. Aithoth admitted failure, saying his attacks now meant nothing against Cyrus. Sadiel, however, demanded clarification. Aithoth questioned whether she was secretly pleased that Cyrus lived. She denied it, voicing her hatred, and suggested that if Cyrus could not be harmed, they should simply return to the dungeon. Aithoth rejected the idea with fervor. He explained that after millennia within the system, he understood its workings. Though his attacks no longer mattered, pleasure was not categorized as an attack. Therefore, he believed he could drive Cyrus into ruin through it. Since the system struggled to find a compatible host, once Cyrus perished, it would return to him. Moreover, as a human again, his location would remain hidden from it. He then commanded Sadiel to seek out Cyrus again that night. Aithoth asked if Sadiel had mastered transformation magic. When she said yes, he ordered her to use it on him. While she cast the spell, he explained that at night he lost all magic, and thus relied on her to maintain his altered form. The transformation completed, Aithoth assumed the guise of a girl once more. Pleased, he remarked that Cyrus would fail to recognize him like this. He added that humans love tales of heroes rescuing beauties, so they would let Cyrus play that role. Then, with cunning, he could maneuver closer and eventually force Cyrus beneath him. Perplexed, Sadiel asked if he truly believed Cyrus could be undone through pleasure alone. Aithoth answered, yes, asking if she knew how he had once died, by a woman's hand through pleasure. Whenever he recalled how the system abandoned him, rage consumed him, screaming in disbelief at why the system had chosen Cyrus over him. Meanwhile, Cyrus wrestled with the grim reality that only 50 days of life remained. If he could locate Aithoth within that time, he could secure his cure and survive. With time slipping away, haste was his only option. Suddenly, his heart convulsed unnaturally. The poison inside his body flared again, this time seizing his legs. A searing pain erupted in his toe. He collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. Gradually, he lost consciousness. Alarmed, Charlton rushed to his side, demanding to know what had happened. The narrative shifted. Cyrus later awoke to find himself inside a hospital ward. The ward boy, noticing his recovery, cheered and ordered his assistant to inform Mr. Charlton. Cyrus asked who had brought him there. The ward boy explained it was Mr. Charlton, the guild's vice president. Cyrus was astonished. At that moment, Charlton entered the room. He asked if Cyrus remembered saving him, the overweight man ensnared by a monstrous spider. Cyrus recalled and confirmed it, then asked how long he had been unconscious. Charlton told him it had been 13 hours. Shocked, Cyrus muttered how drained he still felt from the long battle. Charlton apologized for his rashness, assuring he meant no harm. Grateful for his sincerity, Cyrus asked what the vice president wanted of him. Charlton praised his battle against the spider monster, marveling at his extraordinary magic. Cyrus pressed further, and Charlton confessed. Age had dulled his vigor, but seeing Cyrus reignited his yearning. If he could learn those abilities, perhaps he could overcome the suffering of his past decade. Cyrus still couldn't decipher his exact request. But Charlton dropped to his knees, pleading to be taught, to be accepted as his disciple. Cyrus was floored. This was the vice president of the Adventurers Guild. He pondered. If he accepted Charlton as a disciple, he could leverage guild resources to hunt Aithoth. Yet, as the ability stemmed from the system, he wondered how he could possibly teach it. Finally, he asked Charlton if he could handle the difficulty of such magic. Charlton answered firmly. Even if arduous, he would try. Masters lead the way, but students must walk it themselves. He vowed to give everything, even at the cost of his life. Cyrus instructed that this magic began with training at the fingertips. Without hesitation, Charlton bowed deeply, once again pleading to be accepted. He added that this must remain secret, for he was still the guild's vice president. Cyrus nodded. Such was his duty as master. Suddenly, Charlton's secretary, Daisy, entered with urgent news. At his permission, she stepped inside. She presented a warrant declaring Cyrus guilty of desertion and sentenced to death. Cyrus, baffled, demanded to know why. Daisy explained the document accused him of disobeying captain's orders during the Cyrus squad mission, abandoning his post, and causing failure. Charlton turned to Cyrus gravely, saying the charge was serious, but he would intervene since Cyrus was now his master. Cyrus insisted he had not deserted. He stayed behind to deal with the dungeon boss, Nay. Daisy replied she had gathered records of the squad's retreat, noting that an F rank and B rank had supposedly slain an S rank monster. To her, such a claim was absurd. Cyrus urged her to send someone for confirmation. She admitted the dungeon was already empty, but still, during the investigation, he would need to be detained. Charlton cut in, saying no. He trusted Cyrus. Daisy reminded him of protocol. Charlton then declared he would personally supervise Cyrus during the inquiry. She then reminded Charlton of his obligation to attend the guild's appreciation banquet that evening. Charlton requested Cyrus accompany him. Daisy objected, stressing the banquet's importance. Charlton paused, then resolved to leave Cyrus undisturbed until evening, promising to fetch him later. Cyrus agreed. Once they departed, Cyrus exhaled in relief, but then he thought of Aithoth. If the system still showed his location, he had to act. Opening the panel, he was startled to find Aithoth had not yet left the city. Looking closer, his shock deepened. Aithoth was frighteningly near. His mind raced. Could it be? Aithoth was inside his very home. Heart pounding, he sprinted back. Entering, he found the house empty at first glance. Venturing further, he discovered Ghana still present. Yet, Yug was gone. At once Cyrus deduced that Aithoth had taken Yug captive. The scene shifted to Aithoth and Yug. Yug, bewildered, demanded to know where she was. Aithoth grinned and answered. They were now at the auction hall for monsters and humans. Meanwhile, Cyrus raced toward the mark signal, realizing Aithoth had been stationary for over half an hour, which meant he was extremely close. Suddenly the marker vanished, and Cyrus realized he could no longer track Aithoth at night. Just then, as he pressed forward, someone ambushed him, yet he slipped past the strike without effort, questioning who could possibly be aiming at him now. The attacker identified himself as Raka, declaring that this place belonged to the Star Cavalry. He warned Cyrus that trespassers, whether they be heroes or monsters, would be punished without mercy. The mention of the Star Cavalry made Cyrus suspect they were the notorious bandits who thrived on abductions. The group braced themselves for combat against Cyrus, while Raka pointed out that the women and female monsters found in the prison were most likely bait, meant to lure outsiders into the open. He also cautioned that more heroes could be lurking nearby. Their plan was simple: capture Cyrus and force information out of him. Cyrus wondered whether the female monsters they spoke of included Yug. He thought it was a fitting moment to ask if they'd come across a perverted male monster in the area. Right then his system flashed a reminder. The weapon return mission would commence in just 2 minutes. A surge of unease hit Cyrus, since entering the mission would reset his stats back to their base rank of F. That left him no choice but to wrap up this confrontation swiftly within the short time that remained. Meanwhile, the focus shifted to Yug, who struggled in vain to break free from her enchanted shackles. The binding spell rendered her powerless, and without the nourishment from a male, her body weakened further. She pondered whether it would be better to return to her master's dwelling. Aithoth questioned Yug, asking if she, as a monster, didn't long to return to the dungeon. Yug replied that as a Ling-Lang lizard, she instinctively depended on the essence of men. She deliberately chose stronger partners, and preferred the dens of humans over caves of monsters, even adding that the wine she had drunk was delightfully exquisite. Suddenly, to the astonishment of both Yug and Aithoth, the wall burst open with a violent explosion. A boy came crashing into the chamber. It was Cyrus, relieved that the ordeal had concluded just in time before the 2-minute mark expired. He remarked that if they had simply given him the key earlier, they could have avoided a beating altogether. Just then, his system presented him with the weapon return mission. He was tasked with spanking someone 10 times until the sound resonated. The countdown was locked at 60 minutes. Confronted with this bizarre mission, Cyrus nervously approached the boy he had already beaten, and asked if he could still scream. But it was already too late. The boy had passed out cold. Cyrus regretted striking him with such force. Aithoth urged Cyrus to save them, but Cyrus hesitated, aware that they were on the outskirts where monsters could show up at any moment. Without the system's support, it was dangerous. He resolved to prioritize the mission before anything else. He unfastened Yug's shackles. Then he smacked her on the buttocks, drawing out a scream. With a sultry tone, she asked what on earth he thought he was doing. Cyrus explained bluntly that, in order to guarantee their safe escape from this place, he had to spank her backside, so she should not resist. Aithoth chuckled inwardly, thinking Cyrus was definitely no noble man. Dealing with someone like him only required teasing a little. He would easily take the bait. Aithoth could hardly believe Cyrus would spin such an absurd excuse just to get away with touching her. Taking on the form of a young woman before Cyrus, Aithoth pleaded to be released as well. She promised that if he freed her, she would not object to being spanked, and even offered herself willingly. Cyrus agreed, but the instant he undid the shackle, Aithoth lunged forward, clinging to him with tears in her eyes. She recounted how she had been violently kidnapped and brought there, trembling with fear at the threat of being sold to goblins. She then told Cyrus that now that he had saved her, she belonged entirely to him. At those words, Cyrus struck Aithoth's buttocks, but no scream followed. Tense, Cyrus demanded to know why she made no sound. Aithoth leaned in close, oddly requesting him to try again. Cyrus considered refusing, but before he could answer, the system declared that because Aithoth had failed to produce a sound, he was now frozen for 5 minutes. Cyrus collapsed, immobilized. Yug crawled over and cradled his head, whispering that her body felt unbearably weak, and that she desperately needed his essence and blood. Without it, she might faint or even die. But Cyrus was completely frozen by then, his eyes already sliding shut. With effort, He forced them open, only to see Yug kissing at his neck. Aithoth erupted in fury, yelling at Yug and calling her a shameless sorceress for making a move while she wasn't watching. She raised her hand to strike Yug, but before she could, Yug coiled her tail around her. Yug snapped back that Cyrus was her master, not Aithoth, and reminded her that she had arrived first. Though enraged, Aithoth could do nothing, musing that if it were daytime, he could have easily removed Yug. Choosing to let it go for now, he decided the real priority was reclaiming the system, not wasting time bickering with her. So Aithoth slyly suggested a three-way romance and moved in closer to Cyrus. Witnessing this, Cyrus questioned whether Aithoth was truly being forced against her will, unsure why she felt compelled to act this way toward him. Meanwhile, high above the chamber, Sadiel watched everything unfold. She pondered whether Aithoth genuinely wanted this intimacy with Cyrus, for she herself could feel the sensations mirrored within her own body. Aithoth confessed it had been a long time since she had played in such a manner, and the more Aithoth indulged, the more Sadiel was overtaken by the same intoxicating feelings, gradually losing herself to temptation. At that point, Aithoth told Cyrus to slowly bend her hand and press down gently. This caused Sadiel to shiver even more intensely, her skin tingling with goosebumps as her body numbed under the sensation. Aithoth's hand then slid toward Cyrus' most sensitive part. His body stiffened, silently praying she would stop before reaching that area. At the same time, Sadiel felt as though she herself were holding something tangible in her palms. Feeling that sudden grip, Cyrus instantly recognized it as something familiar. Upon closer realization, he saw that it was none other than Sadiel herself. Noticing Cyrus's furious glare, Aithoth wondered why his eyes had suddenly changed. Then it dawned on him. It was the technique he had unknowingly triggered. That meant his cover was blown. In panic, Aithoth called out to Sadiel, and with that, Sadiel appeared. Sensing imminent danger, Yug shrank into her smaller form. She darted straight to Cyrus, begging for protection. Aithoth urgently asked Sadiel to take him away quickly now that he had been exposed. Sadiel agreed, and readied herself to act. Cyrus was stunned, realizing Aithoth had actually disguised himself as a girl just to get close. He counted himself fortunate to have uncovered the truth. But with no access to the system, chasing after Aithoth was impossible. By the time Cyrus thawed from his frozen state, Aithoth was already long gone. He chose to complete his mission first, planning to track Aithoth once he regained the system. Still, he resolved that in the future, especially at night, he would be wary of any woman who tried to approach him. The scene then shifted to a Z security checkpoint. There, Daisy, Cyrus, and the rest of his squad awaited Cyrus. Seeing them, Cyrus was puzzled as to why they were present. Cyrus strode up to him, producing a warrant and announcing his arrest for desertion, insisting he come with them. To Cyrus's astonishment, Daisy interjected, identifying herself as Vice President Charlton's secretary. She reported that the dungeon investigation showed nothing inside, directly contradicting the charges against Cyrus. She explained that the process of revocation had already begun, so Cyrus could not be arrested now. Daisy also noted that Cyrus was scheduled to attend the guild's appreciation banquet later. Meanwhile, Cyrus quietly counted the number of men Cyrus had brought with him. Abruptly, Cyrus slapped Daisy in fury, shouting that she was clearly lying since only captains of a rank or above could attend the banquet. He accused her of faking her position as the vice president's secretary. He even declared himself to be the president, ordering her to leave immediately. Finally, he threatened Daisy that if she kept interfering, he would throw her into the interrogation chamber alongside Cyrus. Cyrus told Daisy to seek out the vice president directly, and bring back the official revocation order to secure his release, confident that Charlton would intervene. He asked if she could manage it within 20 minutes, to which Daisy replied 10 would be enough. Encouraged, Cyrus praised her speed and swore he would make them regret their actions with harsh punishment. The perspective shifted to the interrogation room, where Cyrus was surrounded on all sides. Cyrus questioned him coldly, asking if he remembered how his right hand had been injured. Cyrus kept silent. Cyrus went on, saying he had heroically led his squad into battle against the monster Nay, but Cyrus had attacked him from behind to escape. That cowardly move had left Nay the chance to strike, killing most of the squad. Cyrus claimed he had sacrificed his right hand to save the remaining members. He then roared at Cyrus, demanding whether a coward like him deserved to live or die. Cyrus finally answered, stating that a coward who fled from the enemy deserved to perish like a beast. The reply infuriated Cyrus, for he realized Cyrus was implying that he himself was the coward. Cyrus ordered one of his men to place a hammer on the table. At that moment, Cyrus calculated that 10 minutes had already passed, meaning the secretary should arrive soon. But the issue remained, without the system, all he could do was endure for now. Suddenly, Yug's voice reached him, startling him. Confused, he asked what she meant. Yug explained that Cyrus couldn't harm him because she absorbed some of his blood essence, which restored part of her magic, enough to withstand human torture. She made a bargain. Once they returned home, he would owe her double in repayment. Abruptly, Cyrus slammed the hammer down near Cyrus' hand, making him flinch. He then asked whether Cyrus preferred to choose which finger to start with, or if he should decide for him. Just as the blow was about to fall, one of his men interrupted, announcing that the vice president's secretary had arrived with Cyrus' revocation notice. The room fell silent. Everyone stiffened, barely able to believe the girl really was the vice president's secretary. Even Cyrus was shocked, questioning how an F-rank hero could possibly have ties to someone at that level. One soldier asked whether they should release Cyrus, since torture after a revocation was illegal. Everyone prepared to set him free, but Cyrus barked at them to stop, demanding the notice be returned to him after 30 minutes. Claiming ignorance, he insisted he had not yet received any official revocation. Cyrus burned with anger at Cyrus' shamelessness, yet Cyrus, face hardened with determination, shouted that Cyrus had to pay the price. Outside, Cyrus's men remarked that their captain had not emerged, and that they lacked permission to enter. Daisy demanded to go inside herself, insisting she had the notice. The guards blocked her, saying the interrogation room was off limits. Within the room, Cyrus brought the hammer down Cyrus' hand, but shockingly, Cyrus sustained no injury. Cyrus stared in disbelief. No broken bones, no bleeding, not even a scratch. Outside, Daisy still argued when Charlton suddenly appeared, asking the guard if he truly had the authority to deny entry. The guard stiffened and quickly stepped aside. Charlton kicked the door open and stormed in, catching Cyrus in the act of striking Cyrus with the hammer. Cyrus froze in shock, demanding to know why the vice president was here. Charlton held up the notice, explaining it was the revocation of Cyrus's arrest warrant, and ordered them to release him immediately. Cyrus' grip faltered, and he reluctantly agreed, dropping the hammer. They freed Cyrus. Charlton then declared that as a captain, Cyrus had abused his authority by torturing a subordinate, warning that such an investigation would almost certainly cost him his rank at the very least. Shaken, Cyrus claimed he had only acted because he had not seen the notice, adding that his men could testify for him, but none dared to step forward, unwilling to risk angering the vice president. Charlton demanded furiously what Cyrus had to say now, leaving him speechless. Secretly, Cyrus wondered if his only option was to plead with his brother for help. At that point, Cyrus stood and declared he could testify that Cyrus indeed had not seen the revocation notice, and furthermore, he said he would not pursue charges over the arrest. Instead, Cyrus insisted that Cyrus and the others bow and apologize properly to the secretary. Perplexed, the secretary struggled to understand what Cyrus was trying to accomplish. Moments later, the scene shifted, revealing the entire Crusade squad kneeling respectfully before Daisy. Cyrus stood there holding a stick, while everyone expressed their apologies to her. In a rage, Cyrus scolded them for daring to treat such a lovely secretary so rudely, then began striking each of them across their rear ends with the stick. As cries of pain echoed through the air, Daisy blushed and smiled softly while watching, her thoughts drifting to Cyrus. The squad pleaded for forgiveness, shouting that they were wrong and promising never to repeat such actions. With that, Cyrus felt his task was accomplished. He turned to inform Cyrus that the conflict between him and Daisy had now been resolved. Cyrus, uneasy, asked what exactly Cyrus meant. Suddenly, Cyrus gripped Cyrus' hand with anger and demanded that they settle their dispute immediately. Cyrus, tense, questioned whether Cyrus hadn't already said he would let the arrest issue go. Cyrus snapped back furiously, reminding him that the real matter was Cyrus striking his hand with a hammer. As he said this, he tightened his hold on Cyrus' hand, causing Cyrus to cry out in pain. Cyrus begged forgiveness, swearing he would never do such a thing again. Cyrus coldly agreed, then brought Cyrus's hand down hard against his knee, breaking it. At that moment, Cyrus's left hand fractured in the middle. His comrades, terrified, nervously asked if he was all right. Cyrus then stated that now he would forgive Cyrus. Charlton turned to Cyrus, telling him Daisy would escort him to the banquet, since Charlton himself first had to meet with an envoy from the Holy See. Cyrus, confused, asked what the Holy See was. Charlton explained that they had established a church devoted to eradicating evil thoughts from the world, armed with purification magic so potent it could cleanse any toxin from the body. The focus then shifted to the grand banquet hall, where the saintess of the Holy See, Mia, arrived alongside Charlton. As Mia entered, two young men whispered among themselves about her, shocked at how revealing her attire was. They questioned whether such clothing was fitting for a saintess. Suddenly, Mia halted and fixed her gaze upon them. Realization dawned on the boys. Mia had overheard their words. Mia declared that their doctrine was to eliminate all evil thoughts in the world. She explained that to do so, one must first understand those thoughts thoroughly, which was why members of the Holy See dressed as they did. She told them sternly not to defile her with their filthy stares. Hearing this, Charlton flared with anger and commanded the guards to strike the two boys 10 times. Terrified, the boys immediately began begging for forgiveness. Mia intervened, telling Charlton the punishment was unnecessary. She pointed out that if those two were punished, then nearly everyone in the hall should be punished as well, except for the president. Charlton froze, asking why he was considered any different. Mia replied that although his mind was unsettled, his body showed little response, unlike the others whose reactions betrayed their overwhelming impure thoughts. Embarrassed, Charlton protested that he was pure-hearted and simply had greater self-control. The crowd began whispering, spreading rumors that the vice president was impotent. Outside the hall, Daisy and Cyrus arrived. Daisy told him this was their destination and urged that they go inside. As they entered, Cyrus asked whether the purification magic of the Holy See was truly powerful. Daisy confirmed, saying it was their most unique ability. She explained that their magic could heal everything, from missing limbs to deadly poisons. She added that since being a hero was so perilous, Every regional hero guild had sought membership with the Holy See, yet all had been denied. Daisy continued, saying the Holy See refused to use their magic carelessly, even for those who desperately needed help, citing the corruption of evil thoughts. Cyrus wondered if they could cure his own poisoning, resolving that he needed to approach them soon. Upon entering the banquet hall, Cyrus noticed a large crowd gathered together, and asked Daisy what was happening. Daisy admitted she didn't know. Charlton arrived then, explaining that the Saintess was conducting a test to determine eligibility for collaboration with the Holy See. If successful, their hero guild in Zone Z would gain tremendous strength. The scene shifted to Mia, who pointed toward a treasure and explained it was the sacred evil heart, the prized relic of the Holy See. Once inside, its gemstones revealed the measure of evil thoughts within a person's heart. Whether or not one could collaborate with the Holy See depended on the purity of their heart. So far, no hero guild from any region had succeeded. The crowd murmured, wondering what awaited inside and how exactly it measured their impurity. Mia responded that if they wished to know, they simply needed to enter and try. A boy named Logan, captain of Team 7, stepped forward, boasting that his heart was pure and he had never done anything disgraceful. He volunteered to take the test. As Logan approached, Mia smiled knowingly. Upon stepping inside, Logan froze in shock, confronted by a Catwoman, his personal weakness. He blushed with shame as his eyes fell on her striking figure. Abruptly, she leaned close to him, alarmed. He wondered when she had dared to approach so near. She softly said, "Meow," immediately enchanting him. Overcome, Logan muttered that she was exquisite, and that he longed to pet her. The Catwoman asked what kind of play he desired. Logan confessed he wanted to play with her alluring features. Disgusted, she ordered him to stop. Then, with force, she hurled Logan out of the tent. Outside, he clutched his chin in agony, wailing from the impact. The gemstone displayed 88% evilness. Mia stared in shock, realizing Logan's heart brimmed with corrupt thoughts. The others grew uneasy, recognizing the dangerous temptation lurking inside that test. Another, Owen, captain of Team 6, boldly stepped forward, declaring that he could withstand the challenge. Yet soon he too was thrown out. The gemstone exposed his impurity at 92%. One after another, volunteers stepped in, but all registered above 80% evil thoughts. Mia grew exasperated, thinking the trial pointless. Every participant revealed themselves morally tainted. She doubted anyone could ever succeed. Just then, Cyrus stepped forward and calmly stated it was his turn. Mia, relieved, noted that he would be the final challenger. Upon entering, Cyrus was surprised to find the same Catwoman waiting inside. She drew near and asked what he intended to do. Her question hung in the air. To her astonishment, Cyrus gently placed his hand against her face. Then he firmly pushed her back. He declared he had no interest in being approached in such a manner. Deep within, though, he reasoned he must remain cautious. There was still a chance this was Aithoth in disguise. The Catwoman blinked in disbelief, remarking that he was the first man ever to refuse her advances. Outside, Mia was stunned to see the gemstone display 0%. The first time she had witnessed such absolute purity, as serene as still water. Inside, Cyrus stayed vigilant, still uncertain of her identity. He requested his system to initiate confirmation. The system asked if he wished to lock onto the enemy and unleash Aithoth's Spear of Oblivion. Cyrus grew tense, knowing he had only one attempt. A single mistake against Aithoth would doom him. Meanwhile, a Catwoman puzzled over his rejection, shocked by his hostility despite lacking any corrupt thoughts. She noted that his gaze upon her contained no lust, only suspicion. Frustrated, she bit her finger. His refusal irritated her more than those who had tried to cover her, because it denied her very allure. Determined, she resolved to find some way to make Cyrus's heart race. At the same time, Cyrus planned how best to test whether she carried malicious intent. Suddenly she lunged at him, shaking her chest to entice him, urging him not to look with such cold eyes and offering a tender embrace. But as she drew close, ready to wrap her arms around him, Cyrus slipped aside, evading her. She grew increasingly vexed by yet another rejection. Relentless, she dashed at him again, leaping through the air in hopes he would finally feel her warmth. She fully intended for him to notice her softness. Yet again, Cyrus dodged. He decided this angle might allow him to confirm if anything was hidden beneath her attire. He maneuvered opposite her, trying to inspect carefully. His eyes inevitably fell on her ample chest. A blush crept onto his cheeks, though he remained focused on verifying her nature. The Catwoman noticed his persistent gaze, even as he continued to evade her. Afterward, both of them paused, keeping their distance. She pondered in silence why Cyrus showed no impurity whatsoever. Yet Cyrus grew uneasy himself, struggling to avert his eyes from her chest. She demanded to know why, if his body reacted like the others, he showed no corrupt thoughts in his heart. Why was he so calm? Cyrus answered steadily, saying it was because he was upright by nature and harbored no lust toward her body. He explained further that a woman's chest was natural, a source of milk and life sustenance, and he gazed upon it only with gratitude. Her cheeks flushed as she listened, warmth spreading through her heart. She felt his brilliance, recognizing that he truly embodied those values. At last, she imagined herself diminished before him, realizing the vast distance between them. The Catwoman told Cyrus he had passed and was free to leave. Cyrus questioned if she genuinely meant it, wondering if she truly wasn't Aithoth. Joyful, he bid her farewell and exited. After he left, she reflected bitterly that perhaps her training was insufficient, as she had failed to sway him. Meanwhile, in the hall, murmurs rose. How could Cyrus register 0% evilness? They found it impossible that a man could resist a Catwoman entirely. Mia admitted this was the first time she had witnessed someone with a heart so pure. With some hesitation, Cyrus asked if this meant he had passed, and if she would now use purification magic to remove the poison within him. Mia answered yes, requesting that everyone else step outside. The scene then transitioned to a later moment, where Mia and Cyrus were alone together in the hall. Mia informed him that she was about to cleanse his body from toxins, and instructed him to lie down. After reclining, Cyrus asked if there was anything else he needed to do. Mia answered by telling him not to move. She explained that their purification magic had been granted by the Holy See, and that every individual possessed a particular part of their body through which they channeled magic. Mia revealed her right foot, and stated that her purification magic resided in her feet, using stepping gestures as the means of performing it. She then told Cyrus that during the process, he must not harbor corrupt or impure thoughts, as they would weaken the effect of the purification. With unease, Cyrus asked if those forbidden thoughts were meant solely in reference to himself. Mia confirmed, clarifying that ever since she became a saintess of the Holy See, her worldly desires had been stripped away. She urged Cyrus to release all tension, assuring that she would begin from the top and move downward to examine the state of his body. Since this was an essential part of the ritual, Cyrus accepted her request so she could treat his body more thoroughly. Mia began circling her foot over his hand, shifting and weaving her purification technique. Observing this, Cyrus assumed she was trying to adjust his hand with her foot, so he attempted to help by moving it on his own. Startled, Mia shouted at him not to move, insisting she would take care of it herself. She stressed that any movement from Cyrus would interfere with the casting of her magic. She then muttered that she felt cramped in the chair, and asked if she could use his face for balance. Without hesitation, she placed her feet against his face. Slowly, she directed her left foot toward his hand. Mia then declared that she was commencing the magic, and at the very instant she lifted her foot, Cyrus felt a sudden pressure weighing down on his face. Shockingly, he realized he was drifting in water and questioned where he had ended up. From above, a foot descended and pressed firmly against him. Cyrus tensed up under the force, for the weight was heavy, so he instinctively pushed the foot back with his strength. In reality, Mia's foot was forced back into the air. She urged Cyrus to remain calm and not resist her foot, reminding him it was part of the healing ritual. Mia went on to explain that her purification magic was transporting his consciousness into specific regions of his body. She reassured him she would guide him out of the water and heal his fingers. Cyrus acknowledged her and said he was prepared. When she placed her foot once more, Cyrus braced himself. As the foot neared, he leapt and clung to her toes, dangling in midair. Mia said she would pull him up in a single attempt, but Cyrus suddenly felt something beneath the water seize him. He quickly informed Mia that he was being ensnared from below. Mia replied that what bound him were the poisons inside his body. She urged him to grasp her foot as she pulled. He tried but couldn't secure a proper hold, so he contemplated tearing her dress to get a firmer grip. Mia caught on and scolded him, calling his idea disrespectful. Nonetheless, Cyrus clutched her foot tightly as she dragged him away from the poisonous roots. To his surprise, despite the strong pull, there was no pain. Instead, a soothing comfort spread through him. Suddenly, Cyrus felt warmth gather in his little finger. At the very moment he was lifted out of the water, he noticed in the physical world that his little finger had returned. As his eyes opened, he saw his finger regenerating, proof that the ritual was effective. Mia then remarked that she sensed another remnant of corruption, and asked Cyrus to remove his shoes. Just as before, his damaged foot was restored. Cyrus marveled at the astonishing might of purification magic. Mia then noted she needed to alter her approach now that she had located the source of the poison. She placed a chair between his legs and told him to lie down without moving, stressing that cooperation was vital for the detoxification. She then pressed her foot against his private area, identifying it as the core of the poison. The instant she touched, Cyrus froze in pain, questioning whether the corruption truly lay there. In the inner vision, Mia pushed him deeper into the water, saying she would send him down to drag the poison upward, so it could vanish and cleanse his body. Cyrus protested in fury that he could not breathe beneath the water. Mia soothed him, telling him not to panic, and then locked her legs around him, explaining that this method would amplify his strength to force the poison out. All at once, Cyrus felt his body enlarging. As he descended into the depths, he saw crimson roots sprouting from the seabed, and asked if these were the toxins within him. With resolve, Cyrus swam toward the roots, determined to tear them out. Meanwhile, in reality, Mia's body began to react strangely. At the same time, Sarah's system displayed that 1% of her favorability had been locked, signaling that Mia had been bound as his target, and now it seemed inevitable that Mia would be drawn in just like the others. So what do you think? Would she truly succeed in purifying him, or would her hidden impulses betray her? At the same time, Cyrus faced the necessity of battling Aithoth against his own will, to rid his body of poison. We rejoin the tale precisely as the purification ritual presses onward, and then the system suddenly locks Mia as the target, causing her body to react wildly. Right then, the poison surrounding our protagonist began to dissolve. Saintess Mia managed to activate the protective shield, and instructed him that while it held, He should dive deeper and shatter the poison within. Cyrus began descending further into the spiritual realm. He swam toward the heart of the poison. Tentacles disintegrated upon contact with the shield, showing that progress was steady. He expected to reach the core soon. Yet, despite swimming tirelessly, Cyrus realized he was no closer. Though he had traveled far, the core still seemed distant. Mia then explained that distances in body consciousness were unlike those in reality. Even when something appeared near, it could be far away. Meanwhile, Mia kept rubbing her feet anxiously to sustain the shield, but feared she would collapse from exhaustion. To her unease, waves of pleasure crept upward from her feet, and no wonder. Her system had locked, and her favorability had just surged to 21%, but trouble was unfolding. Cracks appeared in the shield, water seeped into the barrier. Cyrus cried out for the Saintess, who admitted her purification was faltering and she didn't understand why. Her favorability spiked to 47%. She confessed that wicked thoughts, lustful urges, were surfacing. She hastily warned him to stop entertaining improper desires, because his arousal was sabotaging the purification. Clearly, the situation was spiraling beyond control. Cyrus found himself once again ensnared by the poison, gasping for air. Mia struggled harder to mend the shield and keep the ritual alive. Yet her flushed face, and mine, favorability rising to 69% made it plain she was losing the battle. Inevitably, Cyrus began to drown, and just before suffocation could claim him, he snapped back into reality. Lying on the floor, he noticed the Saintess smiling strangely. Her favorability had climbed to 87%, and it was obvious she had taken peculiar pleasure in pressing her feet against him. She even looked eager to continue rubbing him to maintain the shield, her mind tangled with indecent thoughts. The favorability then climbed further, reaching 91%, but Cyrus quickly broke her trance by calling her out. The Saintess was startled to see Cyrus had returned, which meant her purification had failed. Confused and overwhelmed, she felt her heart pounding as if it might burst. Troubled sensations consumed her. She felt damp and unsettled. She became convinced that her corrupted thoughts had ruined the ritual, and shame weighed heavily upon her. Determined to protect the Holy See's honor, she resolved to conceal this event. At last, the Saintess declared the treatment complete, prompting Cyrus to ask if she truly couldn't purge his poison. She shook her head, explaining that while the Holy See could cure any poison, his case would require extended treatment. She promised that once she found a way to reach the core of the poison, she would inform him. For now, she could at least restore his limbs. She invited him to come to the Holy See whenever he wished to find her, and finally revealed her name as Lilia. With that, she turned and began walking away. Cyrus was left pondering whether Aithoth might be the only real solution for his affliction. Meanwhile, Lilia lingered behind a pillar outside. Her body was raging with uncontrollable desire, narrowly breaking her restraint, as her instincts begged her to bear children. In the next scene, we see Cyrus being hurled and kicked about by his brother like worthless debris. The brother was seething with anger that his frail sibling could not even accomplish a simple task. But Cyrus quickly defended himself, explaining that this time the president had interfered. His brother snapped at him to shut up, saying he wasn't interested in listening to pathetic excuses. His older brother then hurled an envelope at Cyrus. The bewildered man asked what it contained, and the senior sibling revealed it was a map leading to the A-rank dungeon known as Shia. Cyrus protested, pointing out that the boss of Shia was classified as an S-rank monster, and since he wasn't even at a rank himself, how could he possibly hope to fight it? To him, this sounded no different than volunteering for suicide. That was when his older brother clarified that the Shia dungeon had nearly been conquered already by heroes from Area K. The ones who returned reported that the boss, Shia, had suffered severe injuries, so much so that even F-rank heroes could potentially finish it off. Yet, the senior explained that he had intercepted this information and kept it from spreading, making the monster an easy target. This was the perfect chance to take advantage of the situation and claim the captain's seat. Upon hearing this, Cyrus' eyes lit up with excitement. He promised his brother that he would handle it without fail, but perhaps he was celebrating far too early, for the scene revealed that Shia, the monster itself, was already being repaired under the hands of Aithoth. Aithoth was feeding drops of his own blood into the monster's mouth. This caused Shia to recover fully. Rising from the ruins like a furious beast, Shia stood once again. The creature exhaled a long breath of relief, having narrowly avoided death. He quickly acknowledged Aithoth for saving his life yet again, and declared himself bound by a great debt, vowing to do anything required to repay the favor. As expected, Aithoth gave him only one command: kill a human for him, nothing more. And naturally, the target was none other than our protagonist, who also happened to be searching for this gender-shifting figure. The scene then shifted to the vice president, who cheerfully praised our hero for his remarkable contribution to the guild. He explained that their Zone Z would be cooperating with the Holy See, and their combined strength had risen dramatically. He assured the young man that if he had any requests, he should not hesitate to voice them. Without missing a beat, our boy demanded the captain's position. With that authority, he would have the freedom to choose which dungeon to challenge. The vice president readily agreed to fulfill his request. Cyrus then declared that he would head home to prepare, intending to leave the city by noon. With only 49 days left to live, he simply couldn't afford to waste time. The vice president asked why the urgency, noting that the guild was already understaffed, and promoting a new captain by noon might not be realistic. At that moment, The secretary stepped forward, offering her assistance. She explained that she was familiar with the process and could complete it before noon. She added that it was her way of thanking him for giving Cyrus the beating he deserved. Later, our hero returned home. As he opened the door, Yug greeted him warmly. She proudly told him she had cleaned the entire house and even finished preparing all the meals. Pressing herself against him, she boasted that with everything spotless, she was now the ultimate dream of any human and demanded praise from her master. Reluctantly, the young man admitted she was impressive, though mostly because he didn't want to suffocate in her overwhelming chest. She then asked if she could stay there forever since she was proving so useful. He, in turn, asked if she had no desire to return to her own home. The girl feigned ignorance about what a home was and said that monsters only had lairs, not homes. All the while, she continued to squish his face between her hands. Eventually, our boy agreed to let her stay, but he sternly warned her never to let anyone find out she was a monster, since they lived in a city of humans. If her identity were revealed, they would both be in danger. The maid beamed with joy, assuring him she was skilled at hiding. At that instant, her favorability reached 100%, and the system announced that closeness with her would double his gains. She then reminded him that since her work was complete, it was now his turn to fulfill his role. Cyrus, confused, asked what she meant. She reminded him that in the dungeon she had endured countless hammer strikes on his behalf, draining a large amount of her magic. Now she expected him to repay her with twice what she had lost. Our boy seemed fine with that, since intimacy with her would also double her strength, something that would be incredibly useful for their upcoming journey. It looked like a win-win arrangement. In the following scene, the secretary was seen driving her car, looking forward to arriving at Cyrus' home. She intended to deliver the official promotion notice. Meanwhile, Cyrus himself was in a rather compromising situation, as his muscular maid was tearing off his clothes. She rubbed her hands against his bare body. She commented admiringly on how magnificent his physique was. She drew nearer and nearer, and when she finally opened her mouth, she began to squeeze his manhood, making him groan. Whether from pain or pleasure was unclear. The system immediately flooded with notifications of all the stat boosts he was receiving, while the maid felt ecstatic from the power coursing through her. She refused to stop, continuing to squeeze him until he let out a loud cry of agony. She quickly loosened her grip and apologized, admitting she had gotten too carried away. Suddenly, the front doorbell rang. Our boy immediately realized the visitor must be the secretary bringing his promotion notice. He hurriedly told the maid to hide for a while. Once she was out of sight, he opened the door to greet the visitor. Sure enough, the secretary stood before him. He excused his shirtless appearance by saying he had just finished showering. As expected, the secretary congratulated him on his promotion to captain, and handed over the ID card, along with the official notice. He gratefully accepted both, and she also offered him fruit she had brought along. He thanked her again for the thoughtful gesture, especially since he had run out of food, and of course, we know exactly why his food supplies had been depleted. Yug listened intently from her hiding place. Meanwhile, the secretary blushed and told him he could always rely on her for help whenever he needed it. Unsurprisingly, Yug was displeased at the sight of her master getting cozy with the secretary, so she abruptly stepped out from hiding. The secretary's jaw dropped at the sight of a tall woman with a figure that could rival the entire adult industry. The young man was stunned as well, wondering why Yug had decided to reveal herself. To his shock, she had shifted into a human form. She immediately clung to him again, introducing herself as his affectionate sister. As Yug smothered him with kisses, the secretary's jealousy boiled over. She angrily snatched the fruit she had brought. With curt farewell, she stormed out in frustration. Yug, however, continued her relentless affection, which only deepened the secretary's irritation, prompting her to toss the fruit into the trash. Later, our boy donned his armor, and as he stood at the doorway, he assigned Yug an important task. She must transform into a human, purchase food, and make sure not to get caught. With that, he set out, determined to locate Aithoth at all costs. Just as he opened the door to leave, he spotted something lying on the floor. It was the fruit, with a note attached that read, "Sorry for getting mad earlier." Clearly, it was from the secretary. The story then shifted to Cyrus and his lackeys, who were ecstatic at the thought of striking it rich after defeating the dungeon boss. Cyrus, in particular, felt smug. With the map from his brother, this adventure seemed almost effortless. His underlings pointed out that 10 teams of rank heroes had come to Area K before, and all failed to defeat the boss. But those teams had weakened Shia greatly, leaving Cyrus in a perfect position. Growing arrogant, Cyrus declared that according to guild rules, the first team to kill the boss claimed all resources. So, it wasn't his fault if the previous heroes left the monster alive. At that moment, a colossal creature suddenly dropped from above, and to no one's surprise, it was our boy. He had just slain the A-rank stone giant and obtained the map of the region. Evidently, all that squeezing and rather questionable training with Yug had paid off. He checked his system and saw that Aithoth had already advanced deep into the dungeon, reaching the boss chamber. Meanwhile, Cyrus and his crew were startled by strange rustling sounds. Cyrus instantly drew his sword and ordered his party to brace for danger. To their astonishment, our protagonist stepped out from the shadows. Cyrus was dumbfounded to see him here, and suspected he was planning to steal their victory. He demanded to know why our boy was here. Cyrus casually replied that he was simply here to slay monsters like everyone else. Cyrus then asked where his team was, but our boy calmly answered that he was running solo and strode off, entirely focused on his mission. Cyrus began trembling at the thought of Cyrus entering in a rank dungeon alone. The possibility that Cyrus knew Shia was weakened only heightened his dread. He rallied his group and urged them to hurry so they could find Shia first, determined not to let Cyrus steal the credit. Meanwhile, Cyrus accessed his system map.a. The map immediately activated, and a new notification appeared regarding a blade called the Bunker's Spectre. It explained that drawing this sword would cause pathways to swap left and right, and could disable or enable traps. At the same time, Cyrus felt smug with the insider knowledge from his brother's map, thinking it gave him an edge. According to it, a fork lay ahead. The right path was a dead end, and the left was the true route. He was convinced he was outpacing our boy, unaware that Cyrus' system had already revealed everything he needed to know. Cyrus dashed toward the right-hand path, feeling self-satisfied with his cleverness. He thought that once he took the left path, he would seal off our boy behind him. But the truth was, his information was wrong. For as he charged down the right path, a massive dragon appeared, and astonishingly, there was already someone engaged in battle with the beast. Cyrus was utterly confused, for his brother's map had made no mention of such a monster. The dragon roared violently, lashing its tail and shattering the terrain around it. Chaos erupted, with rubble flying and adventurers narrowly dodging destruction. At that moment, the mysterious fighter came into view, squaring a fist and delivering a crushing blow that sent the enormous dragon slamming into the ground. The beast finally collapsed, lifeless, right at Cyrus' feet. He stared in disbelief, utterly bewildered at how this woman had managed to fell such a gigantic monster with her bare hands. Once the battle ended, she immediately darted towards Cyrus and his companions. It was revealed that she was an S-rank adventurer named Daphne from Area K. Upon landing, she demanded to know which area they hailed from. Cyrus, visibly nervous, admitted they were from Area Z. When Daphne asked if they were also here to conquer Shia's dungeon, the flustered man answered yes. Daphne retorted that Area K had never requested aid from Area Z, so she suspected he was here to compete with her. She warned plainly that crossing her would end badly. Cyrus tries to keep his composure, suggesting that they should join forces, saying it would be a great honor to fight at her side. But Daphne bluntly dismisses the idea, declaring that only the weak lean on companions, and she is certainly no weakling. Just then, she suddenly receives a transmission through her earpiece. The message urgently asks if any heroes are nearby because dragons have appeared and immediate reinforcement is needed. Without hesitation, she lowers herself into a crouch, and before launching into the sky, she coldly orders these fools to run back home. She saw how terrified they became after spotting that monster, and she has no interest in letting cowards like them tag along. With that, she blasts off with such tremendous force that the very earth beneath her splits apart. She ascends high into the sky, leaving behind only the striking image of her peach-shaped backside vanishing into the clouds. Meanwhile, Argyle is still dumbfounded that she can literally fly. On the other hand, the ever-thick-headed Cyrus is still dead set on killing that boss monster before she returns, even though she had clearly told him to stay away. Even Cyrus can't help but point out how absurdly stubborn Cyrus is. Cyrus swiftly activates the mechanism and door, releases the massive stone gates, sending them crashing down. He feels certain he has sealed the chamber completely. Now he believes no one will interfere, and at last they will claim the glory of slaying the beast. Meanwhile, outside, our protagonist grips that sword. Immediately his mana begins draining at an alarming rate. With a forceful pull, he finally wrenches the blade free from its place. This leaves him with just 3,530 mana remaining. The entire dungeon quakes violently, leaving Cyrus and his followers in a state of shock and confusion. Meanwhile, our protagonist, now wielding the blade known as the Bunker Scepter, takes the correct route forward. Cyrus, however, remains overly self-assured. He figures they will reach their target within minutes since all the creatures nearby have already been cleared out. But everyone's jaws drop when they encounter B-rank beasts called Furious Obsidian Claws, ferocious monsters that clearly are no trivial opponents. With guttural roars, the beasts charge straight at Cyrus and his team. We shift back to the boss chamber of Shia, where Aithoth and his servant are waiting once again. Aithoth looks worn out and annoyed, especially since he had to pour a great deal of his blood into Shia. He warns his underling not to disappoint him. The monster replies that he can feel incredible energy from all that blood, and he is certain he will crush our protagonist the moment he arrives. The purple-headed servant asks if Shia can truly defeat our hero, who has the rare ability to grow stronger in battle. Aithoth assures her that this time things are different. Since every monster in this dungeon is melee, there will be no feminine touch to empower our boy this time. Suddenly, a pack of wolves emerges. Our hero eagerly prepares to test the sharp edge of his new sword, though pulling it free already cost him dearly in mana. The system alerts him that by striking specific points with the sword, hidden traps within the dungeon can be activated. He scans the surroundings and quickly identifies the trigger points. The first one lies directly ahead, set to unleash a hail of arrows. Without delay, he drives his sword into the trigger. Immediately, a downpour of arrows erupts, skewering the wild beasts as easily as slicing fruit in a frantic game. One monster manages to survive, but our hero remains calm and unwavering. He steadies his stance and makes his vow. With overwhelming force, his sword cleaves straight through the creature. No sooner does he finish than another beast lunges at him. He tightens his grip around the hilt and slams the blade down directly onto the creature's skull. Meanwhile, Cyrus and his group are being utterly overwhelmed by the same wolf pack. He quickly realizes these beasts are far beyond B rank, and their only hope is to flee with whatever strength they have left. But when they reach the entrance, Cyrus remembers he already sealed it behind them. That means they are trapped with nowhere to run. The wolves close in, and it's only moments before they are torn apart. Cyrus orders his men to stall the beasts while he desperately studies the map for a way to reopen the gate. His comrades cry out for their leader to do something before they are devoured alive, but the captain is completely helpless. He has no plan other than breaking down in despair, since the map only lists methods to seal the gates, not to undo them. Meanwhile, our hero also finds himself encircled by the very same monsters. As the beasts lunge toward him, he leaps clear from his spot and lands firmly on the far side. That's when he catches sight of another trigger point to his left. Just as the wolves surge at him, he slams the sword into the trigger. A massive stone slab begins descending from above. It crashes down, flattening the wolves like fragile fruit under a runaway carriage. On the other side, the gate for Cyrus suddenly opens, allowing them a fleeting chance to escape. Yet the wolves continue to pursue them relentlessly. One of the monsters even manages to sink its claws into Cyrus' leg, leaving him in mortal peril. But just then, our hero yanks his sword free from the trigger point. The stone slab that had crushed the wolves now begins to rise again, and simultaneously, the gate Cyrus was escaping through slams shut once more. The rising slab then slams down again, obliterating the wolf, clamped onto Cyrus' leg, freeing him from its savage fangs. After finishing off the last of the beasts, our hero realizes this sword is proving to be far more reliable than he expected. Following the system's guidance, he takes a right turn and continues, leaving a trail of fallen monsters in his wake. Meanwhile, Cyrus, battered, shaken, and barely alive, still refuses to give up. He's tormented by the thought that Cyrus might defeat Shia first. If that happens, Cyrus knows he is finished. His own brother gave him the map, and if he returns empty-handed, his brother will surely punish him severely. He soon notices that the path ahead is filled with slain monsters, and the layout perfectly matches the map. That confirms he is on the correct path, though he fumes at the thought that his brother's map almost got him killed earlier. In truth, it seems the route shifted ever since our boy drew that sword, so the map itself wasn't actually wrong. After pressing further, they come across another fork in the road. The map indicates they should head right, but Cyrus stubbornly decides to gamble by turning left instead. Unfortunately, this is yet another mistake, since the map was accurate and disaster looms ahead. Meanwhile, after weaving through countless turns, the system finally announces that our hero has arrived at the boss chamber. Standing there is the fearsome monster Shia, who is surprised to see our boy wielding the Bunker Scepter sword, a clear sign that he is not to be underestimated. Cyrus, however, shows no interest in the monster's chatter. His mind is fixed solely on clearing this final chamber, convinced Aithoth must be close. That's when Shia boasts that he will deliver our hero's head to his goddess. The moment our boy hears the word goddess, he perks up and asks if Aithoth is actually female. The beast arrogantly describes his goddess, a figure with unmatched curves, flawless skin, and a fragrance that embodies femininity itself. Our hero spots another trigger close by and swiftly slashes at it with his sword. A massive axe springs forth from the ground and hurls directly toward the monster. Yet Shia remains completely unbothered. With a simple flick of his hand, he smashes the enormous weapon into fragments. Cyrus is left stunned, struggling to believe this creature destroyed the giant axe without even drawing its own weapon. Shia then releases a furious roar after demolishing the trap, and charges at Cyrus with devastating force. His rage boils over as he demands to know how our boy dares to insult his goddess by calling her a man. With one crushing blow, Sarah's sword shatters into 2 pieces, a chilling reminder that this beast is far beyond ordinary. But our boy does not flinch, declaring that now is his turn to strike back. He unleashes his lightning-fast body slash, moving so swiftly that he vanishes from sight, only to reappear behind the colossal monster, aiming for a surprise strike. But this creature is no amateur. In an instant, it spins around with divine speed, effortlessly blocking the sneak attack. Yet in truth, it wasn't the real body that turned. Instead, a clone manifested before our hero, intercepting the blow with its massive blade. The clone wastes no time and hurls the giant sword at him with such force that the ground beneath Cyrus begins to splinter. The beast then arrogantly declares that the goddess Aithoth has enhanced his power to the point that crushing our boy will be as easy as crushing an insect. Indeed, our hero is buckling under the sheer weight of that massive blade, locked in a fierce deadlock with the monster. At that moment, the second clone seizes the chance to swing its weapon at him. Before the sword can cleave him in half, he forcefully pushes off the ground, managing to break free from the deadlock. Yet the blade still grazes his foot, hurling him against the wall with such impact that the entire structure crumbles apart. The 2 monsters burst into cruel laughter, as if they just heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. On the other side, our hero is battered but alive, though he seriously questions if he can handle this foe, especially with that relentless clone lurking around. Meanwhile, Cyrus and his party are being utterly annihilated by a towering stone knight. Just as the whining Cyrus is about to be crushed beneath the monster's enormous leg, a powerful strike slams the rock knight on the head, shattering it into fragments as if it were nothing. And of course it's none other than the same peachy figure woman from before. She coldly asks the whiny man if he was the one crying for help. Cyrus, clueless and shaken, stays completely silent, but then the woman repeats her question, demanding to know if he was the one asking for assistance. Terrified, the pathetic man quickly admits that yes, he was the one calling for help, as he was just about to meet his end. Upon hearing that, Daphne doesn't hesitate to deliver a devastating kick straight into his face. And truth be told, even if you were on the receiving end, it's the kind of strike you might almost consider worth it. That one kick sends him soaring through the air like a discarded rag doll. She then scolds the entire group, calling them worthless garbage from Area Z. She mocks them for pretending to be heroes, when all they do is tremble in fear before monsters, which she finds utterly pathetic. As her tirade continues, it seems Cyrus is finally out cold. The woman orders his lackeys to carry away their useless leader and get lost. Without hesitation, they drag their captain and retreat. Suddenly, Daphne notices something on the far side of the chamber. She crouches low, and before jumping again, she recalls the intel. Room 3055 lies at the southernmost point, marked at 37. To save time, she propels herself upward and begins smashing through 10-foot thick walls as if they were nothing. They crumble before her like flimsy sheets of paper. Meanwhile, our protagonist looks utterly drained, standing at the brink of collapse. Yet no matter how exhausted he is, he has no choice but to keep fighting these abominations. Nothing seems to faze them, and he is tossed around again and again like a helpless rag doll. His attacks barely leave a mark. Cyrus desperately needs a surge of strength, but the only way to unlock it is through the presence of women. Fortunately, that might no longer be an issue, because Daphne has suddenly burst into the middle of the battle. Spotting our hero standing there, she can't help but wonder what someone from Area Z is doing in this place. She immediately tells him to leave, insisting he is no match for this boss, but our hero refuses to back down. He admits this boss is stronger than he expected and directly asks her to lend a hand. The woman, however, grows visibly irritated. Her arrogant nature despises teaming up with weaklings, and it's clear she hates even being asked. But Ceres utters those fateful words, "Lock the target." Daphne keeps up her haughty demeanor, trying to assert control, yet those words begin to disturb her composure. Despite wanting to tear him apart, she finds herself drawn closer to him, and before long, the two of them share an unexpected intense kiss. The act gives Cyrus the power boost he desperately needed, with the favorability rating soaring to 77% antidote. The moment Daphne realizes what she has done, she quickly pulls away. Her expression is frozen in shock at her own behavior. She lashes out, accusing him of stealing her first kiss, declaring she will never forgive him. At the same time, the monster, angered at being ignored, swings its blade at Cyrus, but empowered by his newfound strength, Cyrus evades the attacks with ease, as though he were playing a simple game of tag. He then vaults into the air and swings his blade. The strike slices across the monster's throat, and even the beast recognizes Cyrus has become stronger. Daphne, meanwhile, is still reeling from the realization of that kiss. Though conflicted, she cannot deny that she enjoyed it, the warmth and softness lingering on her lips. The favorability gauge climbs further, reaching 85% dodge die. Suddenly, the monster redirects its sword toward Daphne. Cyrus quickly snaps at her to stop daydreaming, and before the monster's attack lands, he shoves her out of danger. The strike demolishes the wall above them, but Daphne's armor absorbs part of the blow. The impact splits her armor apart, leaving her embarrassed as her chest nearly spills free. Cyrus reminds her sternly that she almost got cut down, telling her to stay focused. The monster swings again, but Cyrus intercepts the strike with his damaged sword, as Cyrus keeps stepping in to protect her. The favorability rating climbs once more, this time to 88%. With her armor shredded, Daphne's slender form and strong thighs are left exposed. A surge of strange energy courses through her body, leaving her momentarily paralyzed. As the favorability rises again to 92%, our hero's strength increases accordingly. Even the monster can sense his growing might. Meanwhile, Daphne's body reacts uncontrollably. A tingling spreads through her lower half, weakening her legs. She experiences sensations she has never known before, and fears that if this continues, her entire body will give out. The favorability skyrockets to 97%. Daphne desperately tries to resist the overwhelming feelings, refusing to let herself become a burden. Her pride won't allow Cyrus to continue carrying her, not any more than he already has. Cyrus, however, is driven back once again, and pleads with her to join him, admitting he cannot win this battle alone. Daphne stubbornly clings to her pride. She declares that cooperation goes against her principles, reminding him she has always fought her battles alone. Yet in the end, she proposes a compromise. Since there are two monsters, each of them should fight one separately. This way she can still uphold her rule while standing beside him in combat. With this new agreement, Cyrus takes his place at her side, and in an unusually earnest gesture, he pulls her close, assuring her that with her at his side, he is certain he can overcome any opponent. Daphne breathes heavily, the tingling from before returning stronger than ever. Her favorability shoots up to 99%, and she struggles to maintain her focus, overwhelmed by the desire to fight together with him. Meanwhile, Aithoth is shown in utter misery, vomiting violently. He complains that his heartless body is burning out. His servant panics at the sight, asking if Shia hasn't finished off the human yet. Back with Daphne, she wrestles with her emotions, unable to understand why she suddenly longs to fight side by side with Cyrus. She was always a loner, but now she feels irresistibly compelled to join forces with him, perhaps even to hold him close. Meanwhile, Aithoth hands Sadiel a crimson pill, explaining that he no longer has time to wait for Shia to finish Cyrus. The pill, infused with his blood spirit, must be given to Shia to consume. Aithoth intends to take over Shia's body and abilities, using the beast's duplication power to trick the system's mark. But Shia's body can only endure his essence for mere seconds. During that brief span, he plans to forcibly reclaim his heart, even at great risk. Sadiel stares at the pill with sorrow, wondering aloud if this means Cyrus will perish here. Aithoth erupts with fury at the thought, demanding why she seems so concerned for a human. Sadiel quickly insists she feels nothing but contempt. No sympathy whatsoever, only disgust. We return to Cyrus, still clashing against the crazed beast. His sword is in pieces, and several of his ribs are broken. Just as all hope seems lost, Daphne intervenes, intercepting the monster's blow at the last instant. With her bare hand, she deflects its sword aside. Cyrus, though thankful, can't help but notice the softness of her body pressed against him. Before he has time to fully process it, the monster hurls them both away. Cyrus ends up pinned beneath Daphne's ample form, which, frankly, could throw the entire dairy industry into chaos if word ever got out. Daphne herself is overwhelmed as waves of sensations return, moaning softly as her emotions flare. At the same time, Cyrus's defenses surge, giving him the timely boost he desperately needed. But the monster is preparing its most devastating attack yet, intending to crush them both at once. Our hero, however, suffers a sudden nosebleed from the overwhelming softness. Concerned, Daphne thinks her weight might have caused it, so she quickly pulls away and apologizes. The creature prepares to unleash a gigantic sphere of destructive energy, and with no hesitation he hurls it straight toward the pair. The blazing orb scorches everything caught in its trajectory, tearing apart the walls and leaving behind a massive hollowed gap. The two cloned beasts flash wicked grins, confident as predators certain that they've reduced the heroes to ash. Yet their arrogance fails them, for they never accounted for the power of sheer, absolute booba. She stands there, having intercepted that colossal energy sphere with her own strength. Her armor, however, disintegrates completely after absorbing the impact. She turns toward him, checking if he's still alive. He answers that he's alright, though some ribs are fractured. She warns him bluntly that against Shia he stands no chance at all. If he keeps this up, death is inevitable. She rises with unshaken confidence, declaring that this fight belongs solely to her, and she is fully prepared to drive the monster back on her own. Even so, beneath her resolve stirs an urge she cannot ignore, the longing to lay her hands on him. The craving swells, pressing her to seize him and pull him close, as though dominance itself compels her actions. She admits her azure armor has already crumbled away in the previous clash, leaving her entire form exposed, and she absolutely refuses to let this beast's eyes fall upon her chest. Unable to shield herself in combat, she bashfully tells him to hold her soft breasts in place for her. Even while speaking such words, she wages war against her own emotions, striving not to lose to desire. She reminds herself she is a hero trained at the highest level, yet that discipline slips away as her yearning overpowers her. At the same time, Argyle struggles to stay upright through his wounds. That's when Daphne realizes the source of her intensity. She convinces herself that this feeling isn't lust but a duty to shield the weak. Seeing him injured is stirring that drive. It's a naive excuse, but deep down, everyone knows she's only deceiving herself. In the end, she extends her hands, determined to draw him closer under the pretense of protecting him. At that instant, her favorability has reached a full 100%. The system announces that with physical contact, all of his stats will be doubled. Just as she's about to embrace him fully, the monsters unleash another coordinated strike. Yet when their attacks crash down, all they may manage to smash is bare ground. Because the protagonist has already leapt away, clutching Daphne tightly in his arms. Her body responds wildly, heat flooding within her. The blaze inside grows fiercer than ever, binding her heart in raw desire. Her grip around him tightens, and he begins to nosebleed, overwhelmed by her closeness. But from that passionate embrace, he gains a tremendous surge of strength. They finally land upon solid ground. She insists she's holding him only to protect his wounded self, and that he shouldn't misunderstand. He replies that both of them are people of conviction, and every sacrifice will be worth it if it means defeating the monster. Meanwhile, the beast spawns more copies of itself, raising the total to 4. On the other side, the young man clings close to Daphne, desperate to draw every ounce of strength from her embrace. The scene cuts back to Sadiel, still staring anxiously at the crimson pill. Aithoth's words echo within, reminding her that after consuming his blood and syncing with his form, her life is tied to his. If he perishes, so will she. A whisper intrudes, telling her that, once Sadiel recovers her heart, she'll ascend to immense power, join Aithoth's ranks, and taste unparalleled bliss. She orders her to track down Shia, and Sadiel answers in agreement. Aithoth notes that whenever she closes her eyes she can peer through the bloody spirit. Then she teases Sadiel, asking if she dislikes hugs. Sadiel responds curtly that she's unaccustomed to contact, so there's no need. Aithoth chuckles, saying she never intended to anyway. Only a true demon king earns such privileges. Sadiel is too irritating for that. To her, Sadiel is nothing more than a reliable watchdog, so she should get moving. Sadiel lowers her gaze, questioning if this creature might be even viler than that human she once compared him to. Back on the battlefield, Daphne stands firm beside the hero, urging him to hold her tighter as Shia barrels toward them. She pivots and slices at its legs. But when she glances back, another clone is already charging them head-on. With Ceres gripping her firmly, the system confirms their defense has spiked, along with every other stat. Shia bellows, lunging high to slash and crush them. Daphne catches hold of that enormous blade, but Shia piles on the pressure, laughing while she struggles to restrain it. The system alerts that she has leveled up, entering berserk mode. The earth quakes with her power, while the hero feels paralyzed, his stamina draining rapidly. Shia howls that slaughtering them will win Aithoth's love. Sacrificing one clone is no concern. Losing a fragment of power is a cheap trade. 3 of the monsters conjure a colossal sphere of mana, surging across the ground. Daphne realizes that without armor, her situation has turned dire. Shia boasts, daring them to withstand this strike, but he doesn't know that the young man has just reached level 25, with every stat greatly enhanced. With that, the hero snaps free of Shia's grip. Cyrus cocks his fist and drives it straight into Shia's abdomen, hurling him into the wall with brutal force. Sadiel's eyes widen as Shia hurtles away like a ragdoll. At the same time, Daphne collapses, drained of power, but the protagonist rises tall, assuring her not to fear. He will protect her. The trio of clones begins charging yet another massive manosphere, and launches it at them. But this time, the hero is prepared. He thrusts forward with his level 25 fist, bursting the orb apart, and the monster itself reels back from the blow. Daphne, astonished, can hardly fathom the force behind Sarah's strike, especially as she sees his eyes and fists glowing red. Sadiel is left utterly stunned. Meanwhile, Aithoth commands her to feed the mushroom to Shia without delay, but Sadiel snaps, shouting that she never wished to be a pawn in Aithoth's harem. She pulls out a blood spirit, attempting to cast it aside. Just then, Aithoth's hand is struck by a rock, realizing that Sadiel has betrayed her completely. But in an instant, Sadiel's hand is severed, the blood spirit tumbling from her grasp. From the crimson cloth, an Aithoth clone emerges and seizes the sphere. Shia gapes wide at the sight, only to have the clone shove blood magic straight into his maw. Swallowing it down, Shia leaps skyward. His entire body convulses, leaving Ceres baffled. What's happening to this creature? Aithoth begins to rise, mana spiraling around her. Her body splits into clones, and in moments she multiplies, surrounding them from every direction. Cyrus is stunned, for the system now reveals Aithoth's true form. But when he checks the map to locate her actual self, he finds countless identical readings, each appearing genuine. Aithoth mocks him, declaring she must rip the heart from his chest. Outraged, Daphne charges at her, but the clone snatches her fist and flings her aside effortlessly. She smashes into the stone wall, unconscious. Cyrus realizes he has but a single chance to wield Aithoth's Spear of Oblivion. He resents the restriction, yet Aithoth smugly explains that all these clones are her true essence. Unless every copy is destroyed, her real body cannot be uncovered. The hero stays silent. She, however, radiates confidence, asking if he dares challenge her further. The system reports that Cyrus is now immune to her attacks, since her clones have restrained his arms, for she never intended to kill him outright. Instead, she presses him against her chest, forcing unwanted pleasure upon him. She holds him firmly in place, denying any escape. Another clone strolls forward, announcing that his system is worthless in this situation. She then places her hands on his protective vest, ready to tear out his heart, while promising him a sweet death. He cries out that he will never yield to a witch like her. She only laughs, claiming his body will betray his words, for she intends to test his very will. She opens her mouth wide, about to sink her fangs in. He shouts in desperation. Suddenly, Sadiel crashes in, slamming the Aithoth clone away, igniting the battle anew. She warns that the witch cannot sustain her clones for long, so Cyrus must avoid capture. With a sharp maneuver, the hero slips free of their grip, already thinking hard on his next move. Meanwhile, Aithoth questions Sadiel, demanding to know why she aids Cyrus instead of siding with her, reminding that if they fail to rip out Cyrus' heart, both of them will perish. Sadiel replies that she owes the mushroom a debt of gratitude, a response that Aithoth finds baffling, but Sadiel boldly adds that she simply wants Cyrus to survive. The hidden truth, however, is that Cyrus is leveraging full favorability to keep her under his control, even as Aithoth prepares to eliminate her. Yet at that very moment, Cyrus activates his system, and in the blink of an eye, Sadiel finds herself teleported directly into Yug's chamber. Yug freezes in shock, staring at Sadiel appearing out of thin air. While Sadiel can hardly believe that Yug is still alive, Aithoth pays her no mind, failing to notice her sudden presence. Instead, her focus stays on Cyrus, who struggles desperately to keep hold of the Shia blade. Aithoth ridicules him, proclaiming no weapon can stand against her power, and that she will simply crush him with brute force. But in that instant, our hero lashes out with a sharp strike, eliminating one clone before vanishing faster than they can counter. Aithoth only sneers louder, mocking that the hero's antics mean nothing, for with his system active, none of her attacks will harm him anyway. The truth is, the hero was never trying to defeat her in combat. He only intended to sidestep her strike. He warns her coldly that she's mistaken if she thinks she can slip by with such tactics. The system notes that swift body slash carries a 10-second cooldown, a fact she completely overlooked. She lunges at him with a wicked smile, insisting he cannot escape, demanding Cyrus return to her arms so she can grant him a death-drenched and twisted pleasure. But Cyrus shifts focus, targeting another clone, and evades her grasp yet again. She reels back, startled. It hasn't even been 10 seconds. She cannot fathom how he's still pulling off the same system skill. The young man explains that to the system, every clone she spawns registers as a separate entity. That's how he's managed to outwit even the one who designed the system. Each clone is treated as a distinct opponent, letting him lock onto them individually and chain swift body slash endlessly to slip away from her grasp. If she wishes to catch him, she must destroy every clone or be forced to play this infinite chase. But while her time bleeds away, Cyrus has nothing but time on his side. She falters as the realization strikes. Fleeing to find another vessel crosses her thoughts. She doesn't want to be hunted by a frail human, yet to abandon her pride as the so-called god of monsters? Such humiliation is unbearable. Still, she understands the scales are tipping towards Cyrus, and if things persist, he will inevitably defeat her. Thus, she resolves to unleash her full strength. A searing beam of light bursts upward, blasting into the ceiling. Cyrus narrows his eyes, questioning whether she intends to flee. Her clones abruptly shift color, turning bright pink. She invokes Aya's cloning power, fracturing her body into countless shards. Those shards whirl together before erupting skyward in a violent detonation. Cyrus stares wide-eyed as the impossible unfolds. She has shattered herself completely, and vanishes. In doing so, she unlocks new waifus, and bestows upon them powers drawn from the blood spirit. She commands them to slaughter any human who dares pursue her fragments, and ultimately restore her being. With that, Aithoth is gone. The system issues Cyrus a fresh quest: gather her fragments to delay the spreading poison. The host now has only 48 days to survive. Suddenly, a sheep's head drops out of nowhere, landing with a thud before him. He wonders aloud whether the body had also been destroyed. The system clarifies that the head holds no value and asks if he wishes to store it. Cyrus gives a simple thumbs up. A weak cough escapes Daphne's lips, and he rushes to help her rise. She realizes with dismay that she was knocked out by nothing more than a casual blow from Aithoth, the weight of her own weakness pressing hard upon her. As they move on, members of the guild, including their captain, grow restless about what kind of report they'll be forced to deliver. The captain's eyes fall on Cyrus, walking beside Daphne. He is stunned that the boy is still alive. He begins plotting to beg Daphne to share some of the glory with him so he can preserve his standing. He approaches, suggesting that she must have been the one to slay the monster, and asks if she might help him salvage his reputation. Daphne, her voice icy, demands to know exactly what he witnessed inside, and insists nothing should be spoken of. Earlier, Tiffany had warned Cyrus not to reveal a word. If he dared, she promised to beat him down, and then she left. Cyrus could only reflect on her sharp tongue. As Tiffany departed, her mind spiraled, thoughts of Cyrus flooding her. She kept questioning what she had done. Elsewhere, Daphne admitted to the captain that she had failed the mission. He broke into a nervous sweat, shocked that even an S rank could falter. Recognizing Daphne's strength was greater than he assumed, he sought to deflect the blame. Cyrus sensed conflict looming. The captain accused Cyrus outright, claiming he had hindered Daphne and caused their downfall. In a heartbeat, Daphne struck him, slapping him flat to the ground. Reclaiming authority, she told Cyrus she was fine, and needed no help returning. The scene then shifts to the conference hall, where officials dissect the mission's failure. The panel asks the captain if he truly understands the gravity. He once again attempts to fault Cyrus. Judge Blaze silences him sharply, ordering him to hold his tongue, warning that another outburst will earn him prison. Should he lie, the consequences would be far graver. Then Blaze demands the real reason the mission failed. The captain insists they failed because they could not kill Shia, and he pins the blame squarely on Cyrus. At the guild hall, Cyrus opens his storage, producing Shreya's severed head. Gasps ripple through the audience as they witness it. The captain continues accusing Cyrus, declaring he stole credit, led the squad astray, and cost lives. He swears he lost his leg-saving comrades, adding that Cyrus always freezes in battle and lacks courage. But in truth, it is those near Cyrus who tremble. The captain rants further, saying Cyrus never follows orders, remains weak, and is unworthy of being a hero. Judge Blaze then strips Cyrus of rank and orders his detention, warning that Shia might strike the city, and mandating a level 2 alert for public safety. The captain boasts that he could have slain Shia had Cyrus not interfered, but at that instant, Ceres bursts into the chamber and hurls Shia's severed head. It slams directly into the captain's face, leaving him battered and swollen. The head rolls to the panel's feet, leaving the room in stunned silence. Whispers erupt, asking who had thrown it. Then they spot Ceres, calmly walking away. Judge Blaze fixes his gaze on the captain, demanding he repeat what he had just been claiming. The captain, humiliated and shaken, begs for a chance to explain himself. Later, as Ceres descends the stairs, Lilia approaches, telling him the high priest has summoned him. She reveals they may have discovered a cure for his poison, and he must meet her at once. Meanwhile, Ed was either betraying or deaf to the situation. Stephanie, on the other hand, was pushing herself through brutal training, yet her mind ceaselessly drifted to Cyrus. She struck the sandbag with such force it split wide open, but even that failed to ease the storm in her thoughts. Just then, Daly appeared with her quiet companion, Rukuro. Dai teased Daphne mercilessly about relying on an F-rank hero after her dungeon return, reminding her how she always boasted about fighting alone. Daphne snapped back, demanding to know who let them in and ordering Dai to leave. Dai only teased further, calling her a mean sister and joking that her temper would ruin her complexion. Dai pressed on, asking how Cyrus managed to break through Daphne's emotional walls. Daphne snarled at her to stop meddling. Dai admitted she rushed over after hearing of Daphne's failed mission, and added that while most people matured in wisdom, all Daphne ever developed were muscles. Daphne retorted coldly that she wasn't so sure about Dai's so-called intellect, and judging from her body it wasn't developed either. Dai stood speechless for a beat, before shouting at Rukuro to deal with her. Rukuro politely refused, saying he could never harm his elder sister. Daphne threw down a challenge to face her directly. Hefting a heavy iron bar, Dai scoffed, turning away and calling it idiotic. Rukuro followed, but before they could retreat, Daphne struck first. Out of nowhere, Rukuro's arm warped monstrously, swelling to an enormous size. With ease, he stopped the strike, and crushed the weapon as though it were paper. Dai immediately sensed the shift in the air and demanded to know what was happening. Rukuro compressed the rod down to a tiny pellet, and dismissed it as nothing more than an annoyance. Dai gave a nonchalant shrug and continued on his way. Daphne remained frozen in place, shocked. She had never witnessed Rukuro's abilities before. For the first time, she questioned whether Dai truly could wrest Cyrus away from her. At the gates of the Holy See, Lilia informed Cyrus that he alone was permitted to enter. Just as he was about to step inside, she called after him to halt. When he turned back around, she softly admitted that perhaps she simply wanted to spend a little more time with him. Inside, Cyrus observed 2 chairs arranged. Seated and waiting for him was Seraphina, the chief priestess of the Holy See. She swung her leg over the adjacent chair and beckoned Cyrus to sit. She expressed that she wished to speak with him face to face. He hesitated but consented, and she calmly disclosed that she already knew the poison in his veins originated from Aithoth's blood, leaving him reeling. She went on to explain that Aithoth's blood amplifies monsters yet instantly corrodes human flesh. Inexplicably, his body had merged with that blood, though it was gradually killing him. Cyrus acknowledged how deeply she understood the toxin. Before he could answer, she rested her foot on his maw and cautioned him not to interrupt, which stunned him once more. She warned that if monsters ingested his blood, it could unleash a disaster. To avert that, she resolved to consume him herself. Cyrus recoiled in utter disbelief. He thought she intended to eat him, despite them both being human. Then his eyes widened as he watched her lift from the ground, grotesque tentacles unfurling from her form. She proclaimed that although she might be monstrous, she still stood with humanity, and for his future, she must devour him. Determined to survive, Cyrus locked her as his target, and the system displayed multiple cards before him. He made his selection. It turned out to be the Angel of Bliss gloves. He donned them. A shockwave rippled outward, and he realized that striking the correct point would trigger his ultimate attack. Cyrus stood bewildered, a small question mark hovering above his head as he stared at Seraphina, who held a glowing pink shard of Aithoth, and told him this power was the only thing that could keep someone alive in this world. Without pause, she began to absorb the pink fragment. Energy surged through her as she did, her veins stretching and contorting until odd mouths formed at their tips, and Cyrus watched in horror as even the ends of her veins transformed into mouths. Inside her mind, Seraphina indulged in the newfound strength, envisioning a future where she devoured Cyrus and used his energy to seize control of every human city. In her fantasy, people were penned like livestock, all obeying the rules she named the Holy See, and anyone who harbored impure thoughts or refused to comply would be eaten and cleansed. She aimed to forge a world free. Cyrus began to burn with anger because this did not feel like protection but dominance, and he refused to become her meal as he raised his golden glove, and its light intensified with his resolve. Seraphina offered him a sardonic smile, as if amused that he believed he could flee while standing directly before her. Before he could move, her veins lashed at him like whips and the battle erupted. Cyrus' evasion quickly relied on his instincts. As they collided, he realized the vein-like strikes were part of her body. He brushed one lightly to gauge its sensitivity, and was disappointed by the result. Only about 1%, almost nothing. He tightened his hold on the golden glove, intent on testing its power, and more vein attacks rained down, but he used the glove's properties to evade them. Even so, he only managed to produce a minor scratch. A 1% charge was insufficient, and he needed to locate a more vulnerable spot. Meanwhile, Seraphina's anti-veins curled inward. They yanked his body toward her, hoisting him up until they faced one another. She fixed him with a cold stare, contemplating where to begin consuming him. She noticed blood trickling from his shoulder and showed interest. She leaned forward and began to drink it. Cyrus felt nauseated at the sensation, and his expression betrayed his revulsion. She smiled inwardly, thinking his blood tasted potent, antitoxic, and reminiscent of Aithoth's. No monster could resist it. The vitality in his blood swelled her veins further, seethed that by taking his blood she was growing stronger, and he realized he had break free immediately. While she focused on drinking, he cautiously reached out. He brushed against her chest and know why. Ted, that the sensitivity registered at 15%. Better but still inadequate. Serafina glanced down with narrowed eyes and demanded to know what he was doing, warning that she might eat him, and yet he was still trying to touch her, her voice dripping with contempt. But Cyrus had already made his calculation. If she had a weak point, it had to be the most sensitive place she couldn't effectively defend. There was no other plausible option. With a resolved expression he raised his hand, charged by the Angel of Bliss gloves. This was his final attempt, and if he struck that spot he'd unleash everything he possessed. Cyrus touched her private area, and found the vulnerable point. Ait. She threatened to break his hand, but he refused to retreat. He checked the sensitivity, which read 11%. He tried again, and it then showed 14%. Serafina, furious, kicked him forcefully and sent him tumbling. She exhaled sharply. Cyrus was shaken because every charged strike produced a shockwave that drained him, so to inflict meaningful harm, he had to stay close and keep making contact. She growled that he was unbearably irritating as Serafina shook off the lingering ache in her leg from the previous blow. She demanded respect on her own ground, and judged his behavior unforgivable. Her energy flailed at him. Cyrus saw that 14% wouldn't pierce her defenses, and resolved to close in rather than keep dodging. Serafina lashed out with a vine that fired yellow energy, striking him with great force. Cyrus understood he needed to press forward, and remain in contact for the sake of humanity. Taken aback and hurting, he staggered backward. Serafina couldn't believe it as he flew away. Surprised by his own counterattack, he landed awkwardly and promptly activated his Angel of Bliss glove to touch her again. Her skin felt stiff and he detected only a 6% sensitivity. Enraged, Serafina screamed at him to release and called him a total idiot before delivering a kick so powerful he was knocked back further. Cyrus realized he had to break free quickly or she'd swallow him whole, and he judged the 6% charge just enough to push himself away. He noticed a mouth on one of her vines and confirmed they indeed had mouths. Suddenly Serafina's veins coiled completely around him. She mocked him for no longer attacking her vines and taunted whether he was already surrendering. She declared that regardless of his efforts she would consume him in the end. She grinned wickedly, savoring the moment, and remarking it had been a long time since she'd tasted anything like this. Trapped within her living vines, Cyrus felt the slimy mucus coating them all over. Serafina flinched in pain, clearly taken aback. She asked aloud what he was doing inside her veins. The sensitivity reading spiked to 25%. Serafina quickly flung Cyrus out of her veins and he crashed hard onto the ground. He felt disgust as the slimy interior spilled everywhere, and the stench was overwhelmingly foul. He checked again and saw his sensitivity was at 25%, a quarter of 100%. She had exactly 4 vines, and he wondered if touching each one would raise it to 100%, so touching another should bring it to 50%. Feeling the effects, Serafina thought the resolve she had pushed aside was beginning to return, and if things continued this way she might lose the ability to use her purification magic. She knew she couldn't allow Cyrus to reach that special spot inside her. Enraged, she decided he must be eliminated and resolved to consume him anew. Her vines snapped open like jaws, transforming into plant-like maws that sought to devour him. They charged at Cyrus, all worked up, gritting his teeth. Cyrus recognized one vine as the same that had spat him out, and noticed it was much faster now. 2 vines lunged at him from both sides, catching him unprepared. Still furious, he thought it a good moment to reassess the sensitivity. He thrust his hand into one of the vines' mouths, inflicting Serafina some pain. When he checked, it still registered 25% sensitivity. Serafina screamed in fury, and ordered him to stop meddling with her insides and back away. She branded him disgusting, and struck him with her large purple tongue, drawing blood. After that brutal blow Cyrus grabbed the tongue and evaded, but the sensitivity level remained stubborn at 25%, leading him to conclude the truly sensitive point lay elsewhere on her body. Abruptly, all 4 of her vines lashed toward him, and he shouted that he crushed them all as he readied his bliss gloves and tried to dodge. When he touched a locked target, the gloves accumulated charge and unleashed a shockwave that produced an explosion. It struck Serafina with considerable force. She realized it was his right hand that triggered the potent wave attack, and that it intensified with each successive hit. Cyrus began to suspect the weak point wasn't in the mouth of the vine but somewhere else on her form. He knew he had to get closer to discover it, so he charged straight at her, prepared to risk everything for humanity's liberation and willing to examine every inch of her if it meant prevailing. Serafina seethed, struggling to grasp how he could act with such bold heroism while uttering such outrageous words. Cyrus charged straight at her, his eyes glowing crimson, catching her completely off guard. He muttered about starting with her chest and reached his hand toward it. In an instant, Serafina unleashed a dense cloud of purple smoke. The stench it carried was unbearably foul. Cyrus recoiled in shock at the revolting odor, wondering if she was using the smoke to conceal something. Panic set in as he realized his Angel of Bliss glove had not yet charged. He would have to rely on his own strength, but something felt wrong. His head swam, dizziness creeping in. Was the smoke affecting him? Out of the haze, her vine-like tongue lashed at his heart. He tried to seize it, but it snapped back too quickly. She retracted into the shroud, slipping beyond his reach. From the shadows, Serafina chuckled cruelly, telling him it was only a matter of time before he was paralyzed and unconscious. Once that happened, she would have absolute control over him. Inside the smoke, Cyrus felt his head spinning, his body growing heavier by the moment. Then realization struck. When his right hand made contact, it could trigger a wave of light. She was deliberately keeping that hand away from her. Suspicion arose that one of her vines might still be coiled around his hand. Suddenly another vine whipped at him. He assumed it was just a diversion, and the real strike was coming from his left. Was she targeting his left hand? Yet, her move gave him the perfect chance to reach out and touch her. After her strike clipped his left arm, her vine slammed him down onto the ground. Seraphina remarked that his body was far tougher than she expected. She admitted she thought that bite would be enough to cripple his arm completely, and after inhaling so much of her poisonous miasma, he should be close to collapsing. In the choking haze of the purple smoke, Cyrus coughed violently as her vines gnawed and bit at him. With a twisted grin, Seraphina declared that once she ripped off his left arm, she would savor it slowly, licking up every drop of his blood. Her vines gnawed harder, making him bleed freely. Then Cyrus told her the power to unleash shockwaves wasn't tied to his right hand. It came from the gloves themselves. Thinking quickly, he thrust his hand into one of Seraphina's vines, which caused her sharp pain. She felt about 25% of the damage ripple through her. He yanked his hand back, and a black streak of yellow energy erupted outward. Charging up his bliss gloves, Cyrus sprinted toward Seraphina, prepared for another strike, unable to shake the thought of how bizarre her monstrous body truly was. Outwardly she still resembled a woman, but inside, she was something entirely alien. He reached for her chest, seeking those hidden sensitive spots he suspected were there. From his knowledge, creatures like her often concealed nerve-laden weak points in the most unexpected places. When his hand pressed against her chest, the reading startled him. It registered at 38%. Seraphina immediately raised her hand to block, realizing his reach was getting dangerously close to her neck. Infuriated, she lashed out with a brutal kick and shouted for him to back away. The blow hurled Cyrus across the ground. He was surprised that her chest only reacted with 36% sensitivity. In response, his body unleashed a burst of radiant light energy, a massive golden blast tearing outward. Seraphina recognized the danger at the last second, braced herself, and narrowly evaded the attack. The explosion shook the ground violently, scattering debris everywhere, its destructive power undeniable. Far away, someone in California noticed the disturbance and wondered if a fierce battle was unfolding inside. Cyrus sat slumped, resting his head in his hand, utterly drained. At last the pink smoke dissipated, and his mind began to clear. Seraphina laughed mockingly, insisting his strike had accomplished nothing. She explained that his blood had only reinforced her defenses. With sharp focus, Cyrus realized that even at 36% sensitivity he had not managed to strike her core. He needed to uncover her true weakness quickly. If she drained any more of his blood, he would be powerless. His thoughts raced through the parts of her he hadn't targeted yet. Studying her carefully, he pondered where her most sensitive spot might be. Then it dawned on him. During her last assault, she had gone for his foot, an oddly specific choice. A strike at his neck would have made more sense. He recalled her scream, the flashback of her hand running through his hair, their very first meeting, when instead of covering his mouth, she had aimed for his foot. It dawned on him that maybe her hand itself was her most sensitive point. As though reading his thoughts, Seraphina wrapped her vines protectively around herself, declaring she would no longer let him near. She ordered him to stay put and let her drain his blood, clearly growing desperate. At that moment, another figure emerged, a girl who questioned if Seraphina truly intended to bleed Cyrus dry. Addressing her as High Priestess Seraphina, she openly challenged her. Seraphina froze in surprise. The intruder was Lilia. She demanded to know why Lilia remained, and ordered her to leave. Lilia reminded her of their oath. Seraphina had promised that if detoxification failed, she would only seal Cyrus within the Holy Seal. Letting him die was forbidden under the Holy Seal's doctrine. A Sanctus was never to harm a living being. Even if sealed, Cyrus might one day break free. Seraphina countered that consuming him was the safest course. She told Lilia to forget the rules, insisting that if Lilia devoured Cyrus, she would gain the strength to dominate all under the Holy Seal. Pointing at Cyrus, Seraphina said she could rise to power, and Lilia could become the next High Priestess. All she had to do was stay quiet. But Lilia stood firm, vowing to report everything to the Holy Seal and urging Cyrus to leave with her. Rage consumed Seraphina. She accused Lilia of being unbearably stubborn, then decided to eliminate them both, unleashing her vines at Lilia. Cyrus leapt in front of her, shielding her and shoving her aside. The vines meant for Lilia struck Cyrus instead. As he touched them, he felt a sharp sensitivity reading of 32%. He quickly unleashed a wave of light, but Seraphina noticed his slowing movements. His body was near its breaking point. A crushing blow to his stomach sent Cyrus crashing down. Groaning in pain, he propped himself up with one arm, realizing the attack had damaged him internally. The pain was overwhelming. His body threatened to shut down. Lilia rushed to his side, placing her foot on the wound. She channeled purification magic, saying it would slow the bleeding, jolt his nerves to keep him awake, and dull the pain. Cyrus felt its effect and pleaded for more, but Lilia refused. She explained it was only an emergency spell, like a surge of caffeine. Too much would numb him completely, as though anesthetized, leaving him helpless. Seraphina launched another wave of vines. They ensnared Lilia, and Seraphina warned she didn't wish to kill her. She offered one last chance, leave quietly, and live. It wasn't worth risking herself over a man who meant nothing. But Lilia didn't hesitate. Cyrus wasn't just a man, he was her patient. By the law of the Holy Seal, once you begin healing someone, you must protect them to the very end. Seraphina sneered at Lilia, still entangled in her vines, and vowed to finish Cyrus off right before her eyes. Meanwhile, Cyrus twisted desperately to evade Seraphina's attacks, noticing his sensitivity meter had fallen to just 2%. Out of nowhere, Seraphina began to falter, wooziness overtaking her. The vines pursuing Cyrus withdrew. Seizing the chance, Cyrus launched forward. He blasted her with a massive wave of light, then he clasped both of her hands tightly. Suddenly, the sensitivity maxed out. The system revealed her weak point, unlocking his ultimate move. As Cyrus gripped Seraphina's hands, she shrieked, claiming those hands belonged to Lord Aithoth. She writhed in disbelief at his unyielding strength, feeling agony as her hands swelled, veins bulging grotesquely beneath the skin. Cyrus saw them begin to transform. Seraphina realized that, as a Galea carnivorous plant, all of her most sensitive nerves lay within her hands. Pain surged through her like an electric shock, and she collapsed, begging Cyrus to release her. But Cyrus refused, and the vines coiled around them began to purge their toxins. Watching closely, Lilia noticed the high priestess's body was riddled with impurities. Cyrus was purifying Seraphina from within. Seraphina mutated further into a monstrous form, swearing to rip out Cyrus' heart. Trembling, Cyrus tried to move, but his hands were paralyzed, and he suspected Lilia's magic was the cause. Enraged, Seraphina declared that devouring Cyrus was the only way to save humanity, but Cyrus refused, detonating a colossal shockwave. The blast from his bliss gloves was so immense it obliterated the building around them. Even Lilia was struck, staring in awe, wondering what kind of power he had unleashed. Cyrus clutched his face in pain, muttering that the recoil was so intense it had shattered his teeth. The scene shifted to Cyrus, and Lilia watching as Seraphina reverted into her true form, a massive, carnivorous plant. Cyrus staggered, panting heavily, murmuring that something was terribly wrong with him. He then collapsed into Lilia's lap. Alarmed, she called his name and checked his forehead, finding his temperature had plummeted to a dangerously low level. He had spent far too much energy in the fight. Without immediate aid, his life would be in peril. She gently lowered him onto the ground. Then she placed her glowing foot upon the wounded area of his body. She concentrates deeply, declaring that the first step will be restoring the damage inside his organs. Out of nowhere, Cyrus stirs in confusion, realizing the water around him has thickened into murky sludge, and immediately demands to know what's happening. Lilia explains in a steady tone that the sludge is simply the physical reflection of his wounds, proof that his body is in a dangerously fragile state. Cyrus makes an effort to move, but the heavy muck drags him down completely. He complains bitterly that the chill is unbearable, colder than before, while his body refuses to respond at all. Lilia continues channeling her purification magic through her foot, carefully watching the sludge as it shifts and darkens. She knows the danger. If left unchecked, the filth could freeze him solid from the inside, so without hesitation, she presses and rubs it away with her foot before it can harden into something lethal. Cyrus exhales slowly, his tense expression easing into something calmer. Then a glowing system message appears on the screen, confirming that the target has been registered. Lilia stays composed, urging him to breathe evenly and relax. Since purification magic is powered by her clarity of mind, she cannot allow her focus to waver. Should negativity cloud her, the spell would weaken and possibly collapse entirely. She knows she must complete the healing before that critical point arrives. Cyrus remarks that warmth is returning to him and attempts to push himself upright. Lilia retreats a step and tells him that his internal wounds are fully mended. All that remains is to restore his strength. She lifts her foot with deliberate care and then places it softly against his lips, signaling the final stage of recovery. Still dazed, Cyrus' mind conjures the image of a chocolate cake. Acting on instinct, he begins to eat, while Lilia holds firm in her determination. She commands him to consume every last piece, vowing she will not allow the spell to fail. For her, this is more than mere magic. It is a trial of conviction. With certainty, she declares he will be healed completely. Suddenly, another bright message flashes on the screen, showing favorability has reached 51%. Cyrus keeps licking at her foot, rambling about how delicious the cake tastes. Lilia flinches, clearly uncomfortable, bluntly telling him to stop with the tongue movements. Right after, a notification appears, marking the lust index at 60%. She grows anxious at the speed with which his muscles are absorbing power. Already, he is starting to cramp, and if it persists, he'll wake exhausted and sore. Realizing the risk, she knows she must quickly bring his body temperature down before it escalates further. That is the very moment when the lust index spikes again. She senses this surge as the optimal chance to aid him, since his body is highly receptive, and the heightened sensation penetrates him completely. But as she steps closer, Cyrus flinches and refuses. Lilia insists over and over that resistance is dangerous, explaining it as a vital step in treatment, and applies her other foot. Yet as the lust index continues climbing, she begins to feel a wave of intimidation herself. Aware that her purification is weakening, She reminds herself firmly to stay composed and guard against intrusive dark thoughts. Cyrus suddenly admits he feels a stab of pain and pleads for her to hold him. Blushing, Lilia urges him to hurry and finish eating, confessing she can't endure much longer. The lust index rises again. Cyrus resumes licking her foot. Lilia giggles, commenting that he's actually using his tongue, which tickles her. Quickly realizing she cannot allow herself to focus on that, she forces her mind to the teachings of the Holy Church. Banish desire, shun lust, and maintain balance. By anchoring herself in those doctrines, she successfully drives away the unwelcome feelings and holds to purity. And with that, the lust index begins to decline. When Cyrus finishes, Lilia withdraws her foot, telling him the treatment has ended, while the magic continues to run its course, lowering the index further. It drops down to 67%. Cyrus rises and asks if the procedure is complete, and Lilia confirms it is. She feels a surge of strength flow through her, realizing her purification has advanced dramatically, perhaps doubled in potency. The truth dawns on her that healing his wounds has amplified her own magic even further. As Cyrus stretches with relief, he praises that all his injuries are gone, and he feels completely refreshed, crediting Lilia's spell. Lilia reflects inwardly that this boost could bring her closer to becoming Archbishop much sooner than expected. She advises Cyrus that from now on, he should rely on her for treatment, even for minor wounds. Cyrus nods, agreeing without hesitation. The scene shifts back to the Holy Church, where a gaping hole mars the structure. Mr. Charlton arrives with a green-haired girl named Daisy, who gasps in shock. Charlton speculates whether a demonic beast was responsible. Mr. Charlton then approaches Cyrus and Lilia. Already present, he questions them directly about what happened, and whether it was an attack. Cyrus, uncertain, admits they lack full details, but confirms the Archbishop is gone. Jessie then notices the carnivorous plants Cyrus has displayed. Lilia advises Charlton they should await the new Archbishop before making decisions, but proposes discussing collaboration in the meantime. Charlton is momentarily surprised, but Lilia clarifies that once the Archbishop joins, many steps will be skipped. He sighs, conceding it is the only practical route. Cyrus steps back, excusing himself and bidding Charlton a quick farewell. Just as he departs, Charlton calls him back and instructs Daisy to escort Cyrus home while also updating him about the Warrior Guild's current situation. Cyrus raises an eyebrow, intrigued about what might be happening. Later, during the ride, Daisy sneaks a glance at Cyrus, though she keeps her eyes on the road. She explains that an unusual demonic beast has invaded the city, targeting only warriors. Cyrus looks bewildered, struggling to grasp her meaning, and presses for clarification. Daisy reveals that several A-rank warriors have already perished, their corpses drained of blood and mutilated in the most horrific way. The revelation stuns Cyrus, and he repeats the part about the blood loss, trying to piece things together. Daisy nods gravely, adding that strange markings are carved into the victim's skin, like a beast's language, with an eerie message, "Not you." It suggests the creature is hunting for a specific person. A grim suspicion creeps over Cyrus as he wonders if the blood-drinking beast is searching for him. Daisy continues, saying Daphne from Zone D is leading the investigation to keep the populace calm, and has already begun pursuing the creature. At that moment, a girl named Sathal appears at the window, whispering curses. Inside, the white-haired Yogo lifts her head in surprise, questioning her return, and pointing out the area is filled with merchants and soldiers. She then asks bluntly if Sathal intends to stay. Sathal shakes her head, refusing outright. She warns Yogo that this is enemy territory, and getting caught would spell disaster for humans, something she desperately wants to avoid. Yogo laughs, taunting that although she knows transformation magic, she has no intention of sharing it. Sathal looks baffled, explaining she can only alter appearances of others, not herself. Besides, she needs a safe haven since stepping outside is far too dangerous. Yogo stares at her in puzzlement. Then, without warning, blood trickles from Sathal's lips and she collapses on the ground. Yogo peers down curiously. She calls out Sathal for faking sickness just to grab attention, claiming she won't share her master anyway. As she speaks, her thoughts drift back to the moment Cyrus saved her. Just then, Cyrus and Daisy step through the entrance. Cyrus asks Daisy to fully brief him on the vampire beast situation. Daisy agrees, and Cyrus greets Yogo, announcing his return. Spotting Yogo, Daisy comments on how striking her name sounds. Yogo mutters about someone else appearing alongside the master. Quickly, she scoops up Sathal to conceal her. Cyrus opens the door and Yogo greets them warmly, saying it's good to see them back. Cyrus nods and gestures Daisy inside. As they enter, Yogo observes with faint confusion. Daisy offers Yogo a polite, apologetic smile, hoping she isn't intruding. Yogo's crimson eyes flicker with realization. Another woman means more trouble for her. She sighs, still uncertain how to respond. Cyrus hands Yogo a carnivorous plant while Daisy, barefoot, silently debates her next move. She has no desire to repeat past mistakes when her emotions overwhelmed her. Meanwhile, Yogo mutters to herself about needing to eliminate Daisy, convinced the woman is interfering with her master. While serving food to Cyrus and Daisy, Cyrus questions how the vampire beast infiltrated the city. Daisy explains that the southern dragon Beagle is on the verge of awakening and will unleash chaos. With the warrior forces depleted, The vampire beast slipped through. Daisy admits that when she handed Cyrus the captain's badge last time, she was rushed and forgot something crucial. Curious, Cyrus asks what it was. Daisy reveals that as secretary to the vice president of Zone Z, it is her duty to document the warrior's preferences and living conditions. She presents him with a personal promotion survey. Cyrus scans the form, noticing questions about a spouse, and asks if every section must be filled. Daisy confirms, explaining all new captains must submit it in detail since it influences team evaluations. Cyrus sighs but agrees to complete it, while Daisy privately hopes this will draw her closer to him. Just then, a noise echoes from the other room and Cyrus wonders how another intruder entered Yogo's space. He rises to investigate. Trailing behind is Sethel, looking visibly unwell. He asks if she's injured, but she panics, fearing the woman spotted her. If so, the warriors will pursue her, forcing her into battle for survival. Cyrus firmly insists she cannot kill the woman, promising they'll find another solution. Sethel glares, demanding why not, and whether the woman matters to him. Cyrus hesitates, then assures her he'll make her leave once he's done with the form. Daisy then asks Yogo who's inside Cyrus's room, and Yogo replies that it's his elder sister. Daisy's eyes widen as she worries she's become a third wheel in Cyrus's heart. Inside, Sethel warns again that the woman must be removed or eliminated. Cyrus calms her, promising he'll handle it. Suddenly, a scream rings out from the room. Daisy looks at Yogo, asking if they should help, but Yogo shakes her head, saying Cyrus can manage and another girl might even bite her. Sethel bursts out, bumping into Cyrus as he enters, and he wonders aloud how she can strike so hard despite her injuries. He hands Daisy the completed form, requesting she deliver it to the guild. She nods shyly, then suggests they go out for a meal at a great restaurant. Both Cyrus and Yogo are caught off guard, and Yogo shoots Daisy a sharp glance. Cyrus, confused, asks if that's really fine. Yogo grabs a bit of food from the dish, reminding him it's time to eat. Cyrus blinks in puzzlement, wondering when that was planned. Yogo blushes, pressing the food against her chest. She pulls Cyrus closer, gently insisting he eat it and remain with her until he's finished. Daisy's eyes widen while Cyrus stands there stunned. He finally takes a bite of one of the cookies, curiously wondering what ingredients it's made from. She offhandedly remarks that it's made from snake liver blended with bat wings, yet she insists with confidence that the flavor is actually decent. Yug leans in closer to Cyrus, urging him to take another bite, insisting that he should clear the entire plate. Cyrus, however, only shakes his head with a polite refusal, saying he's fine. Daisy, watching the whole exchange, tilts her head and asks if this is Cyrus' usual eating style. With a sigh, he admits honestly that dishes like this simply aren't his preference. Yug, still pressing him with food, only grins. She explains this is a daily routine, all because her master enjoys it. Then she casually tells Daisy that if she doesn't like watching, she can just leave. Daisy rises to her feet, apologizes for interrupting, and walks out, thinking to herself that perhaps Cyrus and Yug truly have grown this close. At that exact moment, a loud and forceful knock echoes against the door. Outside, a girl with vivid pink hair calls out politely, asking if someone could open up. Inside, another girl hears her voice and frowns, clearly showing irritation. The boy accompanying her, Roy, looks confused and wonders aloud why no one is responding. He channels his magic, preparing to take matters into his own hands. With a sudden crack, the door bursts wide open in an explosion of sound. From within, Cyrus leaps up instantly, his face twisted with shock and fury. He shouts angrily at them for smashing his door, swearing as he emphasizes that it cost him 100 silver coins. Charging straight at Roy with clenched fists and fire in his gaze, he looks ready to strike. But Diana steps in calmly, wearing a relaxed smile, and holds out a check. She explains that it's worth 100 gold coins, more than enough to cover the damage, and valid anywhere. Cyrus halts, freezes for a second, then snatches the check, demanding to know what exactly they want from him. Diana raises her hand, confidently making her pitch. She declares that she wants him to work under her, offering a staggering payment of 500,000 gold coins. Off to the side, Cyrus is stunned, unable to believe what he's just heard, because the offer sounds absolutely outrageous. Yug, however, grows increasingly irritated, her patience fraying. She's tired of watching other women constantly try to lure her master away. Before Cyrus can even open his mouth to answer, Daisy cuts in, urging him not to accept. Cyrus turns to her in confusion, wondering why she would interfere. Daisy faces Diana and Roy directly, pointing out that they're members of Zone D. Diana smirks slyly and mocks Daisy, calling her an old woman, questioning if that even matters. That single insult sends Daisy into a fury. She insists with conviction that Cyrus is far too valuable to Zone Z, and there's no way they'll let him defect to Zone D. The scene shifts outside, where Daphne is with her squad. One of her men kneels beside a corpse, examining carefully. He notes that the blood hasn't yet clotted, which suggests the victim died only 4 to 5 hours earlier. Another squad mate steps forward, and reports that Diana has gone to meet Cyrus. Hearing this, Daphne's expression sharpens. Inwardly, she scoffs, thinking that the sly snake actually dared to go see Cyrus. Yet aloud, she remains strict and composed. She tells her team that there are bigger priorities right now and orders them to scour the area thoroughly. If they encounter the vampire beast, They're to report immediately and wait for her. No reckless attempts at heroism. Her team responds in unison, loudly affirming her command. Without further words, Daphne activates her ability and soars into the sky. With cold resolve, she thinks to herself that Diana will not succeed in pulling this trick on her again. Cyrus belongs in Zone ZD. The scene then shifts dramatically to a colossal dragon ripping through buildings, scattering debris in every direction. It is the Dragoon Beagle, a monster of staggering size. Roaring with fury, his voice shakes the heavens. His stomach growls louder still, his rampage fueled by nothing more than ravenous hunger. He tears rooftops apart as though they were fragile parchment, snapping tree-sized beams like they were brittle sticks. Guild members scramble in chaos to hold the situation together. One confirms that civilians have already been evacuated, so there are no casualties. Still, the tension runs high. The Slay Dragon Blade, the only weapon rumored capable of wounding Beagle, hasn't been retrieved. That leaves them powerless. A young scout suggests that the safest course is to keep distance and merely observe, as fighting the beast directly would be suicide. But the Guildmaster offers a different perspective. He points out that Beagle isn't truly assaulting the city, at least not out of hatred. According to the Guildmaster, the dragon has chosen the ruins at the outskirts because of the treasure buried beneath, piles of gold. Beagle happens to be fond of gold, and the spot makes for a comfortable nest. Is hunger? Likely nothing more than the irritation of being roused from slumber. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Daisy leans in to ask Lady Diana if it's possible to capture the elusive captain from Zone Z. Diana immediately questions whether they have the funds to make such a bid. She glances towards Cyrus, curious about his opinion. But he only blinks and admits he doesn't even know the man. Diana doesn't seem to care. She swiftly explains that Sarah's actual role would be to expose Daphne, reveal how she broke her no-cooperation rule, and share details about the Shia dungeon incident. But there's a catch. He would have to reveal it all live on a popular broadcast just to put her sister in an awkward spot. Once Cyrus grasps her true intention, he refuses immediately. He sees through the ploy. Diana raises her voice in frustration, insisting that this is his golden opportunity to earn more money than he could dream of. Cyrus answers calmly, stating it isn't worth it if the price is making Daphne sad. He made a promise, and he intends to honor it. Diana narrows her eyes, thinking he's negotiating. She wonders aloud if he's simply angling for an even higher offer, and tries to sweeten the deal. But at that very moment, Daphne's voice cuts sharply from behind, authoritative and fierce. Diana spins around, caught completely off guard. Daphne storms into the room, demanding that they back away from Cyrus. Her stance makes it clear she's seconds away from throwing a punch. Roy quickly intervenes, reminding her that she shouldn't strike her own sister so harshly. Daphne pulls back only slightly, warning Roy to stay out of matters that don't concern him. From the corner, Daisy mutters under her breath, wondering if Daphne from Zone D might actually harbor feelings for Cyrus. Diana smirks, mocking Daphne for being insecure or losing trust in Cyrus, especially since she abandoned her positions. Daphne glares, retorting that she's simply a natural-born troublemaker. Cyrus interjects, pointing out he hasn't even said a word yet. Daphne's thoughts drift back to the times he supported her, remembering how he never let riches pull him away from his promises. Her eyes then lock on Diana. A sly smirk curves across her lips. She makes a jab, suggesting Diana's chest is clearly artificial. Implants, a shallow attempt to fix what money can't buy. She mocks that her sister's curves are far from natural. Diana snaps instantly, furiously denying the accusation. She barks at Roy to leave with her, calling everyone in the room disgusting. As they depart, Diana seethes silently, plotting. She thinks about how Cyrus must be hiding more secrets, and she vows to uncover them for revenge against Daphne. After they're gone, Daphne mutters that next time, Cyrus should be the one to kick her sister out. Alone with her now, Cyrus can't help pondering the tense dynamic between the sisters, even briefly wondering if Daphne might have been right about those implants. Suddenly, an urgent report comes through. A white-haired demonic beast has been spotted in Zone Y. Daphne wastes no time. She bolts off immediately to investigate. Daisy says her farewells and departs shortly after. At that point, Yug steps forward with troubling news. She informs Cyrus that Sadiel is gravely ill. Her body temperature has fallen to dangerous lows. Only a rare advanced recovery herb could save her, but there isn't enough time. Growing desperate, Cyrus is struck with a sudden idea. Perhaps his blood, carrying the essence of Sadiel's lord, could be the cure. Without hesitation, he slashes his palm, letting the crimson flow directly into Sadiel's mouth. Yug gasps in shock, but then notices it's working. A vibrant aura of green mana begins wrapping around Sadiel's body. Cyrus watches intently. Soon, Sadiel stirs. Her eyelids flutter open. Groggy, she clutches her head. Cyrus leans close and gently asks if she's all right. The scene then cuts back to Beagle, who is lazily gnawing on massive boulders. Suddenly, he freezes. His nostrils flare. He catches a scent. A low growl rumbles from deep within, and his gigantic form begins to move. Panic spreads immediately. This behavior is unprecedented. Beagle is heading straight towards Salem. The Guildmaster shouts to place everyone on full alert. Reporters pour in, confirming Beagle's path directly toward the city. The reason? He has caught the scent of Sadiel's lord's blood now coursing inside Cirrus, and he craves it. Yog stares at the blood in awe, stunned by how intoxicating his fragrance is. Sadiel clutches Sarah's hand, declaring she won't waste even a drop. Cyrus flushes red, exclaiming that she's sucking his hand too forcefully, and it's starting to tickle. Yog suddenly cries out too, saying she can't resist any longer and needs her share. She seizes his head and dives for his hand, eager for her taste of blood. Now both of them are at it, drinking greedily. Cyrus shouts at them to stop, complaining he can't even feel his hands anymore. The two demon girls begin to wonder aloud if their bodies feel so invigorated because the purification is working within them. Yog realizes that must be why Sadiel is healing as well, though she herself can't stop and only hungers for more. Suddenly, a piercing emergency alarm blares, announcing the activation of a high-level magical barrier. The sound jolts them back to their senses. Both stop instantly, startled by the announcement. Sadiel realizes with shame that she completely lost control of herself. Yog, meanwhile, is shocked to discover her clothing has reappeared, though her magical reserves feel heavily depleted. The announcement continues, declaring that the giant dragon beagle is marching toward Salem City, with an estimated arrival in 10 days. All citizens are ordered to evacuate into underground shelters, and every warrior must prepare their dragon-slaying blades for defense. Every warrior must report to headquarters within 3 hours or face demotion from the guild. Jeeps roar down the streets, racing toward HQA. Meanwhile, Secretary informs Cyrus that he's on his own, since no recruits have joined him and Zone Z has no spare vehicles. Cyrus groans in disbelief, asking if that means he has to run 100 miles. He yells at her to recruit someone, but she only shrugs, saying she has paperwork to finish. If he wants transport, he'll need to pair with another guild. That's when Irene from Squad 14 offers him a seat with them. Cyrus asks if her captain would be fine with it, and Irene replies that her captain would probably be glad to team up with someone strong like Cyrus, but the moment he introduces himself as an F-rank captain, she freezes and instantly backs away. After all, no F-rank is supposed to even have a captain. She quickly cuts off the conversation, pretending it never happened, leaving Cyrus seething with anger. Out of nowhere, Bella appears, requesting to join Squad 15. Cyrus is stunned at the sight of her. She greets him warmly, then scolds him for never visiting her after his hospital stay. She asks if he's already forgotten her, saying she's heard plenty about him. Cyrus explains he's just been overwhelmed with endless chaos. Bella smiles, glad to hear he's now a captain, and promises they'll catch up after the mission. The secretary reminds him he still has paperwork unfinished. Irene tells Bella not to waste time with losers from F-rank, bragging her own captain is a rank. Then Tyler appears, mocking Cyrus and claiming he only gained his captaincy through connections. Bella's eyes widen in recognition as she spots him. Tyler tries to persuade her to join the Kalan Society instead. He arrogantly brags that his armor grants him overwhelming superiority compared to Cyrus. With a smug grin, he extends another offer, sweetening it by throwing in an A-rank blade. Yet Bella refuses outright, firmly declaring her loyalty remains with Cyrus. Cyrus instructs her to come over and sign the documents, assuring her it'll be handled. She strides forward without the slightest hesitation. Tyler's fists tremble as fury consumes him, unable to comprehend why Bella always sides with Cyrus instead of him. Irene spits venom at Bella, ridiculing her poor taste, and advises Tyler to drop her and move on. But Tyler seethes, vowing aloud that one day they'll all be crawling for his aid. Meanwhile, Cyrus is once again raising his voice at the front desk, complaining that no transport was given. The secretary calmly explains Squad 14 already secured the last pair, despite being only 5 members, she notes. She then suggests he request assistance from Captain Tyler. Tyler bursts out laughing, mocking Cyrus as a penniless fool who can't even afford proper armor, adding he'd sooner host a public roast to shame him before Bella than share a ride. Cyrus, however, silently studies a paper slipped to him earlier by Lady Diana. On it is an offer promising her support should he ever require it. Tyler mutters impatiently, wondering why the group hasn't come out yet. One subordinate reports that their target has indeed arrived and is tied down. Tyler casually asks whether he can simply seize a vehicle, to which Cyrus nods in agreement. Tyler then makes a show of dropping his sword deliberately. With a mocking apology, he requests someone else pick it up, joking he's still adapting to the unstable nature of his Thunder Rage weapon. Taylor butts in, saying they must earn their reward like genuine warriors if they expect anything done. Bella snaps, shouting that he's crossing the line and doing it deliberately, while Irene sneers that Bella's choice in men is laughable. The driver hints they might need to swallow their pride and beg Taylor, who could pardon their earlier insolence. Taylor coldly lays down the rule that all warriors must reach headquarters within 3 hours or forfeit their position. Failures will be reduced to ordinary nobodies again. Bella narrows her eyes, realizing Taylor is asserting dominance over Cyrus solely to provoke her. Just then Cyrus calmly informs them that the helicopter has arrived. Taylor blinks in disbelief. Everyone's jaws drop as they spot the incoming aircraft, emblazoned with the guild insignia. Recognizing it as a private craft reserved for elite dignitaries, the crowd buzzes in speculation, wondering what kind of mission merits such prestige. Still, Taylor dismisses the chatter, insisting it must be related to some major operation, and orders them to stop guessing. A refined young woman steps out of the helicopter, asking Cyrus if it's time to depart. Taylor's squad is floored, unable to believe an F-rank warrior would be treated with such honor, calling it reckless. Cyrus retrieves his blade and tells Bella to get on board. Taylor fumes, refusing to accept that a supposed F-rank nobody dares to act with such confidence. But then he notices Ciri is holding his weapon, which makes him pause. Loudly demands that Ciri return it immediately. Ciri merely shrugs, replying that he simply forgot to hand it back. Channeling his strength, he hurls the weapon straight into the ground. The moment it impacts the fuel tank, an immense explosion erupts. Panic breaks out as flames engulf their vehicle. Taylor barks at his men to secure another mode of transport. Members scream that a demonic beast is slaughtering their allies, draining human blood as though they were cattle. The monster licks the blood, grimacing that it isn't the flavor she desires. She mutters in curiosity, wondering which man will possess the blood she truly seeks. The beast advances on the squad, vowing to siphon every male in the city until she finds the right one. Terrified voices shout that Daphne's presence is the only hope. One soldier cries out that their duty is to protect the city, not endlessly scour for replacement fighters. The beast lunges forward, prompting the commander to cry out a warning of the incoming strike, but too late. She seizes him in her grasp. He stares into her gaping maw, paralyzed with the dread of imminent death. At that instant, a figure swoops in, rescuing him just before the fatal bite. The squad erupts, shouting Daphne's name as she chastises them for charging ahead without her. They beg her to retreat to headquarters, but she insists on eliminating the beast first. Suddenly her eyes widen in recognition, demanding to know why this demon is still alive. The monster tilts her head, questioning whether Daphne truly remembers her. Daphne steels herself, declaring the advantage is hers this time. She recalls how she was trapped before, but now she's willing to sacrifice part of herself since the beast is clearly weaker. The monster coolly replies she's nothing more than fragmented pieces serving a man with demonic blood. Hinting at a previous encounter, Daphne's mind clicks. The beast is hunting Ciri. She roars her vow, promising she will never allow the creature near him. Ciri quietly asks if the sealed chamber beneath headquarters truly exists, and Diana confirms only a select few know of it, explaining that Dragon Slayer blades are stored there. Bella inquires if more beasts could appear in that zone, but Diana assures her it's impossible, calling the chamber perfectly secure. As they descend further, shock grips them at the sight of slain guards. Cyrus presses Diana if the demonic beast is already inside, realizing the place is compromised. Diana freezes at the sight of a statue that hadn't been present before, a maid carved in stone, seemingly asleep. She questions whether their intelligence was flawed. Bella suddenly notices a wounded man still breathing amid the carnage. She hurries to his side, helping him rest against the wall. Meanwhile, the others fan out to investigate the basement. Lady Diana steps cautiously forward, horrified by the devastation. She struggles to grasp how such a heavily guarded area turned into this slaughterhouse. The injured man mutters faintly that the maid had descended moments before chaos began, instantly heightening Diana's alarm. Her voice rises sharply, demanding clarity about what lurks below. But the survivor frantically gestures for silence, terror in his eyes, warning her not to rouse the statue again. His caution comes too late. The maid's stone visage awakens, eyes snapping open with a blinding glow. Without warning, searing beams erupt from her gaze. The blast smashes into Cyrus and his companions with staggering force. Roy shouts Diana's name, diving toward her. He throws himself over her just in time to shield her, while Cyrus reacts instantly, dragging Diana back and covering her with his body as a second beam strikes. Abruptly, the assault ceases. The statue's eyes shut once more. Her head droops, returning to lifeless stillness. As the haze clears, Diana turns to Roy, her face stricken with fear, asking if he's all right. With a crooked grin, he says only his hand needs rest. Nothing critical. Bella, still tending the survivor, tries to bind his wounds, but he insists time is too short. He urges them to scatter while they can. Cirrus asks whether the statue only attacks when it hears noise. The man nods feverishly, warning that the staircase leading to what he calls the danger zone, Nair, the statue triggers her wrath through any movement or sound. Cirrus grips his blade tightly. He orders Bella to remain with the wounded man and watch over Lady Diana. Diana, now visibly shaken, commands Roy to obliterate the statue outright. Cirrus rejects that plan, proposing instead that they target one eye at a time so others can intervene if someone gets injured. Roy hesitates, doubting Cirrus has the courage to confront such a monster, especially as an E rank at best. Cirrus stays silent. Then he bellows that he must test his power and charges recklessly with his sword raised. The statue stirs, head lifting, as her eyes blaze open again. Another scorching beam tears towards Cirrus. He attempts to evade, questioning whether he can truly avoid damage, but realizes even close grazes will sap him quickly. Listening closely to her reaction time, he begins darting unpredictably, trying to mislead her targeting. The statue fires relentlessly, beams shredding stone and air with merciless precision. The others attempt to advance, but the wild blasts catch them too. Bella looks on in horror, grasping that this foe is far more dangerous than anticipated. Ciri studies the rhythm of her attacks, noticing she always locks onto the loudest sound. Testing this theory, he hurls his blade behind her. Instantly, the statue swivels, annihilating the weapon with a beam and hissing mechanically for silence. Cirrus confirms it. It is indeed sound base. Seizing another weapon, he prepares to strike again. He lunges forward and lands a direct blow, but his sword disintegrates against the stone surface. Before he can recoil, Roy steps forward. His arm hardens into rock as he confidently declares, "This is nothing but a trivial test for him." He smashes his stony fist into the statue's chest. Yet to his horror, the strike leaves almost no mark. He barely has time to react before the statue clamps her hand around him. Roy howls as her grip tightens. Cyrus springs into motion, seizing a nearby hammer and slamming it against her back. As the weapon connects, something gleams faintly amid the swirling dust. He peers more intently and suddenly goes rigid. Carved into the statue's back is yet another eye. Before he can even call out a warning, that hidden eye snaps open and unleashes a beam. Cyrus barely manages to roll aside in the nick of time. At the same moment, Roy is struggling just to stay alive. He summons a massive stone cross to block the statue's hands, desperate to stall for a few breaths. Lady Diana quickly realizes Roy is in serious danger. Even their hushed voices stir the statue. She jerks her head unnaturally, and her stone-carved eyes swivel toward Lady Diana, homing in on the faintest sound. A bright flare ignites in her gaze, and in the blink of an eye, a laser discharges. Roy, still tangled in her grip, sees what's about to happen and bellows for Diana to retreat. Bella wastes no time. She drags Lady Diana aside and shoves her into cover just in time. Roy clenches his jaw and tries a reckless tactic. Raising both arms, he attempts to smother the statue's glowing eyes with his hands, praying to block the blast long enough to spare them. The effort sears him instantly. The laser refuses to stop, its heat burning into his flesh, forcing him to scream in raw agony. His cry ricochets off the chamber walls. Through the unbearable pain, he still shouts at Cyrus, begging him to destroy the statue before she targets Diana again. Amid the madness, Roy seizes the statue's head, trying to twist or wrench it away from his allies. Yet, out of nowhere, Cyrus senses something unusual. As he moves closer, his hand brushes the statue's chest, and he feels warmth radiating there. The sensation stuns him completely. To everyone's astonishment, the statue reacts. A faint blush colors her stony cheeks. Abruptly, she hurls both Roy and Cyrus away with shocking force. Cyrus crashes back, quickly regaining his footing, his eyes locked on her every move. The statue folds in on herself, almost bashful, shutting her eyes and covering her chest with both arms. Cyrus is left baffled, unable to grasp why she's reacting in this bizarre way. Roy snarls in frustration, confessing he's thrown everything at her, yet she barely bears a scratch. He looks down at his hand, trembling, swollen, clearly broken. Pain streaks through his arm, and he knows he can't land another blow like that. His anguished shout rattles the chamber. In response, the statue's eyes flash open once again. Realizing he has her focus now, Roy braces himself, fully aware he won't dodge in time. Cyrus sees the danger instantly. Without hesitation, he plants himself in front of Roy, arms outstretched to shield him from the blast. Roy, stunned, yells at Cyrus, demanding to know how he thinks bare hands can stop a laser. But the statue halts mid-attack. She blinks, bewildered, as Cyrus reaches for her chest again, and gives it a gentle pinch. That single act completely unsettles her. Her laser veers off, striking the wall behind them instead. Cyrus notices the subtle shift in her body. He begins to wonder if she's truly capable of feeling. Bella and Lady Diana can only stare in speechless disbelief. They never imagined Cyrus could redirect a lethal attack with such an outrageous method. Roy, shocked and still writhing from his wounds, demands to know from Cyrus what in the world is happening. Cyrus gives no explanation. He only orders Roy to step aside, reminding him he's injured, and declares he'll handle things from here. Roy reluctantly starts retreating, but the statue notices the movement, locking onto him, and preparing another strike. Cyrus instantly counters with a reversal, disrupting her focus. The tactic works. Her beam misses Roy and slams into a distant wall. From her hiding spot, Lady Diana whispers to Bella, asking if Cyrus always fights this way. Bella shakes her head firmly, admitting this is definitely out of character. Yet, inexplicably, it's working. Diana checks Roy again. He insists he'll survive, though he admits they gravely underestimated the statue's strength. She warns Cyrus that the statue remains dangerous. By now, the Stone Maiden fixes her attention solely on him. He sidesteps her assault with speed. The evasive motion shifts her chest area once more. She appears unsettled, taking a moment to regain composure. Yet after that brief pause, she lunges again, flustered, but still relentless. This time, Cyrus studies her carefully. Her blows lack their former precision, her rhythm unraveling. He realizes her combat pattern is breaking apart. From the sidelines, Roy remarks on the growing disorder in her attacks. Then, without warning, Cyrus gives the statue a light smack on the rear and shouts that she'd better fight properly if she intends to battle seriously. She stumbles mid-swing, thrown off by the gesture. Roy watches, dumbfounded. Despite the absurdity, he can't deny Cyrus is somehow handling this fight effectively in his own peculiar style. Roy lies on the ground, clutching his chest in agony. Lady Diana kneels beside him, asking if he's all right. He groans that his chest feels broken, convinced his ribs have cracked from her brutal strikes. Bella jumps in, warning that fractured ribs can be life-threatening, pressing on the heart and lungs with each breath. She offers to treat him temporarily, urging him to bare his chest so she can help. Roy lifts his shirt. Bella blinks, momentarily caught off guard. She quickly composes herself and inspects him. When Roy asks what she sees, she assures him it's nothing but his injuries. Then she shifts the subject back to the battle, questioning whether any player devoted to Cyrus could actually topple the statue. Still, she insists Roy urgently needs proper care. He reflects grimly, realizing even his strongest blows barely left a mark on her. Meanwhile, Cyrus has slowed her attacks and seems to be controlling the rhythm. Bella remarks that Cyrus's prowess surpasses even that of an S-frame fighter. Cyrus notices the statue's blazer slipping and jokes that maybe it's because her eyes are nearly shut and she can't keep her composure. The statue remains silent, trying to cover herself. Cyrus, astonished, wonders if she's deliberately avoiding his eyes. He teases her, calling her cute, pointing out that she closes her eyes when embarrassed. Seeing her weakness, he decides to fly closer and touch her again. As he raises his hand, he mischievously asks if anyone has ever touched her navel before. Out of nowhere, she kicks him square in the chest, aiming for his heart to drive him back. Bella cries out that she has to step in to help Cyrus now that their captain is injured. But Cyrus catches hold of the statue's foot. The contact makes her squirm, her shyness evident. Roy seizes Bella, warning her not to interfere with Cyrus. Shocked, she demands to know what he means. Roy tells her to stay focused, pointing out that it's Cyrus gripping her foot, not the statue attacking him. He urges Bella to sense his heartbeat through her foot as he shifts her leg again. The moment only heightens the awkwardness for the statue. Flustered, she opens her eyes and begins firing lasers. Everyone is stunned. The blasts are noticeably weaker than before. Cyrus boldly tells her that even if she keeps firing, her attacks have lost their power. Suddenly, she grabs Cyrus by the throat and yanks him toward her. Roy shouts in alarm, warning that she's preparing a devastating strike and urging Cyrus to break free. Yet Cyrus simply lifts a hand, pointing at her chin, while Roy begs him to evade instead, insisting this could be fatal. At that instant, the system locks in, and Cyrus presses his lips to hers. The statue is utterly stunned. Roy blurts out that she's still frozen by the kiss. They share a breath, mingling like water exchanged, until Cyrus pulls back, gasping for air. The statue shoves him away, and Cyrus stumbles. She then playfully asks if he intentionally slipped in his tongue. Her cheeks flush, and she hides her face with both hands. She buries her head further into her arms. Lady Diana exclaims that the statue is literally hiding her face. Cyrus edges closer. Roy observes in disbelief. She isn't even reacting to Cyrus approaching again. Curious, he pokes her and remarks that her tongue felt stiff. Cyrus longs to make her lift her gaze again, but she remains quiet. He calls out to his ally, saying the bashful girl won't reveal her face anytime soon. Meanwhile, Taylor and his squad arrive at yet another fork in the labyrinth, clearly disoriented. One teammate questions why the intel only mentioned a single route. Taylor mutters about the maze-like feeling. Irene replies that HQ's information is usually reliable, so there must be a reason. Another comrade doubts the report's accuracy about only one path. Taylor remains baffled by the twisting terrain, until Irene suggests a previous team likely triggered something that altered the layout. Suddenly, another group cries out. A monster has appeared. One player is smashed to the ground, screaming in pain. A red-haired fighter yells, demanding if everyone has drawn their slay dragon blades. But confusion spreads. Many are still lost, whispers say. Most haven't even reached the entrance. The squad leader roars that they must rely on their own power and skill to hold off the giant dragon bearing down on them. One mate shouts that he has snared the dragon's feet. He manifests heavy green mana, declaring to the team, including the captain, that its legs are bound. But the bindings start to slip, and he admits he can't hold for long, ordering everyone to attack. The next instant, the dragon tears free with overwhelming force, sending players flying and leaving them wounded. Then, an S-rank iron arm giant named Cassius bellows that he will shield them, urging all others to keep striking the beast. Channeling an immense surge of mana, he morphs into a towering monster form. Cassius charges headlong at the dragon, shouting for it not to advance a step further. He slams into the beast with everything he has, boasting that he'll cleave it in two. The blow actually halts the dragon's momentum, and Cassius dares to wonder if their plan might just work. The onlookers erupt, praising him for his incredible show of power, and urging him to keep pressing without restraint. The dragon turns her head, eyeing his assault with a look of irritation. She pauses briefly, watching as Cassius shows off his strength and glowing stripes of power. Muttering under her breath, she complains that every time she tries to eat, someone always interrupts. She casually raises her hand, declaring that Cassius is unbearably annoying. Then, with a simple swipe, she bats him aside like he's a toy. That single strike shatters Cassius' armor, his mana proving utterly useless. He hits the ground hard, his head slamming down, leaving everyone stunned. None of them can believe a powerhouse like Cassius was crushed so easily. Even lying there, Cassius insists his comrades remember that Salem City stands behind them, and they must stop the dragon no matter the cost. His determination blazes, swearing they have to bring the dragon down as it creeps closer. Meanwhile, Taylor's team gathers at a massive door. Taylor grips the handle and warns them to tread carefully since what lies beyond is unknown. Cherise pushes the door outward. It groans with a loud creak, shaking the entire basement. The team freezes. One member nervously asks if an earthquake has struck the maze, while Taylor tells them to brace themselves for anything. Another player interjects, saying it doesn't feel like an earthquake at all. Rather, the air itself hums with magic, as though a mechanism has been triggered. As Cyrus forces the heavy door open further, the ground beneath them shifts violently. A colossal explosion erupts in the city, leaving everyone wide-eyed in disbelief. One player points toward the blast, shouting that it's an enormous surge of magical energy. Another wonders aloud what could have triggered such devastation from their headquarters. Horror spreads as they realize the entire headquarters has disappeared from the cityscape. Then, Roy concludes that everything changed the moment Sirius forced that door open. Lady Diana reels from dizziness, narrowly collapsing as she falls into Roy's lap. Another teammate cries out, noticing Carrot has already fainted, and still another reports that Hank has gone down too. Tiger Bandlier, an S-rank player, worries aloud about the C-rank fighters, saying they can't withstand the magical backlash flooding from the structure. He mutters it's foolish to even draw a sword now, since the entire terrain itself has shifted. He senses the heavy, lingering mana clinging to the ground and admits it's terrifying. Over with Sarah's group, some players comment that only a dungeon saturated with power like this could ever house a legendary weapon. Siri suddenly spots a blade resting on the ground. Irene quickly points it out to Taylor. Taylor sees it too and cries out, "It's the Slay Dragon blade." Cyrus can't help but marvel, imagining what it would feel like to draw such a weapon. Irene quietly reminds everyone that Cyrus is just an F rank, which makes Taylor scowl. Envy gnaws at him as he wonders why Cyrus always gets so lucky. He can't fathom how the maze vanished only for Cyrus to end up right next to the sword. Convinced the first to attempt drawing it has the best chance, Taylor resolves not to let Cyrus get ahead. He barks at his squad to follow him, and they obey at once. The sword itself mutters uneasily, saying it feels awkward with so many people crowding around. Cyrus stands frozen, staring in disbelief. The blade snaps at him, saying he has no right to gawk like that, especially since she lacks a scabbard. The sword orders Cyrus to quit staring, threatening to release her pressure if he doesn't shut his eyes, because she hates being ogled. Cyrus feels that crushing force and reels. How can a sword even speak? Stunned, he realizes it has a will of its own. In the next instant, a wave of mana pressure bursts outward. The blast is so strong even reinforced armor begins to crack. Players collapse one after another. Taylor's teammate shouts an explanation, but most can only gape the overwhelming mana. The air around Taylor grows thick as molten lead, suffocating and heavy. He scans the room, realizing it's unbearable for everyone. Even Cyrus struggles against the pressure. Yet the spirit of the sword remarks on how resilient Cyrus is to still be standing. Vandler whispers that anyone who can endure the pressure and still move has a real shot at pulling the blade. His comrade asks if he can really reach the Slay Dragon blade and what the danger might be. Bandlier reassures him, saying the sword has been dormant for ages, so surely it poses no threat. But the sword interjects herself, warning them bluntly that anyone approaching is already in the danger zone. Cyrus is rattled by her words and turns to Bella. He asks if she senses anything too. Bella suggests maybe he's just hallucinating from the intense mana. Taylor leaps towards Cyrus, sneering that the pressure must have fried his brain. He brags that his stamina far exceeds Cyrus's, while Roy reminds Cyrus that whoever pulls first has the best chance, so he can't fall behind. Taylor scoffs, mocking Cyrus as an F-rank nobody who has no right to wield the Slay Dragon blade. Bella races toward Taylor, shouting that he's moving too fast, but Cyrus halts her, telling her to stay clear. The moment Taylor crosses the boundary near the sword, the blade senses him and bellows for him to back away. But Taylor ignores her, convinced that grabbing the sword in front of Bella and Cyrus will make him look like a hero while humiliating Cyrus. The sword spirit groans at Taylor's arrogance, warning him not to lay a finger on her hilt. Just as Taylor stretches his hand toward her, looking down smugly at Cyrus, the sword snaps that he's giving off seriously creepy vibes. She lashes out with a swift kick, determined not to let anyone close. Taylor is sent flying, slammed back hard. He howls in agony as the sword's mana tears into him. His comrades gasp in shock. One shouts for their captain. Another mutters in disbelief that their leader was just wrecked by the blade itself. Cyrus studies the sword carefully, while the spirit rolls her eyes at mortals, scoffing that they're always so rough. She sighs that humans never change, even after centuries, and admits she detests their existence. Taylor examines his ruined armor, pointing out it was forged from deep sea ore, yet it was shredded easily. Cyrus realizes only his A-rank scale armor beneath spared him from catastrophe. Without it, the outcome would have been grim. The other players murmur in awe at the living sword. One asks how anyone can even safely draw it, while others claim Taylor failed because the blade rejected him. They chatter in disbelief at how the sword is alive. Taylor's allies complain that their gear isn't strong enough to withstand her strikes, wondering aloud who will be bold enough to attempt the pull next. Then, unexpectedly, Taylor starts laughing. His teammates stare, baffled. He grins, insisting he isn't a failure at all. He explains that legendary weapons only submit to those who pass the trial of the Slay Dragon blade. Taking his stance again before the weapon, he proclaims that as an A-rank warrior, he has already cleared the trial. He shouts that the Slay Dragon blade should be honored by his claim. But the spirit shows nothing but disdain. She fires back at Taylor, saying she loathes arrogant men like him. She even hints that destroying him herself would be satisfying, proving he's unworthy to wield her. Taylor suddenly points at Cyrus, yelling that he's envious because the Slay Dragon blade seems to favor him. Cyrus calmly suggests maybe the blade simply wants to kill him personally. The sword spirit glances at Cyrus and softly agrees that he's absolutely right. Then, in a sudden lunge, Taylor makes a desperate grab for the weapon. The spirit catches him off guard, since she wasn't paying attention, but quickly scolds him, pointing out as clutching her neck instead of her hilt. A surge of crushing mana pressure erupts, splintering Taylor's armor. Everyone gasps. Taylor is actually holding on, and he might conquer the Slay Dragon Blade after all. Straining, Taylor roars that the pressure is unbearable, tearing through his body as though testing him. He wonders aloud if this is the final trial of the blade. The sword spirit shrieks that Taylor is hurting her, and struggles to break free. Taylor tightens both hands on the grip, refusing to let go. The players shout in excitement, believing Taylor will be the first to pull the weapon and become their city's savior. The sword spirit erupts in fury, screaming that all humans disgust her for treating her this way. Suddenly, Taylor notices the atmosphere shifting. Other players murmur that the blade has stopped attacking, giving them hope they can claim victory without risking their lives. They urge Captain Taylor to seize the Slay Dragon Blade. Banlia looks discouraged, muttering that maybe Taylor really is succeeding. He admits that as an S-rank, there's no reason for him to interfere. Meanwhile, Taylor is trembling with anticipation, gripping the sword while thinking of Bella. In his mind, it's him, not Cyrus, whom the Slay Dragon Blade has chosen. The crowd cheers him on, calling him their hero. Bella scowls, furious, because Cyrus was supposed to be the first to draw the blade, yet Taylor reached it first. The sword spirit, now fully awake, grows confused at the cheering for Taylor. Snapping, she threatens to tear everyone to shreds. Cyrus catches the shift instantly and pulls his teammates back. Bella asks what's wrong. Cyrus warns her. The Slay Dragon Blade is enraged. The others notice it too, and then the blade erupts, unleashing destruction with uncontrollable mana pressure. The spirit turns her wrath on Taylor, battering him with unbearable pain from her crown of power. Everyone nearby feels the suffocating pressure radiating from her. Taylor screams in torment, his iron resolve breaking, his body left shattered. The sword spirit, seasoned with humanity yet clearly shy, lashes out with a savage kick. Iron senses the torrent of mana surging from her and yells that it's heading straight for Taylor. Terrified, he ducks behind Taylor, begging for protection. Then Banlia rushes in, throwing himself in the way, using his skill to intercept the attack with a single hand. He exerts every ounce of strength while Irene stares on. Stunned, Taylor lies pale and motionless. Banlia manages to divert the strike, the ground trembling violently beneath them. Still, the sword keeps amplifying her magical pressure, striking everything in range. The spirit's attention shifts to Banlia, and she admits his body is impressively resilient. She notices that his armor has regenerated, serving as a protective barrier for humanity and flaunting his prowess as an A-rank warrior. The other players take note of Banlia's resilience, his armor completely untouched. One of them even remarks that being an A-rank warrior is truly remarkable. He instructs everyone to move the wounded to the underground sanctuary, assigning the lower-ranked members to assist while the higher-ranked fighters remain with him. Without hesitation, everyone follows orders. Taylor's team lifts him up, urging that they need to retreat because staying here any longer is far too dangerous. Banlia unleashes his power, transforming as he proclaims himself to be humanity's ultimate protector. His eyes then turn toward the sword, which he firmly believes to be the strongest weapon in existence. At that exact moment, the sword spirit raises her leg, preparing to strike Banlia. She faces him directly. He braces himself for the impact, shouting that they are destined to be the perfect match. Banlia charges forward with unshakable determination toward the sword. His intent is to seize it while weaving past the storm of magical attacks coming his way. The sword spirit takes notice of the incredible speed with which he moves. Meanwhile, the guild members from Salem City cry out encouragement, declaring that he is their final hope, and demanding that he prove to the Slay Dragon Blade that humans surpass its might. The sword spirit then lifts both her legs. She channels immense pressure through her magic. Yet Banlia maneuvers with expert precision, slipping past her strikes as he edges ever closer to the sword. Her power, formidable as it is, proves ineffective against Banlia's advance. He seizes the blade, declaring his right to be the one worthy of wielding it. The sword spirit, however, refuses to submit to his ownership. She retaliates with another sudden strike. This blow lands squarely against Banlia. His armor is smashed into fragments. The force of the strike leaves a wound on his face, drawing blood. Shock ripples through everyone present. Banlia himself is stunned, believing he has been wounded even though the sword spirit had not directly touched him. He collapses to the ground as his comrades cry out his name in alarm. Banlia waves them off, forcing them back despite their concern. He tells them bluntly that they must defeat the sword. The players are astonished, pointing out that not even S-rank armor can withstand its magical might. One observes that the Slay Dragon Blade has awakened completely, leaving no hope of victory. Still, Banlia insists it must be conquered, for only then can they gain true strength and bring glory to the Slay Dragon Blade. The group whispers among themselves, vowing to fight until their last breath. Banlia reminds them that as warriors it is their duty to face trials for the sake of Salem City. He questions their hesitation and grows fierce, declaring that any player who refuses to fight will be branded a deserter and executed on the spot. He lashes out at the players for wasting time with idle chatter. The sword spirit overhears, and softly remarks that the humans already recognize her power and tremble with fear. She suddenly targets a blonde player, threatening to begin with him if no one dares to move, shoving him toward danger. Terrified, the blonde player panics. But then, spotting someone already standing in the battlefield, he screams for Banlier to look. Cyrus gazes at the sword, recalling the words spoken by the Slay Dragon spirit when Taylor had tried to claim it. He comes to understand that the sword possesses awareness and communication like a living being. Realizing it has its own life force, he wonders if his system could connect with or even bind its spirit. Cyrus commands his system to lock onto the target, and it responds. The sword spirit entwines herself around the blade, bewildered by the intensity of Cyrus' gaze. The other players begin murmuring, questioning how the captain of Squad 14, an F-rank nobody, could possibly dare to draw the sword. They shout that Cyrus must be insane, convinced that his meager power will only get him torn apart. Cyrus, however, proclaims with fiery conviction that he is a warrior, bound to protect Salem City from danger. He resolves to draw the Slay Dragon blade even at the cost of his life, refusing to back down. Banlier acknowledges that even the weakest among them can display more bravery than the lofty A rank and B rank players. He declares that Cyrus possesses a noble soul. The Slay Dragon blade spirit senses something different within him. She whispers that he stirs a peculiar itch inside her. As Cyrus fixes his eyes on her, she admits aloud that he is unlike other humans. She cannot resist the pull any longer, and feels an uncanny connection awakening. As Cyrus approaches her, she attempts to shield herself, unleashing a slash to drive him away. Yet the sword spirit wonders why her strength feels so diminished, especially her legs, which tremble and barely move as strange tingling spreads through them. Meanwhile, the players are in disbelief. Cyrus remains unharmed despite the sword's aura. They whisper in confusion, astonished that the blade reacts so differently to him. They are dumbfounded at how close he stands without consequence. They recall how the sword always strikes down any living being that dares approach, making it impossible for anyone to claim it. Yet with Cyrus, it seems utterly still. Whispers arise that perhaps the blade has gone dormant. The sword spirit herself feels a strange sensation clouding her mind, realizing her will to attack is slipping away. Each glance at Cyrus deepens the disarray, making her question why he alone causes this effect. With every step he takes nearer, their connection grows undeniable. The players cry out in disbelief that she isn't attacking, insisting it's impossible. They argue over whether the Sword of Judgment has truly gone dormant, with one exclaiming that if so, Cyrus is unimaginably fortunate. The spirit feels her hand growing unbearably heavy. She struggles to control the emotions welling up inside her but fails. Cyrus keeps his eyes fixed on her, even as blood trickles from his nose. A player notices the blood and points out that it was not caused by the sword's assault. Banlier emphasizes that Cyrus is merely an F rank, making it absurd that he has not collapsed under the blade's pressure. They cannot comprehend how he endures such power, noting he is barely completing his mission as a hero. Cyrus clutches his nose, admitting that he has never bled so much from it before. He can feel the overwhelming force of the Sword of Judgment pressing against him. Bella, deeply worried, suggests he step back if the situation becomes too dangerous. But with a single gesture of his hand, he stops her. Cyrus vows firmly that his mission is to protect Salem City, and nothing will deter him from that path. On the other side, the sword spirit feels a rush of strange warmth as she looks at him. She admits she feels shaky and unsettled. Even her chest flutters with rapid beats as though her heart is racing wildly. She finds herself strangely restless, tempted to tear at her garments. A desire wells up within her, wanting to reveal more of herself before Cyrus. She wrestles with these troubling thoughts, resolving that she cannot allow her shame to overtake her. She demands that Cyrus avert his eyes, warning that if he continues, she will be fully exposed. To shield herself, she prepares to confront him head-on. The players sense the growing tension and cry out that the Slay Dragon blade has awakened. Banlier is startled by the force of the attack, likening it to when his armor had been shattered. They warn that Cyrus is in grave danger being so close, while Cyrus himself wonders if the sword spirit still has enough strength to strike him. He places his hand against the sword, thinking he must counter if he hopes to survive. Instantly, the sword spirit feels a new and bewildering sensation, questioning what is happening to her. As Cyrus makes contact with the blade, she senses a tingling current coursing through her, especially in her legs, robbing her of focus. Her magic falters, misfiring into the ground. Gasps echo all around as the Slay Dragon blade's devastating assault abruptly ceases. Banlier is dumbfounded, unable to comprehend how an F-rank like Cyrus could withstand the sword's force without shattering his armor. The crowd stares in awe at Cyrus' resilience and stamina. At the same time, the sword spirit rises amid the clash, reflecting on the countless sensations she has known, from the rending of armor to the blazing torment of fire. Yet none of those compare to this. A strange, electrifying spark floods through her, mingled with an inexplicable tickling sensation she cannot shake. Overcome, she collapses to her knees, admitting she can no longer raise her hand against him because of what she feels. Recognizing the chance, Cyrus declares this is the moment for him to become the rightful wielder of the blade. The sword spirit admits that his touch leaves her flushed and trembling, ticklish beyond endurance. Cyrus concentrates fully, channeling every ounce of strength into pulling out the blade. The sword spirit can no longer resist her strength slipping away. In a stunning twist, Cyrus succeeds in drawing the sword. The crowd erupts, reeling in disbelief at what they witness. They cry out, astonished that such a weak player could seize the Slay Dragon sword and claim it. The sword spirit herself confesses that at this rate, Cyrus truly might become her master. His resolve is unwavering. He draws the sword for the sake of Salem City. But suddenly, he notices another hand reaching for it. Other sword spirits appear, kneeling before him and declaring that such a thing cannot be permitted. One steps closer, warning Cyrus that claiming the Slay Dragon sword is no simple feat. A player mutters that the Sword of Judgment has reclaimed its strength, and raw power alone will not be enough to wield it. The sword spirit trembles, overwhelmed by the storm of emotions inside her. She realizes now that any attempt to resist him would be in vain. He feels irritated by the situation, having waited so long to be claimed by a true master. The thought of being influenced by someone like Cyrus strikes him as humiliating. Both of them end up gripping the sword at the same time, and the sword spirit is far from pleased. She mutters that this is utterly disgraceful, yet she subtly resists the pull on the blade. She shouts that if she were using her full strength against him, he would be bleeding far more, both from his nose and mouth. In her mind, the immense pressure of her spirit should be enough to make breathing difficult. Still, she insists she remains a flawless, pristine weapon, and refuses to allow her feelings to cloud her judgment. Even amidst all the chaos, she focuses on defending the sword while Cyrus exerts every ounce of effort to draw it. The sword spirit reminds him that she is merely a spirit, while he is a living human, warning that continued effort could spell his downfall. She urges him to stop, but Cyrus refuses. Driven by courage and his resolve to protect the city, he refuses to yield. One player observes that Cyrus shows no sign of quitting. The crowd cheers, recognizing his struggle to safeguard the city. They see his bravery, and predict he is destined to become a great warrior, rooting for him fervently. Meanwhile, the sword spirit is baffled, questioning how a mortal could remain so steadfast in the face of overwhelming danger. She finally acknowledges the justice in his heart. Asking for a brief moment to regain composure, when he caresses the sword, she loses her grip. She complains that he's tickling her underarms, and finds him infuriatingly irritating. Though uncomfortable, she resolves not to allow him the upper hand. She braces herself, determined to resist so he cannot gain an advantage. The sword spirit senses something unusual, dredging up memories of every time she's been scorched, battered, polished, or shattered. But now, it is different. She can barely maintain control. Cyrus continues manipulating the sword, making her feel a strange tingling sensation. She perceives it around her lower body, noticing how deeply he is engaging with it. Her once formidable energy is depleted, leaving Cyrus with a massive opportunity. He strains further, pulling with every ounce of his strength. All eyes are fixed on him, and one player shouts that the Sword of Judgment is inching out. The sword spirit unleashes a surge of Manhwa. Her eyes glow a piercing blue as she boldly declares she can endure any sensation directed her way. But immediately after, she escalates, striking Cyrus with a wave of overwhelming magical pressure, pouring every bit of her power into it. As Cyrus grips the sword, a surge of raw mana radiates outward. The ground cracks, stones shatter, and debris floats midair. Even amidst the chaos, Cyrus continues to pull the sword, dodging the spirit's attacks. He strains under the immense force, clenching his teeth, thinking his bones might snap under the pressure. He wonders if the sword spirit's goal is to crush him just to prevent him from drawing the blade. More rocks rise into the air, and Bella panics at the sight of him struggling. She dashes forward, swinging her sword to block a magical blast aimed at Cyrus. Yet the moment her blade makes contact, it shatters into pieces. Players scream, alerting everyone that something has just been obliterated. They warn to stay back, noting the gravity magic is at its peak, visible even in the air. They murmur that Cyrus cannot withstand such force, convinced no one could now draw the sword. Meanwhile, his system notifies Cyrus that his body is beginning to falter under the strain. The sword spirit taunts him, questioning his strength, and reminds him that his body teeters on collapse, highlighting the vast difference between their powers. She claims his body and hands could never lift the sword, not even a fraction of an inch. She warns him to quit, or be crushed into nothing. Yet Cyrus refuses, asserting he has underestimated his own determination. With a grin, he continues lightly tracing his fingers across the blade, making the sword spirit scream in frustration. Her control slips further with each of his gentle touches. Cyrus remains resolute, thinking that as long as he does not give up, he still has a chance to win. He runs his fingers over the sword, daring the spirit to endure it. The sword spirit clenches her fist, feeling a wild energy surge through her. She digs her nails into the ground and Cyrus watches her intently. This time, the sensations hit her differently, causing her focus to waver. Though determined to stop him, her control is faltering. The sword's immense power returns, prompting the players to suggest keeping distance. Bella, overwhelmed, collapses under the pressure. Cyrus notices the pain in his fingers but continues gently stroking the sword. The sword spirit is bewildered at how he can endure the immense force while risking being crushed. Yet he still has the presence of mind to tickle her with his touch. She questions whether Cyrus truly carries justice and responsibility in his heart, shouting at him to stop as she feels herself losing control. Cyrus gives her another tickle, asking if she can feel it now. The spirit experiences the sensation again, and suddenly realizes the sword itself is beginning to change. The players notice strange activity around the blade, and one shouts, asking what is emerging from the ground. The sword rises, revealing the full form of the Slay Dragon sword. Cyrus grabs it and places it on the ground. The players are stunned. They realize an F-rank player like Cyrus has successfully drawn a Slay Dragon sword.